Hey everyone. Hope you're all doing well. We're all about bringing high-quality web novel audiobooks to life, and most of our content is completely free to enjoy. Just a quick note, web novels and web novel audiobooks aren't the same thing. Simply reading a novel out loud doesn't always make for a great listening experience. That's why I go through multiple rounds of rewriting and careful editing for every chapter to make sure the narration flows naturally and immerses you in the story, just like reading it yourself. These audiobooks are not just direct copies of the original novels. I've adapted them for a smoother, more engaging experience. And to be fully transparent, these adaptations are made for commercial purposes, so some chapters are paid content. But don't worry, this process is fully copyright compliant. I do all of this because I truly love web novels and audiobooks. I'm a huge fan, and this story is one of my personal favorites. YouTube update: recently, YouTube flagged some of our content for including mature themes, realistic violence, and darker story elements. As a result, we've decided to stop uploading anything that violates YouTube's guidelines. If you'd like access to the full, uncut versions including the more intense or mature content, you can find them on our Patreon page, where we upload everything first. Available now on Patreon: I Am a Legendary Boss audiobook, Versatile Mage starting with the White Tiger Pendant, Naruto the Wind Calamity, the Necromancer is amassing troops like crazy in the apocalypse, the mighty dragons are dead, Naruto, leader of Hidden Grass Village, Naruto Uchiha's Unserious Saga, your lord has a screw loose, Apocalypse I can see the health point bar, killing monsters drops loot, Starsea Fleet Age of the Lord, my monster fuses everything, Naruto, I traveled with a max level account, Fate in Bleach Unlimited Blade Works, killed for 100 years in Hueco Mundo, Aizen invited me to Soul Society, the world conquest giving birth to become a god, my master only breaks through on the edge of death, Bleach the Invincible Slacker from Rukongai, Naruto's Special Shop, One Piece the strongest female pirate cruise, Reborn as Danzō's grandson, must I offend the entire ninja world, Naruto starting with snatching the Mangekyo Sharingan, Naruto Card King, in Hueco Mundo with Shindu template, Naruto the Hidden Danzō, my journey as 4th Kusagakure, Naruto Troublesome Ninja Haruto, Naruto the Hyuga Mastermind, Bleach the strongest Shinigami, Bleach the 5th Division Captain, Fate Ultimate Antagonist, Fate of DXD, Fate I Heard After Death, you can ascend to the throne of heroes, Fate DXD Archer Reborn, Fate beginning with Type Moon, a Berserk Heart, Fate Grand Order Insert, One Piece take the Uchiha clan to the Grand Line, One Piece don't worry, I'm a doctor, building harem and dungeon with monster girls, DXD, Multiverse the day-to-day life of the Sephiroth hero, I'm the bad guy but heroines are obsessed with me, in Naruto, I have an affair with Mikoto and Kushina, many children bring happiness, a shameless start, Naruto Reborn with a Tenseigan, Naruto sleeping Invincible, One Piece, life choice ask me to kiss marine goddess Hina, reborn as the genius son of the richest family, start by eating jacket fruit model, jacket human devil fruit, the days of being the richest man in the ninja world, the Witcher and Madara Uchiha, villain I possess the dragon Yang Dao physique, all saintesses turns into villainesses, all beautiful girls want to stick with me, interdimensional farming in another world, Naruto from Hidden Leaf Village to One Piece, and more. Most of our content there is free, and it's the best place to follow and support our work. The default audio speed is set to 3x, but if that's too fast for you, just let me know, I'm happy to adjust it. Got a favorite web novel you'd love to hear as an audiobook? Drop a suggestion. I'm always open to new ideas. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, X for the latest updates, new releases, and behind-the-scenes content. Thanks so much for your continued support and happy listening. Chapter 1, Zhu Yang Wendongding Lake, Cloud Dream Marsh, spanning over 800 li, where the smoke and waves stretch boundlessly. In the depths of late autumn, the wind turns stark and chill, with fog thickening, hinting at the coming cold. Among the reeds drifts wisps of cooking smoke from a dilapidated awning boat. At the bow, in front of the cabin door, a man wearing a conical hat and draped in a straw raincoat sits on his small stool, fiddling with the small stove before him. He appears very old, with white, withered hair peeking out from beneath his hat, his face deeply furrowed and spotted, marking the passage of time. His stooped figure is made more pronounced by the loose-fitting raincoat, exuding an air of twilight years, trembling on the brink of collapse. An old boat and a decrepit fisherman upon Dongding Lake's vast expanse are not particularly unusual sights. The old man sits at the bow, tending to the little stove, on which sits a small earthenware pot, simmering a pot of simple brown rice porridge, its inviting scent slowly wafting around. After a moment, as the porridge boils, the old man reaches for a large bowl beside him, filled with various prepped shrimps and crabs, as well as rich orange roe and tender fish flesh, piled high. The old man dumps the entire content into the pot. As the porridge boils, the dark shrimps and crabs gradually turn red, and the delicate fish flesh turns snowy white. A delicious, fishy sweetness mixed with the subtle aroma of the porridge spreads through the air. With a sprinkle of salt, it becomes truly appetizing. In such a manner, after a short while, a pot of freshwater fish porridge is ready. The old man takes a small bowl and sits at the bow, eating leisurely. Freshwater delicacies, indeed fresh, yet also genuinely fishy. To the land-dwelling peasants, it might be a rare delicacy, but for those who live on the water, it could become tasteless or even repulsive. Zhu Ying, however, doesn't mind and quietly savors this river fresh porridge he has been eating for who knows how many years. As he eats, he reminisces. How long has he been in this world? 20 years? 30 years? No, it's been 40 years, 45 years and 3 months. Reincarnation, the mystery of the womb, memories of past lives. He has been in this world for a full 45 years. 45 years. Zhu Ying sighs softly, pouring the remaining shrimp and crab into his mouth, shells and all, and chews. He is a transmigrator, the kind who has been reborn through transmigration, having come to this world and become an utterly ordinary fisherman's son. At 18, he broke the mystery from within the womb, regained the memories of his past life, and confirmed his reincarnation. Discounting the years before his memory returned, he, as a transmigrator, has been in this world for a full 27 years. Other transmigrators might have achieved greatness or even become world-shaking figures in 27 years. They might have established dynasties or at least carved out a domain for themselves. But Zhu Yang still remains a fisherman. It's not that he hasn't tried, but this world is more dangerous than he imagined. The knowledge and experience of a transmigrator can bring many advantages, and even wealth, power, beauty, and companions, but they can also attract various dangers and potentially fatal threats. In this ancient world under feudalism, with an entirely rigid class structure and nearly all pathways to upward mobility blocked, an unsupported fisherman's son revealing the advantages of a transmigrator would be like a child holding gold in a bustling market. It doesn't take much to predict the outcome. So, for over 20 years, Zhu Ying remains a fisherman. At least on the surface. But in those long years, Zhu Ying has been far from idle. On the contrary, he has accumulated a great deal. Zhu Ying lifespan, 45 out of 145 cultivation, non-skills, eating, chewing, digesting, essence, strengthening, unobstructed, sleeping, calming, nourishing life, strengthening body, seldomil, longevity, breathing, concealing presence, robust, energetic, life extension, longevity, cooking, tasty, dissection, essence, freshwater delicacies, fishing, guaranteed catch, fresh, rare, boating, swift, unruffled by waves, breeding, training, growth, exotic fish, fish eagles, disguising, camouflage, voice modulation, shrinking bone, concealing presence, knife sharpening, sharpness, chop, powerful, flying stone, accurate, swimming, like a fish in water. In those days, nearly every transmigrator had some sort of cheat, and Zhu Ying was no exception. He possessed an attribute panel. Though this attribute panel didn't have a point allocation function nor experience quests, it could bestow or, rather, solidify Zhu Ying's abilities. The process of solidification was simple, as long as Zhu Ying persisted in doing an activity over the years, be it trivial matters such as eating, drinking, sleeping, or breathing. The attribute panel would solidify it into a skill and generate various traits. These skill traits had the power to turn the decayed into the miraculous. Take eating as an example. Zhu Ying's eating skill now possessed 5 skill traits: chewing, digestion, essence, strengthening, and unobstructed. The chewing trait meant he could chew food more efficiently. With a powerful set of teeth, he could easily grind down not just the shells of shrimp and crabs but also pig and cow bones. Then, through the digestion trait, he would quickly digest and absorb the nutrients to strengthen himself. The subsequent traits, essence and strengthening, allowed him to gain more essence and nutrients from food, achieving stronger nourishing effects to bolster his body. Where others could only absorb 3 to 4/10 of the nutrients in a pound of meat, he could absorb 5 to 6, or even 7 to 8/10, and the strengthening effect from these nutrients could be exerted to its fullest, essentially doubling the efficacy. As for the last one, unobstructed, it simply meant his bowels were always clear, and he never needed to worry about constipation. Okay, that might be considered a bit useless, but setting that aside, the effects of the other 4 skill traits were still incredibly powerful. Combined with other skills such as sleep, breathing, cooking, fishing, and husbandry, Zhu Ying might still be an old fisherman at the bottom of society, but his physical condition far surpassed that of vigorous young men, and he could even match the legendary martial artists. Indeed, legendary. To someone like him, a commoner, every martial artist was a figure of legend, beyond reach. Apart from his robust physique, these skills also granted Zhu Ying longevity and various ways to earn income. Even if he didn't utilize the knowledge of a transmigrator, with the fishing and hunting skills he currently possessed, he could become a wealthy man on the 800 li of Dongding Lake. But he hadn't done so because it was equally risky. There was a chance of skyrocketing to success, but also the possibility of ending up dead at the bottom of the lake. With the help of the attribute panel, he could easily accumulate wealth in secret, gradually expanding without taking such risks that could bring disaster and threaten his life. Therefore, after all these years, Zhu Ying remained a fisherman, an old fisherman at that. Due to living conditions and medical standards, the lifespan of ancient people was generally not long, especially for families living on boats. A person in their 40s or 50s was considered old, and there were hardly any in their 60s or 70s. The hard labor of battling the elements often overtaxed their lives, making it difficult for ordinary people to reach such an age. In the eyes of common folks, Zhu Ying was already not far from the end of his life, and it wouldn't be surprising if he passed away any day. But in reality, Zhu Ying had just lived through less than 1/3 of his life and was in the prime years of his life, at the peak of vitality. Even if his lifespan didn't increase further, he could live another 100 years without illness or calamity. Unfortunately, that was just theory. A fisherman over 100 years old would certainly not be considered a cherished centenarian but rather a monster, and it wouldn't even take reaching 100 years. Within a few more years, he would attract numerous suspicions and prying eyes. Time is running out. Zhu Ying sighed inwardly as he put the last shrimp into his mouth, chewing it into a pulp before swallowing. Soon, a warm feeling rose from his stomach and spread to his limbs, nourishing his body. A pot of river delicacy porridge, enough for 2 or 3 strong men, was completely devoured by him alone. Yet, he only felt half full. Unsatiated, Zhu Ying stood up and picked up a medium-sized fish basket from the side before turning back into the cabin. He lifted a wooden board in the center of the cabin to reveal a hidden net cage. Inside the cage, numerous fish swam, along with a few turtles and soft-shelled turtles. Zhu Ying took the scoop net and carefully selected some to fill more than half of the fish basket. The rest he released from the net cage, and then he left the cabin, pushing the awning boat towards the shore. He didn't propel the boat quickly, but steadily. The old awning boat calmly moved over the water and soon reached the dock. Standing at the bow of the boat, Zhu Ying looked at his reflection in the water, and saw an old fisherman with a hunched body, draped in a bamboo hat and straw raincoat, his face lined and spotted with age, staring back at himself. No problems there. Zhu Ying nodded inwardly, secured the boat, then carried the fish basket on his back and clumsily climbed ashore. On the shore, a minor official dressed in dark clothing was dozing on a reclining chair, idly fanning himself with a palm leaf fan until Zhu Ying arrived, at which point he lazily opened his eyes to glance at him. "Yo, old Zhu, still not dead yet?" "Thanks to your blessing." Zhu Ying, already hunched over, smiled and carefully took out a few copper coins from his chest, counted them back and forth, before finally placing them on the small table beside the official. The minor official nodded, flicked the coins into a bucket with his fan, and then paid no further attention to Zhu Ying. Zhu Ying didn't say much more either. Carrying the fish basket, he headed for the fish market. Chapter 2, Daily 1. Dongding Lake, though nearly 1,000 miles in size with many main tributaries and even connected to rivers flowing into the sea, ultimately could not pass through cities and prefectures, directly entering the street markets. Let alone Mansion City, even for county towns that were 20 to 30 miles away, without horses and carts, fishing families couldn't dream of selling fish in city markets. They could only set up stalls at the wharf fish market nearby, supplying local residents and merchants from the city who came to purchase. Zhu Ying walked into the fish market, found a spot, and before he had set down his fish basket, saw a group of people approaching. The leader was a robust man with a burly figure and coarse beard and hair. "Oh, old Zhu, still not dead?" Accustomed to this greeting, Zhu Ying didn't mind. He set down his basket and, with a forced smile, said to the burly man, "All thanks to Seventh Master's blessing." "Haha." The burly man, called Seventh Master, laughed, looking at the fish basket by Zhu Ying's feet. "Did you catch any soft-shelled turtles?" "Thanks to your blessing, Seventh Master, I was lucky enough to catch one." Zhu Ying took a soft-shelled turtle tied with straw rope from the basket and handed it to a lackey beside the big man. "I always say, when it comes to catching soft-shelled turtles, no one beats old Zhu." The big man smiled and then asked, "How much are you selling it for?" Zhu Ying replied with a smile, "If Seventh Master likes it, please just take it." Hey, in business, cash and goods should clear out evenly, that's the rule of the goldfish gang. Who dares not to follow it? The big man gestured, and one of his subordinates immediately tossed a small string of copper coins to Zhu Ying. Then he stretched out his hand toward him and said, "The stall fee for today, plus the pocket money for the month, 30 big coins in total." Zhu Ying didn't say much, took the small string of copper coins, and then flipped a small bag out from his bosom, pouring out more than 10 slimy, fish-smelling copper coins. After counting them several times, he finally handed them over. Seeing this, the big man smiled again. If everyone were as straightforward as you, old Zhu, then I, 7th Master, would have a lot less to worry about. Zhu Ying merely replied with another forced smile. The big man didn't have more to say and waved his hand. All right, I won't hinder your business anymore. There's a new batch of dried yellow croakers at Third Mother's place, and that's your favorite, old Zhu. Be sure to give it a try when you pack up later. Yes, yes, yes. Zhu Ying smiled and sent off the big man and his entourage, then took out a small stool and started to hawk loudly with a slightly hoarse voice. Where there are people, there lies the martial world, and this small fish market was no exception. In addition to official clerks who collected docking fees, the market also had a fishing czar. Stall fees had to be paid, plus monthly pocket money, and on top of that, tax levies from the authorities. With both the underworld and officialdom bearing down, the common folk were practically wrung dry. For lone fishermen like Zhu Yang, it was one thing, but for those with families to support, the monthly squeeze, plus the daily living expenses for fuel, rice, oil, and salt, meant they could hardly hope to save, and it was a stroke of good fortune not to end up in debt. If disaster struck, or they fell on hard times, unable to catch fish or beset by severe illness, there was even the possibility of losing everything they owned and having to sell their sons and daughters. Getting rich through hard work was nothing but a delusional dream. Chen Qi was such a fishing czar, a boss of the goldfish gang ruling over Dongting City's fish market, throwing his weight around. Don't be fooled by his seemingly amiable demeanor. If you failed to produce the pocket money, he turned into a merciless predator, a wolf or tiger who ate men without spitting out their bones. Over the years, no one knew how many people he had driven to their deaths. Fortunately, Zhu Ying, being alone and a skilled fisherman, managed to get by. Sister, look at this fish, caught last night, guaranteed fresh, only 10 big coins. Who are you calling sister, you old bag of bones? You're old enough to be my father. My apologies, young lady, look at this fish. It's barely breathing, still you guarantee freshness. No thank you. 3 big coins, if not, I'm leaving. 3 big coins, really, that won't do. Look, 8 big coins, I'll clean and gut it for you. Fine, 8 big coins it is, but throw in that small one for me. Folks struggled to get by, and fishing families even more so. Living by the vast lake, fish sold for a pittance, a basket of fish and shrimp might not fetch much, sometimes even unsold. Fortunately, Zhu Ying had a stroke of luck today. He sold most of his basket of fish, and the odds and ends left over, picked through by the customers, were bundled up and sold off cheaply, earning a total of 35 won money. Zhu Ying secured the money and, carrying his fish basket, went to other stalls to buy daily necessities. Although fish sold for little, as a source of meat, its nutritional value wasn't lacking. A pity, one could not live on fish alone. Essentials like firewood, rice, oil, and salt were indispensable, especially salt. Without it, one would lack the strength for physical work and would fall prey to various diseases. So even with the low price of fish, fishermen had no choice but to sell them and use the money to purchase the necessities of life. This was why Zhu Ying reluctantly accepted the oppression of the goldfish gang. Otherwise, with his current skills, he could slip into Dongting Lake and neither the authorities nor the goldfish gang could hope to find him, let alone collect any taxes or pocket money. After buying a supply of daily necessities and spending most of the money he made from selling fish, Zhu Ying didn't pocket the rest and head home, but instead headed to a small tavern. Oh, old Zhu. Are you here to drink a couple of bowls again today? Living alone sure is comfortable. Not like us, with families to look after. It's tough. The tavern was already filled with customers, who teased Zhu Ying when they saw him. Zhu Ying didn't mind and picked a corner near the door to settle down. Then he called over a waiter and ordered 2 bowls of dried yellow wine, a plate of fennel beans, a plate of scrambled eggs, and half a chicken. Right away. It wasn't long before the waiter brought the food and drink to his table. Zhu Ying cradled the bowl of wine, sipping it carefully before picking up his chopsticks to eat the side dishes and drink, appearing like a decrepit old man with a passion for wine. Did he really like wine? Not really. But he had to come. Because the owner of the tavern, Third Mother, was the mistress of the fishing czar Chen Qi from earlier. Even though as a boss of the goldfish gang, Chen Qi ruled the fish market, there were appearances to maintain. One couldn't rob or extort openly, it was necessary to squeeze money from the fishermen's hands without making it too obvious. Because the fishermen were the property of the goldfish gang, such actions would be equivalent to stealing from the gang, which would not only disturb the market but also break the rules within the gang. Chen Qi would not dare to take that risk, even if he had 10 times the courage. But just because overt methods won't work doesn't mean covert ones won't either. If you have the wisdom of Zhongliang, I have a wall-scaling ladder. There's always a way to circumvent gang rules and extort tribute and money under various guises. Take this tavern for instance. After Zhu Yang sells his fish, he must spend here, blowing through the rest of his money to ensure his own safety. Otherwise, a solitary old man with savings would have long since been slaughtered like a fattened lamb. That being said, the experience is far from pleasant because the liquor here tastes like water mixed with water, the side dishes are pitifully scant, and the chicken served after being chopped clearly misses a few pieces. Even a black shop might not be this bad. However, Zhu Yang doesn't show much reaction, sitting in a corner and eating and drinking to himself. After all, this is still food. It's certainly better than those casinos and brothels that only take money in and never give it back. The flavorless liquor may not taste of much, but drink enough of it and it goes to your head. Soon enough, people around him started blustering and boasting, even dragging Zhu Yang into their conversation. Old Zhu, you're 58 this year, right? My goodness, quite the elder. Nah, he's older than old Zhong by half a decade, so probably just in his mid-50s. Honestly, I'm envious of you. Full belly for one, the whole family is not hungry unlike us. If I were you, no way would I be here drinking. I'd be off enjoying some secret delight. Go on, get lost, why bring up such a sore point? Don't you know he injured his root in his early years? Ha ha ha, no wonder he's never spoken of matchmaking all these years. It's a shame, I was thinking of matching you with old Yu's widow. You'd actually present that old spring onion? Ha 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 ha. The crowd laughed and jeered, ridiculing him in their fun. Zhu Yang, however, remained indifferent, paying them no mind, continuing to eat and drink alone in his corner. And so it went, drinking bowl after bowl until the afternoon, when Zhu Yang finally settled the bill and left, carrying his fish basket away from the fish market. Having returned to his boat and stowed the fish basket, he pushed off toward the waters of the lake, quickly reaching familiar territory. But before he could even sit down to rest, Yang! A shout came from the distance. Zhu Yang's gaze sharpened, his movements halted, and his body tensed under his straw raincoat. But just as quickly, he relaxed again, turned his head, and looked in the direction of the sound. In the distance, a large black awning boat approached slowly, with an old man standing at the bow, and two young men in simple clothing rowing and punting behind him. Zhu Yang fell silent for a moment but eventually steered his boat to meet the newcomer. The boats drew alongside one another, and the elder from the other boat made no pretense of politeness, coming straight on to Zhu Yang's boat. What, don't you recognize me? It's me, Ching. Big brother, little brother, aren't you going to call uncle? So it's Ching. Zhu Yang looked at the old man, replying with neutral tone, then got straight to the point. What do you want? Let's sit down and talk, sit down and talk. The old man grinned, pulling Zhu Yang toward the cabin while the two young men also jumped down, all making their way inside the cabin. Entering the cabin, the elder glanced around and then shifted back to Zhu Yang, chuckling. Yang, you've gotten old, haven't you? Well, we've all reached this age, it can't be helped. I remember when. The man started on mundane topics, and though Zhu Yang harbored suspicions, he didn't interrupt immediately and patiently engaged in idle chatter with him. This man was named Zhongqing, a distant cousin of his, but they were not close and had not been in touch for many years. Their scant emotional bond had dried up long ago. His showing up now could not possibly be for anything trivial, nobody would believe it otherwise. And sure enough, after some rambling, Zhongqing disclosed his motive. Yang, before our uncle passed, he and my father said that we must find you a marriage match so the family line wouldn't end. But who could have expected? Well, never mind, let's not talk about that. Second brother. Upon finishing, he motioned for the young man behind him to come forward and pointed at him while speaking to Zhu Yang. My second son will take the Zhu surname and call you father. He'll look after you in your old age. This. What are you standing there for? Call him father. Zhu Yang frowned, about to speak, when Zhongqing slapped the back of the young man's head. The youth, with a simple and honest look, promptly stepped forward. Paying no heed to Zhu Yang's reaction, he knelt and called out, Father. Zhu Yang remained silent, without a word. Zhongqing smiled, squinting his eyes at Zhu Yang and suggested, Yang, even though this kid isn't the brightest, he's second to none when it comes to work. Let him assist you by your side, look after you as you age, and continue the family line. How about it? Zhu Yang looked at him, silent for a while, but eventually nodded in agreement. That'll do. Seeing that Zhu Yang had readily agreed, Zhongqing's expression sharpened, but then he quickly recovered, clapping his hands and saying, that settles it then. Second brother, aren't you going to fetch your? Not so fast. Zhu Yang interrupted, this is a serious matter. It must be witnessed by others. Let's do this tomorrow. You and I will host a table of wine and invite some elders for a proper testimony. Faced with Zhu Ying's seriousness, Zhongqing paused and then laughed. Fine, fine, you think of everything, Yang. We'll do just that, and I'll set the table. Good. Moments later, Zhu Ying stood at the bow, watching Zhongqing and his son depart, before he bent his back and slowly turned to go inside the cabin. Within the cabin, Zhu Ying sat in silence for a while, then, he reached down and slid open the floorboard under his feet. As the board moved, it revealed a hidden compartment holding a sharp dagger, as long as an arm, with frosty blade gleaming with a bone-chilling light. Zhu Ying took out the dagger and without a word, picked up a grinding stone and sat in the cabin, silently sharpening the blade. Chapter 3, Characteristics 1. Dad. Why bother with so much effort and even have the second brother call him Dad? I think that old coot won't live much longer, he might not even survive this winter. Once he kicks the bucket, or better yet, we could just finish him off directly. Then we take over his possessions. You're his cousin, who could challenge our claim. Exactly, I just looked and that decrepit boat has nothing but some pots and pans, worthless junk. Even if we sold it all, it wouldn't bring in much money. The boat itself is so run down it's useless. Plus, we have to put on a whole feast. On the awning boat, two young men looked at their father with incomprehension in their eyes. You two idiots. Zhongqing scolded his sons as if lamenting their inadequacy. Although that dead old man has no children, he has several distant relatives. Normally, they don't mix with each other, but who would miss the chance to feast on a family with no heirs? When the time comes, a large crowd of people will definitely come rushing. How could we alone swallow this whole feast then? This. The two sons exchanged a look, beginning to understand a bit more, but still puzzled. Is it necessary? What worthwhile fortune could that old guy have? Just some broken household items and a dilapidated boat. Is it worth all this trouble? You know nothing. Zhongqing cursed again. In this world, a fisherman who could live to such an age invariably has some secrets tucked away. That old coot has always kept a low profile, not even taking a wife. He must surely have quite a bit saved up, even assuming he hasn't got a penny, we could. While speaking, Zhongqing lowered his voice, use his identity, make those things rightfully ours to dispose of, understand? This. Got it, got it. Dad, you really are shrewd. Upon hearing Zhongqing's explanation, both sons finally had their aha moment and began to praise him in agreement. Otherwise, how could I be the father of you two blockheads? Zhongqing snorted coldly before turning his gaze behind him and spoke in a quiet, eerie tone. Cousin, oh cousin, don't blame me. You've lived long enough, it's time for you to go down there and reunite with your family. Rest assured, I keep my word. In the future, my second son will surely continue your family line. That night, inside the cabin, Zhu Ying looked at the knife in his hand, its blade sharpened to an extreme, reflecting a chilling light. Knife sharpening, sharpness, as the name suggests, this skill sharpens blades to a keen edge. Regarding how sharp can it be? Zhu Ying had done experiments. Though it was not to the point of cutting through iron as if it were mud, slicing through meat, chopping bones, severing heads, or piercing hearts was still remarkably easy. Setting aside the sharp blade, Zhu Ying turned to look outside the cabin, where he saw only the night sky, dark and boundless. Indeed, a perfect night for murder, a perfect time to set fires. Although Zhu Ying did not know what Zhongqing and his sons were planning, their actions already posed a direct threat to his safety. Therefore, they had to die, tonight. Zhu Ying stood up, shedding the oversized raincoat, revealing a bent and hunched body, which seemed no different from a typical old man. But as he removed more of his clothing, that hunched body, thin and gaunt, began to straighten and fill out. A strange noise of moving bones and sinews could be heard from within. A moment later, there was no sign of the thin and frail old man in the cabin, only a tall, sturdy build with well-defined muscles, a robust old man. And when he touched his face with water, the blotches and deep lines on the old man's face disappeared, revealing a young man with sharp and rugged features. Breathing, concealing presence, robust, vigorous, life-extending, health-enhancing, disguise, camouflage, voice-altering, shrinking bone, concealing presence, life-extending is a trait of the breathing skill that not only extends one's life but also slows down bodily aging. With the additional years, Zhu Ying was not an old man but in the prime of life. However, such abnormality could not be known to the world, so Zhu Ying had long practiced a skill disguise. Disguise how to disguise? Zhu Ying had no idea, but that didn't matter. With the attribute panel's skill solidification, whether he knew how or not, as long as he acted and practiced to a certain extent, he could cultivate a skill, develop traits, and turn the decrepit into the extraordinary. Zhu Ying did just that. Initially clueless about disguises and voice alterations, all he did every day was smear mud on his face, don a hat and raincoat when going out, stoop and bow as he moved, and speak in a lowered voice. Over time, Zhu Ying mastered the disguise skill, developing the traits of camouflage, voice altering, shrinking bone, and concealing presence. Skill traits have the power to turn decay into a miraculous state. With them, Zhu Ying needed only simple materials like silt from the river bottom to disguise himself as a decrepit old fisherman, concealing his true appearance and life energy. Ordinary people, and even martial artists, could not detect any signs of deceit. To confirm this, Zhu Ying even conducted several tests by crossing paths with members of the Goldfish Gang and other forces martial artists on Dongding Lake, none of whom noticed anything unusual, showcasing the effectiveness of disguise under the influence of skill traits. Dressed only in shorts and having restored his original appearance, Zhu Ying stepped out of the cabin and onto the deck, securing the sharp knife and a cloth bag around his waist. Woo! Just then, a clear cry sounded, and a dark shadow descended, settling firmly on top of the awning. It was a cormorant, an exceptionally large cormorant. Breeding, taming, growth, exotic fish, fish eagle. In this strictly hierarchical world where ascension was hard to achieve, Zhu Ying had been devising various ways to secure his own survival. Since martial arts were out of his reach, he decided to approach it from other angles. Therefore, Zhu Ying honed the skill of knife sharpening and, through throwing stones and skipping water, mastered the precise art of the flying stone. In the cover of night, he wielded his blade in secret, training a powerful slashing skill with strong traits. With a breeding skill and obtaining the taming trait, he aimed to pursue the path of beast taming, hoping to acquire a shrimp soldier or a crab general, perhaps even birds and beasts to act as bodyguards. Although subsequent developments were less than ideal, with no shrimp soldiers or crab generals, or transcendental traits emerging from spirit beast enlightenment, the combination of growth and fish eagle did procure Zhu Ying a formidable assistant. Growth, as the name implies, means to grow very large. Animals bred with this skill developed better effects, grew at a faster rate, and ultimately achieved sizes greater than the average. As for the fish eagle, it meant he could train fish eagles to follow commands and enhance their abilities. This large cormorant was the product of Zhu Ying's meticulous cultivation, named Lao Yu. Why call it Lao Yu? Because the previous Lao Yu, Laoer, Lao San, Lao Si, and Lao Wu had all perished. Lao Yu had just reached adulthood, it was the prime of his life as an eagle, and he would still accompany Zhu Ying for some time. Found it? Zhu Ying glanced at Lao Yu, who humanly nodded to him. Very good. Go. Seeing this, Zhu Ying didn't say anything more. With a command, the fish eagle flew up into the sky, guiding the direction with its loud cries. Zhu Ying also leapt from the bow of the boat, plunging into the dark and profound waters of the lake. Plop. The water of Dongding Lake in the deep autumn night had a bone-chilling coldness to it. But Zhu Ying felt nothing of the sort. Diving into the water, his body moved with astonishing speed as he started to swim. Swimming, like a fish in water. After experiments, Zhu Ying found that skill traits also ranged in hierarchy. 2 character traits were common, whereas 4 character traits were rarer, higher in level, and more potent in effect. The swimming skills like a fish in water belonged to the rarer 4 character traits. It allowed Zhu Ying to move in the water just like a fish, as if he were a large fish of the same size. Given Zhu Ying's current physical condition, a big fish of his body size would almost be considered a spirit monster in the water. So, one could imagine how Zhu Ying performed under the water. Even if the Zhang family's boat was more than 10 miles away, he was able to swim swiftly to the location without needing to sail on water and attract attention. Whoosh! With the cries of the fish eagle guiding him, Zhu Ying, like a fish, dived and swam swiftly, soon reaching the waters where the Zhang family's boat was moored. Zhu Ying surfaced, only to see a large black canopied boat moored in a natural harbor ahead. Not all fishermen live on their boats. Those with property and houses on land would reside ashore, taking to their boats only when necessary for fishing. It was only the truly destitute, those whose entire belongings were encapsulated in a solitary, decaying boat, that endured the torments of the wind, rain, humidity, and sickness from within their unstable abode. Zhu Ying was one such person, and the Zhang family was not much better off, with all 3 members living aboard that large black canopied boat. The boat was moored in the bay with a small lamplit for illumination, to prevent collisions with other vessels. Zhu Ying observed the sky, estimating the time, but ultimately he dismissed the idea of boarding the boat directly. Though he was strong and had a sharp knife as his weapon, making a stealth attack highly likely to succeed, it was just that highly likely and not a guarantee. One man can hardly fight against many. The other side had 3 people, 2 of whom were fit and strong. Moreover, he had not practiced any formal martial arts. Aside from being a bit more robust, he did not have much of an advantage, and a direct ambush risked overturning his plight. So, Zhu Ying opened the small pouch tied to his waist, retrieving a goose egg-sized pebble. Flying stone, precision. This was another one of Zhu Ying's attack skills, the art of the flying stone, cultivated through throwing stones and skipping water. It currently possessed just the precision trait, ensuring extremely high hit rates within a certain range. Despite having just one trait, it was sufficient for his current offensive needs. Zhu Ying did not believe any of the Zhang family could withstand a blow from his flying stone to the head. Now, all that was left was to wait patiently for someone to get up during the night to relieve themselves. Of course, if the wait proved fruitless, or if they had the habit of preparing a toilet on board, Zhu Ying would still board the boat and forcefully take lives. Chapter 4, Crisis 1. Cultivating good habits is an important thing. Take getting up at night for instance. Zhu Ying hardly ever got up at night, and even when he occasionally did, he wouldn't rashly leave the cabin but often went about his business by opening the hatch. After all, Dongding Lake was vast and full of dangers, especially at night. Who knew what accidents might occur? It was best to stay in the cabin if possible, even to relieve oneself. Not just him, other old boatmen did the same. If there were facilities, they used a toilet; if not, a hatch would suffice. Only those young fools who knew nothing of life and death and couldn't be bothered with niceties would go outside the boat for that. Although Zhang Cheng was an old boatman who knew the rules of the water, his two sons didn't have such awareness. So, Zhu Ying didn't have to wait long before he saw a figure emerge from the cabin, half asleep and half awake, and make his way to the side of the boat to undo his belt. It was the elder son of Zhang Cheng, smaller in build compared to the younger one who was supposed to attend to his funeral. But Zhu Ying wasn't choosy. He gripped the pebble in his hand tightly and, putting strength into his arm, hurled it with force. Most techniques with hidden weapons involved using the wrist, but Zhu Ying didn't know any such techniques, so he relied on instinct, throwing the pebble with the strength of his arm. This method was showy and full of openings. Forget a martial artist, even an ordinary person would find it easy to dodge. But the elder of Zhang family was peeing while drowsy, in no condition to react or dodge. Plop. There was a splash followed by the sound of a heavy blow, and the elder Zhang family's brother grunted before toppling headfirst into the water, creating ripples. Elder brother? In the cabin, the lightly sleeping Zhang Qing was also startled awake by the noise outside and hurriedly went out to look. Seeing no one at the bow, only the ripples in the water, Zhang Qing immediately panicked, shouting, "Not good, second son, wake up. Your brother has fallen into the water, hurry and save him." "What's wrong, Dad?" Hearing Zhang Qing's frantic shouts, the robust second son of the Zhang family also rubbed his eyes and came out of the cabin. "Your brother's fallen in, hurry, dive in and get him out." "Oh." The second son of Zhang family didn't sense anything amiss and immediately dove into the water, leaving Zhang Qing by the boat's side, waiting anxiously with a lantern in hand. "This damn boy, I've said it over and over, the wind and waves are strong at night, don't leave the cabin," but he wouldn't listen, and now look what's happened. Zhang Qing, holding the lantern, cursed under his breath by the boat's side, unaware of anything amiss. Until... glub glub. A flurry of bubble sounds came from below, indicating something was amiss underwater. Zhang Qing's pupils contracted as he shone his lantern towards the dark depths, only to see a great deal of bubbles and blood-red water surfacing. "This. Second son." Finally realizing something, Zhang Qing screamed, taking up an oar and thrusting it into the water, yet touching nothing. "Elder brother, second son." This left Zhang Qing with a panicked face, shouting helplessly. Just then, a surge of water sounded from behind, and Zhang Qing's pupils contracted as he quickly turned around. The result. Plop. A flying stone came hurtling out of nowhere and struck him squarely in the face, bursting into a spray of blood. Zhang Qing felt darkness before his eyes and intense pain, then his world spun, and he involuntarily toppled over at the bow. Simultaneously, a large hand grabbed onto the side of the boat and hoisted a body out of the water. The figure rushed forward with a knife straight towards Zhang Qing. Plop. A dull thud sounded as the blade penetrated the flesh. Zhang Qing's body twitched, tensed up, but then went limp, unresponsive. Blunk. Zhu Ying pulled out the dagger, looked at the body emotionlessly and plunged the knife back into the deceased's chest. Blunk. 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 After 3 stabs, Zhu Ying stopped, turned, and dove back into the water to drag out 2 bodies and throw them onto the deck. They were the Zhang family's brothers. Both had multiple knife wounds, their throats slit, and their hearts pierced, clearly beyond dead. 3 bodies were neatly stacked together. Zhu Ying then climbed back onto the boat and started searching inside the cabin. A short while later, Zhu Ying, with a bag tied around his waist, exited the cabin. He ignored the 3 corpses of the Zhang family, deftly pushed the boat off, and headed for the deeper waters of the lake. Rowing, swiftly, with waves, without alarm, as a fisherman, one who had lived on the water for over 40 years, old Zhu's boating skills need hardly be mentioned. He had honed his abilities, developed his attributes, and moved over the water both quickly and steadily. In less than the time it took to burn half an incense stick, Zhu Ying had steered the boat to the deep water area. Then he turned around, went back into the cabin, and began to bore holes in various parts of the bottom of the boat. Glug glug. Glug glug. With the cabin bottom breached, water poured in. Zhu Ying made his way to the bow, tying heavy weights to each of the 3 corpses and binding them together with the hull. After doing all this, Zhu Ying somersaulted into the water and swiftly swam away from the area. In the vast Dongding Lake, disposing of bodies was a simple task. Once the bodies sank, the fish, soft-shelled turtles, shrimps, and crabs of the lake would take care of the rest. Eventually, only 3 skeletons unidentifiable to anyone would remain at the bottom of the lake. As for the aftermath, there was even less need to worry. For the fishermen who eked out a living on the water, every day was uncertain, full of potential mishaps such as large waves, lake monsters, or some other reason leading to shipwreck and loss of life. Such events were not unusual and happened from time to time. Therefore, Zhu Ying didn't need to worry that the death and disappearance of the Zhang family's father and sons would affect him. Even if they had met that day, no one would believe that an old fisherman on the brink of death could have killed all 3 members of the Zhang family. And if by some flight of fancy, someone did harbor suspicions and cast doubts upon him, having evidence or not didn't matter. As long as there was intent, as long as there were suspicions, they would inevitably act against him. After all, he was just a fisherman, an extremely lowly commoner. Whether they killed the wrong person or the right one, there were no consequences to bear. So, action could be taken without any misgivings. A mere suspicion was enough. Zhu Ying was aware of this, so he acted decisively, quickly ending the lives of the 3 members of the Zhang family that very night. In the middle of the night, the fish eagle landed, perched on the bow. Zhu Ying also emerged from the water, flipping onto the boat with swift movements, and entered the dark cabin. Once inside, he removed his sharp knife and, after wiping off the blood and the smell, he stowed it away in a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Then he calmly sat down, opened the small pouch, and began to count the spoils of his night's endeavor. As the saying goes, murder and arson bring the reward of a golden belt. Without considering risk, plundering others is the quickest way to accumulate power and wealth. Although the victims of Zhu Ying's raid tonight were only slightly less poor than himself, they still brought him an unexpected windfall. Zhu Ying emptied the contents of the bag. The most eye-catching items were several pieces of yellow and white metal. There were also quite a few copper coins and a vivid, green jade pendant. The copper coins were from Zhang Qing's family savings. However, the plump silver ingots and shiny gold leaves, as well as the vivid green jade pendant, were clearly not the kind of wealth a fisherman would be able to accumulate. The ingots alone were estimated to be worth around 180 taels. Including the gold leaves and jade pendant, this unexpected fortune was enough for Zhu Ying to leave Dongting Lake, buy a mansion and beautiful servants in the city, and live a life of decadent luxury. Seeing this, Zhu Ying understood why Zhang Qing and his sons had approached him. Their act of eating up one's estate was merely a distraction. Their real purpose was to use him, an old man, as a front to liquidate some of the gold and silver, inconspicuously acquired, to improve their living conditions. Don't ask why they didn't simply spend it. If they dared to flaunt such a large amount of gold and silver, the goldfish gang would ensure they ended up at the bottom of the lake. Without adequate strength, wealth and beauty could only bring about fatal disasters. So, they dared not dispose of the gold and silver openly but instead had to plot carefully, finding ways to convert it to cash. Zhu Ying's inheritance was one of the methods they had found for this purpose. As for the origin of this treasure, was it fished from the depths? Dug up on an island? Stolen from a murder? Who cares? Zhu Ying didn't dwell too much on the source of items that dead men couldn't testify about, he just collected them and bolstered his assets. Although he now had money in his hands, it was no different from being in the hands of Zhang Qing and his sons. It couldn't be used just yet. Zhu Ying was a man of self-awareness. Although he possessed many skills, few were combat relevant. He had no way to confront martial artists, let alone a gang made up of many martial artists. Therefore, he couldn't use this treasure for the time being. Besides, the actions of Zhang Qing and his sons had revealed another problem. He was too old. If he lived a few more years, not to mention those bastards waiting to prey upon his estate, the goldfish gang might notice him and become suspicious. But if old Zhu died, under what identity would he buy the essentials for living? Disguise himself? Wouldn't that raise suspicions and attract unwelcome scrutiny? Zhu Ying frowned, pondered for a long time, and finally uttered a sigh. In the end, it all comes down to insufficient strength. Saying this, he stood up, preparing to start a fire to cook, make a midnight snack to replenish the energy he had expended earlier. However, despite planning for a snack, thoughts of future developments and directions continued to weigh on Zhu Ying's mind. The formal identity of old Zhu was about to crumble, and it was inevitable that he would need a new identity to interact with outsiders and purchase supplies. However, suddenly introducing a new individual could attract attention and trouble. The best way to deal with these problems was to increase his strength. How to increase it? Currently, the only thing he could rely on was the attribute panel, his golden finger. Zhu Yang reviewed his skills, most of which were auxiliary. Only a few could increase combat capabilities, but their effects were not significant. Knife sharpening, flying stone, cleaving, they could only deal with ordinary people. Against martial artists possessing extraordinary powers, it would be a one-way ticket doomed. Therefore, he needed to develop new skills urgently, ones that could enhance his basic combat strength. But how to develop them? Chapter 5, Dream Butterfly 1. Having crossed over so many years ago, Zhu Yang had thoroughly familiarized himself with his golden finger. To develop a skill was simple, just one word: do. As long as one persisted, year in and year out, even the most trivial of tasks could forge a skill, create a trait, and grant one the power to turn the decrepit into the miraculous. But this doing came with requirements. One must complete all aspects of a task. Only then can one say they have done something. It was through this accumulated effort that a skill could be cultivated. Take breathing as an example. One must complete the actions of inhaling and exhaling for it to count as one breath. Therefore, only by doing can one cultivate a skill. There is no scenario where not doing also counts as doing. What does not doing mean? Continuing with the example of breathing, if breathing can generate a skill, what about not breathing? Can that generate a skill? Or not eating, not drinking water, not sleeping, not cultivating, can these reverse not doing actions generate a skill? Clearly not. Zhu Yang was certain of this. In order to conceal his robust chi blood and avoid suspicion, he had not married for many years, even spreading a fabricated rumor about having an injury to his manhood to avoid taking a wife, having children, and he had never once visited even the half-concealed brothels. In doing so, for these many decades, he certainly didn't develop any abstinence from visiting prostitutes type of skill. Not even a skill like celibacy had surfaced. Thus, Zhu Yang was sure that one couldn't cultivate a skill from not doing. One had to earnestly do something, complete it, and with continuous effort, it would crystallize into a skill on the attribute panel. And this doing had its conditions. It was not enough for one to subjectively feel they had done something, it had to be truly completed. For instance, with martial arts, when his memory first recovered, Zhu Yang thought to combine the knowledge from before his transmigration with the attribute panel, perhaps through Taikai fist, military boxing, calisthenics, etc., to see if he could cultivate any martial skills. It resulted in nothing. Zhu Yang guessed that this was likely because the punches he threw were not systematic. In the system's judgment, what he was doing wasn't practicing any fist skill at all, but rather flailing his limbs randomly, which naturally wouldn't generate any fist skill, but at most something like waving hands or physical exercise. Although exercise could enhance his combat ability, it was time-consuming and inefficient, far less practical than quietly swinging a sword at night, so he simply gave it up and chose to swing a sword, thus cultivating the chopping skill. But a single chopping skill clearly wasn't enough. Zhu Yang needed a more formidable combat ability, such as learning a legitimate martial art. Yet, Zhu Yang didn't have access to any martial arts now. There was no choice but to settle for less, to continue doing things with destructive power, like throwing stones, which then could forge the flying stone. From this point, extensions like flying knives, flying swords, and flying tridents could also possess some attack power and lethality. But could these things take on a martial artist? Zhu Yang wasn't sure. Through observation and experimentation, the skill traits generated on the attribute panel indeed had the power to turn the decrepit into the miraculous. Some could even be considered divine skills or spells, beyond the scope of mortals. Take flying stone as an example. If Zhu Yang's flying stone skill developed a never-miss trait, then his flying stone would indeed never miss, hitting the target with 100% accuracy, even if the opponent used extraordinary evasion techniques, flying to the heavens or burrowing into the earth. They couldn't escape his never-miss flying stone. But guaranteeing a hit was one thing, dealing damage after the hit was another matter entirely, which still depended on the effect of the skill traits. So, Zhu Yang was uncertain if he could cultivate skills and traits with substantial lethality to face the upcoming array of hidden dangers and threats. Thus, after much thought, he still didn't have any effective plan or solution. However, Zhu Yang wasn't anxious. His decades of steadfast concealment had greatly honed his patience. Although the current situation was somewhat tricky, it wasn't at the level of a true life-and-death crisis, and it certainly could not throw him into disarray. If no solution presented itself, then he would let be. When the time came, a path would unfold before the mountain, and the bridge would straighten out once the boat arrived. There would always be a way. Harboring this mindset, Zhu Yang indulged in another pot of delicious river delicacy porridge and then comfortably fell asleep fully clothed. Sleep calms the mind, nourishes life, strengthens the body, reduces illness, prolongs life. The traits of sleep need no elaboration. Calming the mind affects one's spirit, nourishing life cultivates the essence, benefiting the body. With additional benefits like strengthening the body, reducing illness, and prolonging life, Zhu Ying's robust physique was largely nurtured by sleep, with the other half attributed to his diet. Eat well, sleep well, and the body naturally flourishes. Beyond strengthening the body and extending life, the skill of sleep also had a hidden advantage, being able to sleep whenever desired, falling asleep the moment one closed their eyes, forever free from the troubles of insomnia. Zhu Ying slumbered dressed as he was, his consciousness sinking into a warm, calming ocean. In his hazy state, he saw skyscrapers, bustling traffic, as if he had crossed back again, returning to that glittering modern city to resume a monotonous life of mindless routine. Was it real or false, good or bad? Zhu Ying couldn't say, caught between sleep and wakefulness, his dreams inverted, lost in that hallucinatory world. In this state, after an indeterminate amount of time, every image was erased, dissolving into darkness. Then, that darkness was pierced by flickering lights, the sound of water, the wind, and the calls of fish-eagles, along with the familiar fishy scent rushing into his senses, rousing the slumbering him back to reality. Chapter 5, Dream Butterfly 2. Zhu Ying slowly opened his eyes, propped up his body, sat there blankly for a while, and then summoned the attribute panel that only he could see. Above the panel, within the skill column, a line of text slowly formed, shimmering with specks of gold. Dreaming, Zhuan. Looking at those 4 characters twinkling with golden light, Zhu Ying was stunned. He had only developed one 4-character attribute so far, which was the swimming skill, like a fish in water. And a 4-character attribute with special light effects? That was like a maiden's first ride in a sedan chair, a first-time occurrence. Moreover, dreaming, such an event, astonishingly wasn't listed under the sleep attribute column, but had become an independent skill. What did this mean? It meant it was qualified to become an independent skill. Huge potential, promising future. And it didn't even require the future. Right now, it had produced a 4-character attribute resplendent with golden light. Zhuan. What effect? Zhu Ying carefully examined it, and his expression changed accordingly, showing shock, curiosity, and delight among other mixed feelings. After a short while, he looked outside the cabin, at the already clear sky, and instead of going out to fish, he lay back down on the bed, closed his eyes, and fell asleep. Darkness like a tide, then, in an instant, brightness. In a certain valley, below a cliff, amongst green grass, lay a person covered in bloodstains. It was a youth, with a pale complexion, tattered clothes, body full of wounds and bloodstains, and no longer breathing. It wouldn't be too much to call him a corpse. Suddenly, the noiseless corpse abruptly opened its eyes, filled with bewilderment, surprise, astonishment and joy. Then, he sat up, looking at his own hands and body, before lifting his head to gaze at the cliffs and vines ahead. Memories that didn't belong to him surfaced abruptly, blending with his soul. Am I Zhu Ying? No, I am Li Qingshan. No, I am Zhuan, the butterfly dreams of Zhuangzi. I am Zhu Yang, and I am also Li Qingshan. Muttering to himself a few times, regaining self-awareness, the confusion in his eyes also settled down. Zhu Ying propped up his body, and began to look around. Zhuan, the butterfly dreams of Zhuangzi. This was the effect of the 4-character attribute, allowing him to traverse into another world in a dreamlike manner, becoming another person like Zhuangzi, dreaming of a butterfly, inheriting their body, memories, and entire past life. Was it a true snatch body rebirth, traversing into another world? Or just an ephemeral, imaginary weaving of a dream journey? Zhu Ying couldn't tell, but it didn't matter. To him, whether this world was real or fake, whether this life was dream or reality, was completely irrelevant. What mattered was what benefits he could gain from it. According to the original host, Li Qingshan's memory, he was born in Little Yellow Village, a poor hunter from the mountain, with parents long deceased, leaving behind a younger brother and sister. Their lives were extremely difficult. As the pillar of the family, Li Qingshan had to work hard tilling the few mu of thin fields at home, and often had to venture into the mountains to hunt, collect, and search for medicinal herbs, just to barely sustain the lives of his younger siblings and himself. But the wilds weren't just filled with exotic treasures, they also housed many dangers, with countless venomous snakes and fierce beasts. Every year, numerous mountain dwellers lost their lives to these perils. The original Li Qingshan suffered an accident. Coming here to gather precious herbs, he accidentally fell from a cliff, crashing to the ground and losing his life. Then, Zhu Ying came here through Zhuan. Zhuan not only allowed him to transmigrate, but the accompanying divine soul also helped him heal both internal and external injuries of this body, even alleviating much of the weakness and powerlessness caused by hunger. The power of the divine soul is the key to Xuanzumengdi. Xuanzumengdi requires the consumption of the power of the divine soul, which can be supplied by Zhu Ying's original body or accumulated independently by the transmigrated incarnation. The death of the incarnation does not lead to the death of the original body, but it does cause certain damage to the original's divine soul. For most people, damage to the divine soul is a very serious matter. At best, it may lead to headaches and lethargy, and at worst, it can result in idiocy, madness, or the dispersal of the soul. But for Zhu Ying, this is not a significant issue because he has the skill sleep. The soothing nature of sleep can effectively nourish the divine soul. Even if the incarnation dies and the divine soul is injured, he can recover by resting and continuing to use Xuanzumengdi for transmigration. In other words, he is not afraid of dying. Beyond that, the power of the divine soul has another marvelous use. That is, Zhu Ying, Li Qingshan, Cultivation, Non-Lifespan, 16 out of 49 skills, none. Looking at the empty attribute panel, Zhu Ying did not speak, he simply willed it to change. Then, on the attribute panel, within the empty skills column, a line of text slowly emerged. Eating, chewing, digestion, essence, strengthening, smoothing. This is the marvelous use of the power of the divine soul. By consuming a certain amount of divine soul power, Zhu Ying's original skills can be copied and bestowed upon his incarnation. Likewise, the incarnation can also transfer the skills cultivated by itself to the original body, essentially like having a subsidiary account for power leveling. Not just skills, but if the divine soul power is sufficient, even physical items can be transported between the two worlds, facilitating exchange as needed. Unfortunately, Zhu Ying currently has no cultivation, and the divine soul nurtured by sleep is only slightly stronger than that of ordinary people. For now, he can only transfer one skill, and that's as far as he can go. This is the original body's only support. After considering for a while, Zhu Ying ultimately chose eating, the skill with the widest application. Why not choose breathing? Because breathing is easy to practice, and it does not require the support of the original body. In a short time, the incarnation can learn it on its own. Eating is different. According to his memory, the living conditions of the original Li Qingshan were not good, and enduring hunger was common. To cultivate the skill of eating, who knows how much time would be needed. Dreamlike transmigration, snatch body incarnation, are the basic functions of Xuanzumengdi. Besides, Xuanzumengdi also has a special hidden effect. That is time dilation. There is a considerable difference in the flow of time between the dream world and the real world, with different worlds having different flow rates. Currently, the ratio of the flow of time between the real world and this world is 1 to 365. In other words, for every year that passes in the incarnation's dream world, only 1 day passes in Zhu Ying's real world. Incarnation for power leveling plus time hack? This is Xuanzumengdi. A golden legend, the 4-word trait, indeed extraordinary. Having received all the information and glancing once again at the precious herb growing on the cliff above, Zhu Ying didn't think twice. He picked up the scattered items and the backpack nearby, then turned and walked away. Climb the mountain? Sorry, I can't. And even if he could, he wouldn't while it's just an incarnation and he's not afraid of dying. Recklessness still needs to be calculated. How to take risks to gain the highest returns is a question that must be considered. Chapter 6, Mountain Household. One little yellow village, the sun setting in the west, smoke curling up from the kitchens, a beautiful rural scene indeed. Zhu Ying, carrying a basket on his back, returned to the village, guided by memory. This. Qingshan? Is that Li Laoda's boy? Gone for so many days, and he didn't die? Really has a big life. Things are heating up now. Upon entering the village, he was met with many astonished gazes and peculiar stares. A tall, sturdy-looking youth came quickly towards him. Qingshan, where did you go? Zhu Ying glanced at him and made up an excuse on the spot. I got lost in the mountains. It took me a long time to find my way out. What's going on? Well, you have no idea. Green River and Red Jade were almost out of their minds with worry, and remembering something, the youth's expression changed again, and he grabbed Zhu Ying's hand. You'd better hurry home and see for yourself. A big group of people are at your place, preparing a feast, and they're talking about dividing up your family's land. Zhu Ying's eyes narrowed, and he quickly left the youth behind and headed for home. There's a saying that fits well, a poor mountain and bad water produce a crafty people. The peasants between the fields and the wilds were actually not as simple and kind as romantic poets imagined, but more often than not, they were driven to sly and ugly acts by a life of hardship and dire poverty, calculating cruelly. Such as devouring a family's last resources. The so-called devouring of a family's last resources refers to when the head of a household dies, relatives and friends come to help with the funeral arrangements, disposing of the deceased's land, houses, and other assets, either by dividing or selling them. Then, they lay out banquet tables and feast for days or even weeks, until they have consumed all of the household savings. As for the bereaved wife and children, ancient customs never considered women to count as much, and if there was no reliable in-law family or a son old enough to shoulder responsibilities, they would have no choice but to be at the mercy of others. Not to mention the family's savings, even their own safety was not guaranteed. Being sold off and remarried was a common occurrence. Only a few lucky widows, with their fierce personalities and clan protection, could establish themselves in the village, but that was contingent on having a male heir. Without one, and without clan protection, no matter how tough a woman was, she could not withstand the crafty harassment of local hooligans. The parents of Zhu Ying's incarnation had died early, and he had not yet had time to marry and have children. The household consisted only of a pair of young siblings. How could they stand against those with evil intentions, like tigers, leopards, and wolves? Therefore, Zhu Ying hurried home, and from afar, he saw his dilapidated courtyard alive with the sound of gongs and drums, and bustle all around. Zhu Ying's expression unchanged, he strode ahead, arriving at his own door to see several tables set up for a feast in the courtyard, with a crowd of people toasting and engrossed in eating and drinking. Most of them were men, but there were also many women, with children in tow, sitting in the yard, nimbly scraping bowls and snatching food. In the crowd, two stood out. A boy and a girl, both half-grown children, huddled at the inner room's doorway, looking helplessly at the people eating and drinking in the yard. When Zhu Ying caught sight of them, they too saw him, and tears welled up in their swollen eyes. "Brother! You're back!" The siblings ran to the door in their surprise and joy, the slightly younger girl throwing herself into Zhu Ying's arms, sobbing, "Brother, they took all the rice from home, the vegetables from the fields, and the meat too. I tried to stop them, but they hit me." The little girl cried in Zhu Ying's arms, recounting her grievances, while the slightly taller boy stood by, red-eyed and gritting his teeth, barely holding back his tears. This scene brought a sudden stiffness to the atmosphere in the yard. Those gathered around the wine tables looked at Zhu Ying and his siblings, their expressions shifting from shock to strangeness, from strangeness to awkwardness, until they found themselves without a place to hide. "Well, Qinshan, you're back? Where have you been all these days? Everyone thought something had happened to you." A few individuals attempted to justify themselves, but upon encountering Zhu Ying's icy gaze, their words choked in their throats. Caught between sitting and standing, they were utterly embarrassed. Just then, "Hey! Isn't that Qinshan?" At that moment, a loud laughter rang out. Everyone turned to look, and there, at the central and largest table, sat a man with a bare chest, thick with hair, holding a wine bowl and laughing loudly. "We haven't seen you for many days, everyone thought you were dead. Here they are, at your house, helping to arrange the funeral. Brother." Seeing this, before Zhu Ying could react, the young boy at his side tugged at him and whispered, He took our land deeds." Zhu Ying looked at the boy, then turned his gaze back to the burly man. This man was Liu. In terms of kinship, he was an uncle to the Zhu Ying siblings. In Little Yellow Village, he was a well-known layabout, always idling, sneaking about, and never doing honest work. Confronted with Zhu Ying's frosty stare, Liu appeared unconcerned, tossing a meaty bone on the ground. A black dog immediately sprung to it, gnawing vigorously. Only then did Liu scoff, "Qinshan, although we are relatives, even brothers must settle their debts clearly. Everyone has been helping out at your place, and I've covered all these expenses. Now that you're back, shouldn't we settle this properly, clear and square?" Upon hearing this, everyone was momentarily stunned, shocked by Liu's shameless bullying but also feeling a sense of relieved justification for their discomfort. Just as Liu had said, with regards to the banquet arrangements to handle everything inside and out, how could Zhu Ying and his siblings afford it? It was Liu who had stepped forward, advanced the money, enabling everyone to enjoy such a feast. Chapter 6, Mountain Household 2. But what kind of person was Liu, and how could he be so kind-hearted? He funded the feast solely to secure those few thin acres of land from Zhu Ying's family, effectively sealing the mouths of others with a share of money. Now that Zhu Ying was alive and had returned, the matter of seizing the land was definitely off the table. But since Liu had spent the money and hosted the banquet, he naturally refused to let his efforts go to waste, leading to his demand to settle accounts with Zhu Yang. A clear-cut rogue. And he was indeed such a shameless idler. With him stepping forward, the crowd felt less awkward, looking at Zhu Yang, eager to see how he would resolve the situation. Would he admit his bad luck and pay off Liu with some money? Or would he escalate the situation, causing a racket that would end up before the clan leader for judgment? Under the scrutiny of all present, Zhu Ying remained silent, simply withdrawing a hatchet used for chopping firewood from his basket and striding toward Li Jiu, brother. This. Seeing Zhu Ying pull out a hatchet, everyone's expression changed, and they hurriedly stood up to get out of the way. Li Jiu's face twitched, but he quickly suppressed it and scoffed, "Oh, I see you've grown bolder in just a few days, daring to raise your hand against an elder. Do you think I, Li Jiu, grew up being scared? I've seen it all over the years. If you dare, strike me here." Before he could finish his sentence, Zhu Ying, with a cold expression, walked over, causing Li Jiu's heart to skip a beat and a sense of foreboding to wash over him. Woof! The black dog at his feet, seeing a stranger approaching, bared its teeth at Zhu Ying, ready to pounce. But Zhu Ying did not stop, and he not only didn't stop but also suddenly accelerated, charging right in front of Li Jiu. Grrr. The black dog pounced, aiming to bite Zhu Ying. But he was caught off guard by Zhu Ying's quicker movements. Zhu Ying grabbed the hatchet with both hands and split it down on the dog. Plop. A muffled sound followed by a blood splatter. The black dog was struck in the face by Zhu Ying's hatchet and flipped onto the ground, letting out a pitiful whine as it twisted and convulsed. Without hesitation, Zhu Ying advanced and began hacking and smashing the dog on the ground. In a short while, the vicious canine was silenced. Only then did Li Jiu snap back to his senses. Looking at the mangled remains of the dead dog on the ground and then at Zhu Ying, who was holding the hatchet covered in blood, a chill ran up from his tailbone to the back of his head, causing his legs to uncontrollably shake. "You!" Bang! Before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by a loud noise as Zhu Ying moved in and violently kicked him between the legs. The unexpected kick caught Li Jiu unprepared, his vulnerable spot taking a heavy hit. His legs drew together in pain, his face streaked with tears and snot, so much in agony that he couldn't make a sound. Unsatisfied, Zhu Ying delivered another kick, knocking him to the ground. Then, grasping the hatchet, he turned it backward and brought the flat side down on the soft cartilage of Li Jiu's shoulder. Crack! A crisp sound rang out, accompanied by wailing, while the scene instantly descended into chaos. "Qinshan, what are you doing?" "Murder, it's a murder. Quick, go find the clan leader. Hold him down, quickly hold him down." The crowd was in a panic, their shrieks unceasing. Undeterred, Zhu Ying flipped the back of the hatchet, pressing the heavy and rough cutting edge against Li Jiu's neck. "Where's the deed?" With his lower body injured and his shoulder bone shattered, Li Jiu was in so much pain he was nearly out of his mind, but the hatchet's blade against his neck and Zhu Ying's cold words brought him back to his senses. He called out repeatedly, "In my jacket pocket, in my jacket pocket, don't kill me, don't kill me." Zhu Ying then got up and turned to his siblings, saying, "Get his clothes over here." "Oh." The equally petrified siblings finally snapped out of it, and Li Qing ran to fetch Li Jiu's clothes, handing them to Zhu Ying. Zhu Ying took the clothes and rummaged through the pockets for his family's deed and a small string of copper coins, which he collected without hesitation. Then he turned to the crowd and said, "Coming for the feast is fine, but shouldn't you also hand over the banquet contribution?" Hearing this, the terrified crowd pulled themselves together, exchanging glances, uncertain and uneasy. In the end, a few elders mustered the courage to step forward. "Qinshan, about this matter." Bang! Their words were cut short as Zhu Ying brought the hatchet down on the table. "Will you pay or not?" A few old fellows froze in place, staring at Zhu Ying, whose presence exuded a sinister evil chi and who was covered in blood, and found themselves speechless. Since ancient times, the imperial power did not extend to the countryside. The villages were entirely self-governed by clans, landlords, local strongmen, and noble families. They were the emperors of the soil. Thus, regulations were extremely lax, and conflicts involving villagers wielding weapons were commonplace. The battles were about ruthlessness. The more ruthless one was, the more fearsome and powerful they became. Was Zhu Ying ruthless enough? Of course, he was. For decades on Dongding Lake, he had sent countless scoundrels like Zhang family father and son off to their deaths. Killing people was to him as ordinary as anything else. So, not only was he ruthless, but he was also swift and accurate. Now, as Yuan Zumengdi, without the fear of life and death concerning his original body, he was like hardened flesh cut by a rolling blade. Aside from those nobles in high mansions, there was no one in the village whom he did not dare provoke or contend with. The share money, of course, it's due. A few old ghosts stuttered for a while, trembling as they brought out a few copper coins and placed them on the table, then looked back at Zhu Ying. Zhu Ying also turned his gaze to the others. At his glance, the crowd felt the hairs on their skin stand on end, and they could only fumble at their purses with shaking hands. After a brief period of scrabbling about, most of the people had paid their share and left the place as if fleeing for their lives. Only a few women, truly unable to produce any money, could only look at Zhu Ying with faces full of sorrow and eyes begging for mercy. Qinshan, we get lost. Gathering the money wasn't the objective, establishing authority was. Thus, Zhu Ying did not waste much time bickering with these sons of turtles and drove everyone out before looking down at Lile Jiu, who was quivering on the ground. Qinshan, no, big brother Qinshan, Grandpa Qinshan, I was wrong, please, don't kill me. Feeling Zhu Ying's gaze, Lile Jiu could not care about the severe pain and kept begging for mercy. Zhu Ying held the short axe and looked coldly at him. After staring for a good while, he finally said, get lost. Yes, yes, yes. Lile Jiu, as if granted a royal pardon, struggled to his feet and ran outside as if escaping from peril. Zhu Ying watched him leave with cold eyes. He knew this son of a turtle would definitely not let things rest. But he had no choice. Even though imperial power did not extend to the countryside, it did not mean one could kill at will. Under the governance of clans and strongmen, there were still rules and order. It was okay to fight on regular days, but causing a death was a different matter. So, he could only let Lile Jiu go. Brother. After Lile Jiu left, the once bustling courtyard became completely quiet. Li King looked at Zhu Yang, covered in blood, with a mix of fear and excitement, while Li Hong did not think too much and collected the copper coins on the nearby tables, coming to Zhu Yang with a face full of joy. So much money. Zhu Yang wiped the dog blood off his face and said to the two, go and fetch a basin of water. Oh. A moment later, a clean Zhu Yang was sitting by the dining table, while Li King and Li Hong transferred all the food and drinks from several tables over to him. Though called food and drinks, the servings were quite meager. Combined, they could not muster a few meat dishes, and even the rice was coarse. Yet Zhu Yang was unconcerned. Holding a large bowl, he lifted his chopsticks and, seeing Li King and Li Hong salivating, said, eat. Oh. The two children, who had always been hungry, had never seen such a feast. Given permission by Zhu Yang, they immediately started to dig in with their utensils. Zhu Yang did not correct their manners, for his own table etiquette was not much better, scooping up food by the bowlful and eating voraciously. As the sole support for his original body at the moment, the effects of culinary skills needed no elaboration, especially for this body that had been increasingly malnourished. Eating a great deal could rapidly fill the nutritional void and strengthen the physique. Thanks to this, the food capacity of Zhu Ying's body experienced a remarkable increase. He consumed almost the entire table of food and drinks, astonishing Li King and Li Hong, who were also stuffed to the brim. Brother, you. How could you eat that much? The two looked at Zhu Yang with concern, feeling that their brother seemed somewhat different, even a little frightening. Zhu Yang glanced at them and offered no explanation, merely asking, do you trust me? This. Children of the poor mature early, and the two had a maturity beyond their years. Now hearing Zhu Yang speak like this, they became worried. Brother, what's wrong? Zhu Yang shook his head and said gravely, Lile Jiu has suffered such a big loss, he won't let it go easily. I've heard that he has some connections with the Li family. If he seeks revenge, we won't be able to bear it. Then what do we do? The two became even more alarmed upon hearing this. Zhu Yang took out the previous land deeds and said to them, if you trust me as your elder brother, then follow me. Chapter 7, Selling Oneself. Although it is but a few meager acres, it is still the family's heritage. You truly wish to sell it? In the ancient styled hall, a middle-aged man dressed in a robe and garb of an officer sat in a high seat, looking down at Zhu Yang and two others below, then at the land deed in his hand, his expression filled with a playfully complex sentiment. Zhu Yang nodded and said in a deep voice, not only the land, but my siblings and I, all three of us, are willing to sell ourselves into servitude to the Lu family in hope that Officer Lu will show mercy and provide us three siblings with a place to live, to shelter us from the wind and rain. Officer Lu stroked his beard and appraised Zhu Yang with half-closed eyes, then smiled and said, I have heard about the affairs of your family, and indeed, you have been somewhat excessive. Very well, I will take these acres. As for the three of you siblings, you will come to my house and work as a laborer, and these acres will still be under your family's care. How does that sound? Many thanks, my lord. Upon hearing this, Zhu Yang did not say much, simply bowing his head and expressing his gratitude. Officer Lu glanced at him, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, then he passed the land deed to the steward next to him. Zhang Fu, you will handle this matter. Speak with the Li family properly, and ensure no misunderstandings arise. Yes, my lord. Steward Zhang Fu took the land deed and motioned to Zhu Yang and the others, follow me. Zhu Yang nodded, leading Li King and Li Hong away from the hall. Little Yellow Village was home to two prominent families with the surnames Li and Lu. Though from the same village, the relationship between the two families was not good, and disputes were frequent. Hence, Zhu Yang, carrying the land deed and accompanied by his siblings, resolutely sought refuge with the Liu family, even at the cost of enslaving themselves. This was a step taken out of necessity. That bastard Li Leijiu had some ties to the powerful Li family of the Li clan, and Zhu Ying had just severely extorted those extortioners, virtually alienating all of his kin. Given this, where else could they find shelter within the Li clan? To prevent revenge from Li Leijiu and avoid further troubles from the Li clan, Zhu Ying decisively sold himself to the Liu family. The Liu family, like the Li family, was a major household in Little Yellow Village. The two families were competitors and could be considered old rivals. Officer Liu, known far and wide as a great philanthropist, naturally did not mind taking in Zhu Ying, a person ostracized by the Li family. Doing so, he not only acquired a good reputation but also got one over on his old rival. On top of that, he gained a few acres of land, a case of killing 3 birds with 1 stone, a win for both honor and profit. As for the violent methods and the chaos Zhu Ying had caused at the Li family's expense, Officer Liu was unconcerned. It was common for mountain folk to be fierce, especially a youth with vigorous chi blood. Seeing someone bring ruin upon his own house in a fit of passion was quite normal, and there was no need to worry about welcoming such a household slave as a potential threat, let alone that the deeds for the land and property were securely in hand, leaving no room for any waves to be made. Such a person, if tamed well, would be a loyal dog, and in a few generations, the Liu family would have more servants of clean background and unwavering loyalty, a pleasant prospect indeed. Thus, after a busy half-day, this matter finally came to a conclusion. Zhu Ying sold the land deeds, property, and even himself and his siblings to the Liu family and were now servants of the Liu family. The Liu family also kept their promise and resolved the matter of Li Leijiu, causing the Li family to lose some face, neither too great nor too small. As a result, the grudge held by the Li family was certainly inevitable, and members of the Li clan would likely curse him behind his back and perhaps even seek trouble with him in secret. But Zhu Ying did not care in the slightest. As long as it wasn't an overt life-threatening action, he simply didn't give it any thought. All he needed was time, a period of stable development. Brother. That night, at home, Li Qing and Li Hong looked at their elder brother, full of confusion, having returned after selling themselves into servitude. Is it really okay to do this? That Liu family does not seem to be made of good people. Whether they are good or not isn't important, Zhu Ying shook his head and said with a light laugh, what's important is that they can handle the Li family, understand? This. The siblings wanted to say more, but upon meeting Zhu Ying's gaze, the words caught in their throats, and all they could do was nod in agreement. Understood. It's good that you understand, Zhu Ying nodded and said solemnly, just endure for a few years, I already have plans, don't worry. No wonder Li Qing and Li Hong were worried. Zhu Ying's decision was indeed debatable. Although the Li family was not made of good people, the Liu family was not any better, yet Zhu Ying had sold his entire family to them, which seemed utterly foolish. Now, not only had the 3 siblings lost their land, but they had also lost their freedom. Their lives were entirely in the hands of the Liu family, alive or dead at their whim. To have come to such a juncture, it might have been better to swallow the past grudges and feign compliance with Li Leijiu and others. After all, he too was a member of the Li clan, and the Li family would not go too far. The intentions of the Liu family, however, were uncertain. To forsake one's clan for a moment's arrogance and sell oneself to the Liu family was sheer stupidity. But this was merely how ordinary people saw the situation. For Zhu Ying, things like lands and deeds were worthless. They were not the foundation of his existence nor the crux of his fate. His foundation lay in the attribute panel and skill traits. As long as he could cultivate powerful skills and traits, nobody would be able to hold him down. Unfortunately, this attribute panel had one flaw, which was that one couldn't actively assign points. If I wanted to develop skills, I had to practice and accumulate experience until the skills formed. Therefore, Zhu Ying needed time, a period of stable development time, to cultivate powerful skills and traits. For this reason, he resolutely beat up Li Leijiu, intimidated the others into paying their dues, and even turned against the Li clan, crafting for himself an image of a brash and butcherous character. This deterred those plotting evil schemes. Otherwise, after dealing with a Li Leijiu, there would emerge a Li Leijiu. It's the simple truth that if one is too kind, one will be bullied, and if a horse is too gentle, it will be ridden hard. With this deterrence in place and then binding himself to the Liu family, using them as a powerful backer, he would surely sleep soundly for years to come. Besides, selling himself and his lands had also netted him a sum of silver coins, which were perfect for seed capital. Next was to use this precious development time and the starting capital from selling himself and the land to focus on practicing skills. There was no ambition for domination, just a need to ensure a foothold in the village. With the attribute panel, As long as I could firmly establish myself in the early stages, I could grow and expand, gradually exploring this world, utilizing its various resources to change the difficult circumstances in the real world. So, it's late, go to sleep. Zhu Yang comforted a worried Li King and Li Hongyu, then lay down on the bed and fell asleep. Meanwhile, in the real world, on a covered boat, Zhu Yang opened his eyes, got up efficiently, took out the coarse rice he had bought the day before, grabbed a handful and stuffed it into his mouth, chewing vigorously. In the dream of Zhu and Zumengdi, the flow of time between the two realms was vast. He could not afford to linger too long in reality, or Li King-san would not just die of thirst or hunger, he would be buried alive as if dead by others. Therefore, there was no time to prepare food, he had to gulp down the rice raw, eating as quickly as possible before returning to the world of Mengdi. The coarse rice was rough to begin with, and eating it raw was tough, but fortunately, Zhu Yang's eating skill included the trait chewing. His strong teeth effortlessly crushed the coarse grains, and swiftly, he had ingested nearly half a bag of coarse rice. After swallowing nearly half a bag of coarse rice and gulping down a few ladles of water, his previously somewhat empty stomach quickly bloated. Seeing this, Zhu Yang lay back down without a word and fell asleep again. His eating skill had now reached a point where one meal could last as long as 10. This single meal could sustain him for 3 to 4 days, even 5 to 6 days. In the world of Mengdi, that translated to 5 to 6 years, more than enough to complete his initial development plan. In the world of Mengdi, the crowing of a rooster woke up Zhu Yang. To say he woke up wasn't quite accurate, for he hadn't slept at all. Given the 365-fold difference in time flow, he had just finished eating in the real world, and a whole night had already passed in Mengdi, barely leaving any time for sleep. But he was still full of energy. After freshening up, he said goodbye to Li King and Li Hongyu and headed to the Lu family. He planned to seek a job, as it would help him develop his skills. As for what kind of job, he had already planned it out. The Lu family, being landlords with ancestors who had been imperial scholars, had accumulated a formidable fortune over the generations, well known not just in Little Yellow Village but also for miles around. In an agricultural society, land was everything, but the income of large landlords wasn't solely derived from farming or renting out land. Growing crops and collecting rent? That would only bring in so much. For true landlords and gentry, leasing out land and exploiting tenants were just one of many revenue streams, securing the most basic income from grain. To grow and strengthen their holdings, they had to employ other means, such as renting out land, lending with high interest, seizing properties forcefully, monopolizing salt and iron, breeding slaves, trafficking people, evading taxes, and so on. In doing so, generation after generation accumulated wealth, becoming the local tycoons and even monopolists, forming the base of the ruling system, governing the world together with the royal family and noble clans. The Li and Lu families of Little Yellow Village, although not to that extent, were still considered local powerhouses, engaging in plenty of semi-legal shady dealings. For such a family business to remain stable, significant martial protection was essential, and both families maintained quite a few house guards and even hired martial instructors. Zhu Yang originally wanted to become a house guard, learning martial arts from the instructors along the way, but he soon dismissed this idea. It wasn't that he didn't want to learn martial arts, but he was aware of his limits. For guards like these, the most important qualities were an untainted background and unwavering loyalty, as they mostly employed homegrown sons. As an outsider with the last name Li, even if he sold himself to the Lu family, he would have no right to such a position, and seeking it would be humiliating. So, Steward Zhang, I would like to seek a job as a butcher. I hope you can help. Zhu Yang approached Zhang Fu, the steward who had handled the paperwork for his indenture the day before, got straight to the point about his intentions, and handed over a small pouch of coins. Oh? Zhang Fu, unashamed, took the pouch and weighed it for a moment before looking up at Zhu Yang. You know how to slaughter pigs and cattle? Not really. Zhu Yang shook his head, smiling lightly, but I have the strength, and I've hunted animals before. It shouldn't be hard to learn. I see. Alright, it just so happens we're short-staffed over there. I'll assign you as an apprentice. Zhang Fu, pondering the weight of the pouch, eventually agreed after some thought. Thank you, Steward Zhang. Chapter 8, Practice 1. Although the Lu family wasn't one of those top local tyrants, within 10 miles of Little Yellow Village, they were a well-known big household, monopolizing the surrounding slaughter business and even raising a group of butchers under them. On regular days, the Lu family would buy pigs, dogs, cattle, and sheep from the surrounding area, slaughter them, and then sell the meat at the town market. Sometimes, they would also supply various restaurants in the county, making a fair amount of silver in the process. Zhu Yang spent money to get this job, firstly to acquire skills, and secondly to secure a source of meat. Slaughtering pigs, dogs, cattle, and sheep should allow one to develop skills related to killing, and at the very least, one could practice their knife skills. Just like how the skill Flying Stone developed from skipping stones, he hoped to develop related offensive skills. As for meat, there was no hope for prime cuts, but getting some offal was not a problem, and with money, he could even buy certain amounts of meat at an internal employee rate. With a stable source of meat, along with the money from selling himself and the dietary skills supported by his original body, Zhu Ying could soon nourish the thin body of the young man he possessed. By then, he might not be able to handle martial instructors, but dealing with a few manor guards or a scoundrel like Liu Jiu should be no problem at all. With money, as the saying goes, one can make even the devil's turn mills. With the arrangement by Zhang Fu, the chief steward, Zhu Ying was rather smoothly admitted as an apprentice butcher. Of course, Zhu Ying's own performance wasn't bad either. After all, for a job like butchering, the key was physical strength and courage. Zhu Ying was not lacking in either and even had quite some work experience, so getting the job was naturally not difficult. At noon, a blood-stained Zhu Ying returned home carrying a load of pig offal. These were not shares from slaughtering pigs. Apprentice workers just starting out had no right to compete with veteran butchers. He could only buy some at a relatively favorable price, barely qualifying as an employee benefit. "Brother." Li Hongyu opened the door to greet him, but as soon as she approached, she was driven back by the smell emanating from Zhu Ying and quickly pinched her nose. "What is that smell?" "Tonight we eat meat." Zhu Ying smiled, not saying much, and handed the pig offal to Li Hongyu, then went into the house to pick up a bamboo basket, a small axe, and a hunting bow. His younger brother Li King approached. "Brother, it's already noon, are you still going into the mountains?" "Yes." Zhu Ying nodded. "I'm going to see if I can catch anything." Li King's eyes lit up. "Can I go too?" Zhu Ying shook his head with a smile. "Wait a few more years, then I'll take you with me." "Oh." Li King drew out the word, seemingly very disappointed. Zhu Ying did not say more, shouldering the bamboo basket and leaving home, ready to go hunting in the mountains. He was not only going to be a butcher but also a hunter. After all, archery was a very sharp long-range offensive method. Not to mention the transmigrator who had experienced an information explosion, anyone with a bit of vision would know the advantage long-range had over close combat, so if there was a chance to practice, he would take it. In this manner. By evening, Zhu Ying returned home, the bamboo basket on his back seeming quite heavy. "Brother, what did you catch?" Li King and Li Hongyu ran out and then stopped, looking at the full bamboo basket on Zhu Ying's back, their eyes filled with confusion. "Why did you cut so much bamboo and bring it home? Didn't you say you were going hunting?" In the face of their queries, Zhu Ying smiled and put down the bamboo basket. Sharpening knives does not hinder chopping wood. With that, he sat down and began to organize the bamboo he had cut. Why would he bring back a bunch of bamboo when he said he was going hunting? Simple, because he came back empty-handed. Although he had inherited the memories and identity of Li Qingshan was not any formidable hunter, and his hunting skills were quite average. It was perfectly normal for him not to catch any game. Previously, there were even plans to sell the hunting bow and permit to focus solely on farming. Now that Zhu Ying had transmigrated over, this situation had not changed since he only knew how to fish and not how to hunt. But lack of ability was not a problem, he would just practice. With the attribute panel, there was no skill he couldn't learn. Therefore, Zhu Ying cut a basket of bamboo and brought it back to practice the archery skill. He took a fresh bamboo stick, shaved off all its branches and leaves, then carved 2 grooves at both ends before bending the entire stick into a crescent shape and binding it with a vine he had also brought back. Thus, a simple and crude bamboo bow that would be considered a mere toy for children was made. Not bad. Although it wouldn't last long and its lethality was almost nil, Zhu Ying was still satisfied and nodded his approval of his own work. The crudeness didn't matter, and nor did the fact it would break soon. As long as it allowed him to perform the act of archery, that was enough. The key to practicing skills is the actual doing. Doing it well is certainly the icing on the cake, but even doing it poorly doesn't necessarily mean one cannot turn decay into magic. When he practiced the skill of disguise, wasn't it just smearing mud on his face, hunching his body, and lowering his voice? In the end, he still managed to develop the skill of disguise, and even acquired powerful skill traits like concealing presence and shrinking bone. Therefore, it is not key whether one does well enough but whether one does enough and for long enough. The bow was ready, but arrows were needed. Zhu Ying took a few thin bamboo twigs and, without bothering with fletching for balance, simply whittled the front end into a point, creating a roughly made arrow. "Brother, what are you doing? Is this a bow and arrow? What can that bow and arrow do? Erg's slingshot from next door is more powerful than that." Looking at Zhu Ying's crudely made work, Li King and Li Hong were even more puzzled. "Don't worry about it, go cook the meal." With a smile, Zhu Ying sent the two youngsters on their way and continued with his grand bow-making endeavor. In ancient times, bow and arrow making was a high-precision craft, demanding great skill from the craftsmen and high-quality materials, which included the 6 materials: wood, horn, sinew, glue, silk, and lacquer. Wood was for the bow limbs, forming the main body and determining the bow's draw weight, range, and lethality. Horn and sinew, from animal horns and tendons respectively, were attached to the inner and outer sides of the bow limbs to enhance the bow's elasticity and power. Glue, silk, and lacquer were all extremely important as well, and only with the best materials could a fine bow be crafted. The bamboo bow Zhu Ying was making had no relation to the word fine. It was feared that after a few draws, it might break. But no matter, if quality was a lacking, quantity would make up for it. If one bow failed, then make 10, if 10 failed, then 100. Since bamboo and vines cost nothing, he could freely gather and craft them without any limit, surely be able to grind out a skill. Apart from archery skills, the act of making bows and arrows might also generate a skill, providing Zhu Ying with another craft to generate revenue. In ancient times, craftsmen who could make bows and arrows were considered a resource for wartime readiness. Not to mention other things, making enough to support a family was definitely doable. Zhu Ying was quick with his hands, and since the bamboo bows and arrows didn't require fine craftsmanship, he worked rapidly, and before nightfall, he had transformed a basket of bamboo into a collection of bamboo bows and arrows. "Brother, it's time to eat." Li King and Li Hongya had also finished preparing dinner, so Zhu Ying put down what he was doing, got up, and went to sit down at the dinner table. "Brother, here's yours." Li Hongya presented him with a large bowl. Inside was steaming coarse rice, and on the table, there was also a big bowl of offal soup as a side dish, which didn't exactly whet the appetite. The pigs raised by the rural households of the village were generally not castrated, making their scent particularly strong, and the offal was no exception. Without sufficient spices, it was no easy task to turn these ingredients into a delicious meal. Therefore, the bowl of pork offal on the table, frankly, wasn't tempting, especially to Zhu Ying. Even so, Li King and Li Hongya gazed at the bowl, swallowing repeatedly at the sight of the fat floating on the soup's surface. With a smile, Zhu Ying picked up his bowl and chopsticks. "Let's eat." Yep. Having received approval from the head of the household, the two youngsters couldn't wait any longer and immediately started using their chopsticks. With the silver he had earned, Zhu Ying wasn't going to shortchange himself. Although the meat dish was just a rough serving of pork offal, they had enough coarse rice and plenty of vegetables. The meal was quite a feast for Li King and Li Hongya. While there was no wine to enjoy, there was plenty of food, and after they cleaned up the dishes, Zhu Ying went back to his workstation. He picked up the simple bamboo bow and, facing the earth wall in the yard, he began practicing archery. A target? There was no target. After so many years of practicing skills, Zhu Ying had come up with a set of rules and insights for skill training. At the beginning of practice, it's best to aim for quantity. Once a certain level is reached or a skill is generated, then gradually focus on quality to produce high-value traits. Therefore, he didn't make a target, or rather, the earth wall served as his target, helping him complete the set of actions, drawing the bow, firing the arrow, and hitting the mark. By then, night had fallen, and the moon was high in the sky. Little Yellow Village was engulfed in quiet darkness, with only a few households like the Liu family still lit up. Lamp oil and candles were expenses, so ordinary households would save where they could. Besides, there was nothing much to do at night except for producing and raising children, so most people were asleep. Under the cold moonlight, Zhu Ying held the bow, stood tall, and corrected his posture and movements according to the techniques and instincts from Li Qingshan's memory. He then drew the bamboo bow and shot towards the earth wall. The result? Snap. A quiet sound, and the bamboo arrow fell to the ground, having only floated forward a few steps, not even reaching the earth wall. Zhu Ying didn't mind and continued to adjust his posture and actions, drawing the bamboo bow and firing another arrow. This time it was slightly better. The bamboo arrow flew 5 to 6 steps and landed at the foot of the earth wall. Zhu Ying smiled and continued to draw the bow. His posture and movements gradually became standardized, and he had thoroughly mastered the original archery skills of the body. And so, under the cold moonlight, a skinny young man bent his bow and shot arrow after arrow at the earth wall. The light bamboo arrows flew out, chaotically at first, then gradually hitting the wall and leaving marks, until each bamboo arrow pierced into the yellow mud, sticking out from the top of the wall. Chapter 9, 3 years flew by, and in the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. In Little Yellow Village, at the Liu family's large estate, within a kitchen courtyard, a heavy stench of blood and foulness permeated the air, accompanied by the shrill screams that echoed. "Quick, hold it down." This beast is so strong. We've got it pinned. Where's the bucket? Bring it over. Kinshan, come quickly. Several bare-chested, brawny men pressed a fat black pig onto the stone slab, but given the pig's heft and strength, they all struggled to restrain it. Amidst the chaos, the place was filled with the sounds of a pig's desperate wails. Just then, a muscular youth, also bare-chested, strode into the scene with a pointed knife in hand. With one hand, he pressed the pig's head down, and with the other, he thrust the pointed knife into the pig's throat with impeccable accuracy. The stinking pig blood spurted out, falling into the bucket below without splashing a drop on anyone. The youth pulled out the knife and turned to leave, and the men also let go of the black pig, waiting for the blood to drain before hoisting it up. The youth came back, knife in hand, and skillfully slit open the pig's belly, expertly removed the internal organs, carving out the heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys, then cleaved the spine in two, smoothly splitting the whole pig into two halves. He lifted one half, tossed it onto the cutting board, then took the knife to dissect it further, removing the spine, tenderloin, ribs, fatty layers, forelegs and hindlegs, pig's knuckles, and trotters. One half of the pig was swiftly sectioned off. Like flowing clouds and streaming water, a feast for the eyes. Having finished with one half, he took up the other, and within the time it took to drink a cup of tea under the youth's skilled knife work, the hefty pig transformed into neatly separated chunks of meat. Send these prime cuts to the kitchen, take these leg meats to the butcher's shop, this small tenderloin should go to Steward Zhang. Zhu Yang meticulously sorted the pieces of pork. Then he pulled out a piece of spine with a decent amount of meat on it, took up his knife, and started chopping. After he was done, he grabbed a piece of pig liver and threw them both into the bamboo basket at his feet. Only then did he put down his cleaver and told the others, "You all can divide the rest." Without waiting for the people's reactions, he picked up the basket filled with pork bones and liver and walked away. The butchers watched and did not dare to stop him. Only after he left did someone comment in a hushed voice. "Kinshan is getting bolder and bolder. Isn't that the truth? That spine had at least a pound of meat on it. If Steward Zhang finds out, won't he flay a layer of skin from him? Steward Zhang, come on, you can't take much from a man whose hand you've fed, Steward Zhang won't bother with it." "Exactly, I heard Kinshan gives most of his pocket money to Steward Zhang every month, why would Zhang make it difficult for him? Not to mention how formidable Kinshan is, not only his skills in slaughtering pigs and butchering cows are brilliant, but his ability to fight and compete is also not bad. A while ago, when he was fighting over water with the Li family, those from the Li Leiji who ended up bedridden, I've heard. With Kinshan's fierce spirit, what's a few extra pieces of meat? Not to mention Steward Zhang, even if the master knew, he'd probably turn a blind eye. I've heard the master values Kinshan a lot and is even preparing to transfer him to serve as a guard in the household. Cut it out, don't spread rumors. Li Qingshan is nothing but a conscienceless butcher. Being a member of the Li family and yet so ruthless towards his own kin, how could the master ever favor him? He's lucky enough to be mixing with us. Exactly, he takes so much meat for himself and leaves us with some stinking offal, treating us like beggars? The crowd's attitudes varied, some respected him, some feared him, and some detested him but were helpless to change anything. But none of this mattered much to Zhu Yang. Carrying his basket, he returned home. Brother. Li Hongyu, who had grown into a young lady, came out to meet him, cheerfully taking the basket from Zhu Yang's hands. Upon opening it, she exclaimed in delight, "So much, and with meat, too. How many pigs did you kill today?" "One, a big one." Zhu Yang smiled and walked into the courtyard. Li King, who had also grown quite a bit, came up to him holding a fuzzy rabbit. "Brother, when I went to chop bamboo today, I ran into this critter. Look, isn't it fat? Not bad." Zhu Yang nodded with approval. "We'll have the bones for lunch, save the rabbit for dinner." "Okay." Li Hongyu nodded, took the pig bones and liver out of the basket, and soaked them in clean water to rinse away the foul smell and any blood. Such a thing would have been unthinkable a few years ago. The blood water was a vital source of nutrition for the three siblings, too precious to waste. Li Hongyu began busying herself, preparing for the day's lunch as Zhu Yang shifted his attention back to Li King. "How's the bow holding up?" "More than holding up, it's a divine bow." Li King was excited, taking off the bamboo bow slung on his back. "That rabbit was at least 20 steps away, and I hit it with one arrow." "That's good." Zhu Yang nodded. "After we eat, let's go into the mountain again. One rabbit won't be enough for tonight." "Great." In ancient times, commoners typically ate 2 meals a day, while only the nobility and wealthy families would have 3 meals. But with Zhu Yang, that standard was out of the question. 3 years ago, they had already moved to 3 meals a day, and more recently, every meal included meat and was rich in fats and oils. Zhu Yang's robust physique and the stature of Li King and Li Hongyu were a testament to that. Dinner's ready. Wisps of cooking smoke lingered in the air, and the meals were served. Li Hongyu, as usual, heaped a full bowl of coarse rice for Zhu Ying, then placed a large pot of bone soup in front of him. "Brother, here's yours." Zhu Ying nodded. Without any pretense, he picked up a piece of bone laden with meat and put it in his mouth. Li King and Li Hongyu spooned the meat soup, pouring it over their rice before they began to eat. The pork spine bones, which originally came with ample meat, had only had some removed for herself and Li King by Li Hongyu. The rest, with all its meat, was left on the bones for Zhu Ying. But Zhu Ying didn't distinguish between meat and bone. He chewed the whole bone as soon as he put it into his mouth, crunching the meat, bone, and marrow together before swallowing. Soon, the lunch was over. Li Hongyu cleaned up the bowls and chopsticks, while Zhu Ying stood up and said to Li King, "Come, let's digest the meal with our usual routine. If you can find me, I'll make you an even better bow." Ah! Hearing his words, Li King's face turned bitter. "Do we have to, brother? We're too old for children's games. Besides, when have we ever found you? Aren't you tired of always hiding like this?" "I'm not tired, come on." Zhu Ying dismissed his complaints and stubbornly left the house. Helplessly, Li King could only turn his pleading eyes towards his sister, Li Hongyu. Li Hongyu laughed. "Why are you looking at me? I still have cleaning up to do. You take your time searching." "Oh Lord." Li King looked like he wanted to cry but found no tears, and with no other choice, he had to get up and walk outside. He was about to play a game with Zhu Yang, a game they had played daily for 3 years, a game of hide-and-seek. One day 3 years ago, for reasons unknown, his older brother suddenly grabbed the two of them and started playing this game. After that, he became addicted to it, insisting on playing several times each day after meals, and now it had been 3 full years. Li King didn't know whether his older brother retained a childlike heart or had simply lost his mind, but he and Li Hongyu were seriously tormented by this. Every day Zhu Ying insisted on playing hide-and-seek. In the beginning, it was still fun, with a hint of childhood playfulness between siblings. But as time went on, Zhu Ying became increasingly difficult to find, and the game grew more and more boring. By now, it had turned into torture. They never managed to find him. Each search was a futile effort until the game ended and Zhu Ying appeared on his own, which was utterly uninteresting to the extreme. Yet Zhu Ying never seemed to tire of it, dragging them into playing every day and even offering various rewards to tempt them. But those were always just empty promises, unreachable rewards that left them with a psychological shadow over the game of hide-and-seek. Today was no different. Li King, mustering all his energy, searched inside and outside the house for a long time and still couldn't find Zhu Ying. It wasn't until noon, the predetermined time to head to the mountains, that Zhu Ying, hiding who knows where, finally drifted into view, ending this exceedingly boring game. "Brother, where on earth were you hiding just now? You didn't go off somewhere else, did you?" "No, I didn't leave the yard." "Then how come I searched everywhere and still couldn't find you?" "You weren't thorough enough. Pay more attention next time, and you'll definitely be able to find me." "Really? Really?" After ending the tedious game of hide-and-seek, Zhu Ying entered the house and took down a bamboo bow from the wall. This bamboo bow was light yellow in color, the result of being roasted by flames. Its curved limbs were wrapped with cow horn and sinew, enhancing its elasticity and toughness. Combined with the tightly strung cow sinew string, it exuded a powerful sense of strength. This bow, a proud creation of Zhu Ying's recent days, exceeded the range of a hunting bow and stepped into the realm of military weaponry. It was valuable, and its power was formidable. Such a bow was admittedly overkill for hunting. So, Zhu Ying hung it back up and took down another bamboo bow that was slightly inferior. At that moment, Li King, with his bamboo basket on his back and a bamboo bow in hand, walked in, full of excitement, and said to Zhu Yang, "Everything's ready, shall we go?" Zhu Yang nodded, carried his bamboo bow along with his brother, and they left for Little Yellow Mountain. That evening, under the envious eyes of the neighbors, the two brothers brought back a sizable haul of game. "The Li brothers have gone to the mountains again. Gosh, they caught so much stuff again. Could that be a roe deer in the basket? How come whenever they go to the mountain, it's like they're stocking up? My old man can't even hit a wild chicken." "Nonsense, can your man compare to Li King Shan?" "Exactly, you haven't seen his archery. That bear that came out of the mountain last time was taken down by his team. He shot 3 arrows, directly piercing the bear's eyeballs and skull. Comparisons really do kill people, and stuff should just be thrown out. Those heartless brats, their lives are going well now, while we're suffering." "Exactly, remember the last dispute over water rights? He didn't consider any kinship at all and beat our Li family people to such a state. I heard Li Leijiu and the others can't even get out of bed and walk around till now. That heartless thing, abandoning his ancestors to work as a domestic servant for the Lu family, being their lapdog. How will he face their parents and the ancestors of the Lee family after he dies? Whose fault is that? You were the ones who did wrong first, bullying others. You provoked this, so you can't complain about the consequences. Exactly, so what if he is a domestic servant? His life is good. He not only gets pocket money from the master every month but also brings home meat regularly. The rent isn't too high, and even the hunting tax is less and easier to handle compared to other hunters. Look how much those 3 siblings have grown in the past few days. Having a patron is great. If I knew, I would have sold myself to the Liu family too. Humphrey, what are you daydreaming about? Li Qingshan is doing well because he's skilled. Not only is he excellent at butchering pigs and cattle, but his hunting skills are unparalleled, which is why he's so highly regarded by the Liu family and receives so much care. Do you have those skills? I heard Officer Liu is even planning to accept him as a son-in-law. Chapter 10, Results. Late at night, the sky was clear with sparse stars, all serene. In the courtyard, Zhu Ying stood alone, bow in hand. On the dirt wall ahead, a charcoal-drawn target bristled with densely packed arrows. Another night's practice results. Thump. Zhu Ying drew his bamboo bow, loosed his final arrow, and the bamboo shaft, with great force, pierced the earthy wall, dislodging the arrows already lodged in the target by the impact of its strength. Impressive power. Zhu Ying was very satisfied with this and opened his attribute panel. Zhu Ying, Li Qingshan, Cultivation, Non-Lifespan, 19 out of 88 skills, Eating, Chewing, Digesting, Essence, Strengthening, Unblocking, Healing Diet, Sleeping, Deep Sleep, Calming the Mind, Health Preservation, Body Strengthening, Breathing, Turtle Breathing, Empowerment, Revitalizing, Essence Nourishment, Butchering, Evil Chi, Unsheathing the Knife, Preservation, Hunting, Mountain Dweller, Chasing the Wind, Acuity, Artisan, Bow Making, Leather Working, Toughness, Durability, Bamboo Crafts, Archery, Hit a Willow Branch at 100 yards, 3 stars. Connected Beads, Running Shot, Walking, Swift as Flying, Traversing Mountains and Ridges, Hiding, Concealment, Concealing Presence, Theft, Night Infiltration, Lockpicking, Reading, Night Reading, Deciphering, Never Forget After Reading, Knife Sharpening, Unparalleled Sharpness, Chopping, Overwhelming Force. Zhu Ying noticed something. The difficulty of training skills in this world was much lower than in the real world. Merely 3 years of practice had yielded a collection of skills that matched the bulk of his 27 years of hard work in reality. In addition, many high-quality 4-character skill phrases had emerged. Keep in mind, he had trained tirelessly for 27 years in the real world, acquiring many skills and traits, yet only had 2 4-character phrases, which were like a fish in water for swimming and Xuangshu dreams of a butterfly for dreaming. Yet in this world, in just 3 years, he had developed 6 or 7 4-character phrases. Although none was as special as Xuangshu dreams of a butterfly with its own effects, they surpassed like a fish in water in quality. Why was this the case? Zhu Ying did not know, nor did he dwell on it too much. Without solid evidence to theorize, speculating further was meaningless. It was better to consider more practical matters. What practical matters? Of course, the significance of the newly added traits. As the only skill supporting his main body, eating had gained just one new trait: Healing Diet. Healing Diet, as the name suggests, meant he could heal his body through diet. No matter if it was internal or external injuries or severe illnesses and toxins, as long as he ate enough of the right foods, he could eventually return to his original state, making it a powerful healing tool. Breathing, sleeping, and other skills remain mostly unchanged, their traits related mainly to strengthening the body and invigorating the blood and vitality. Paired with the eating skill, in just 3 years, these had nurtured and trained Zhu Ying's once frail youthful body into robust manliness. In addition, skills like butchering, hunting, bow making, and archery, which he had developed anew, also achieved excellent effects, helping Zhu Ying gain a foothold in the village, even garnering attention from the Liu family, and greatly improving his standard of living. Now that he had a firm footing, it was time to plan for growth and to build and strengthen his position. After finishing tonight's practice, Zhu Ying turned and returned to his room, hanging the bow and arrow back on the wall, then pulled out a large box from under the bed. He opened the box, filled with garments, and went straight to the bottom, drawing out a set of black clothing for night travel. Zhu Ying changed into the night attire, took out a dagger as well, securing it at his waist, and fully equipped, he then silently opened the door and left home. Walking, swift as flying, traversing mountains and ridges, hiding, concealment, concealing presence, theft, night infiltration, lockpicking. Over 3 years, through playing with his younger siblings and daily activities, Zhu Ying had developed 3 more skills. The combined effect of these 3 skills gave him a tremendous advantage in his nighttime operations. Under the velvety darkness of night, Zhu Ying, dressed in black from head to toe, became like a fish taking to water, completely concealing his shape, footsteps, and breath. Ordinary villagers, afflicted with night blindness, let alone a martial artist with minor accomplishments and sharp senses, would find it extremely difficult to detect his presence and movements. This was the combined effect of concealment, concealing presence, and night infiltration. A powerful ability to stay hidden. Under the cover of night, Zhu Ying moved as if flying, walking briskly. In the blink of an eye, he arrived outside the Lu family estate. By then, it was late, the Lu family's gates were shut tight, and guards with dogs were on night patrol. Although not impenetrable, the defenses were more than enough to deter ordinary thieves from sneaking in. However, Zhu Ying had no trouble at all. He approached a corner of the wall, leaped up with a step on the bricks, and scaled the wall. Qinggong? No, Zhu Ying didn't know any Qinggong. It was all the effect of the walking skill traits. Swift as flying, traversing mountains and ridges, the former greatly increased walking speed while the latter allowed overcoming a variety of terrains and obstacles. Not just the walls of a wealthy family's estate, even cliffs, steep mountains, and high ridges were as flat ground to Zhu Yang. Having scaled the wall, Zhu Yang wasted no time and headed straight for the study. As they say, no matter how vigilant you are, you cannot guard against a thief from within. After all these years, Zhu Yang knew the Lu family's terrain, layout, and building distribution by heart. Soon, he arrived at the study. Using the lock-picking trait of the theft skill, he silently unlocked the door, slipped inside, and in a short while, emerged with a backpack. Afterwards, Zhu Yang did not linger, carrying the backpack, he quickly left the Lu family's residence. Shortly thereafter, Zhu Yang returned home, set down the backpack, removed his night attire, and lit a candle. In the dim candlelight, Zhu Yang opened the backpack, but inside were not gold or silver treasures, but bound volumes of books. Chapter 10, Results. Zhu Yang picked up the Dream Talks and flipped through it skillfully, as if it was not his first time doing such a thing. Indeed, it was not the first time. Since over a year ago, by playing games like hide and seek, he obtained skills such as hiding and thievery. Zhu Yang began to frequent the Lu family's study. Books are the ladder of human progress and also an important way for Zhu Yang to understand this world. But there was a problem with reading, and that was the necessity of recognizing characters. Zhu Yang was illiterate, or to be precise, he did not recognize the characters of this world. Whether it was he, who arrived through this Yuan Zumengdi, or Li Qingshan, the village youth, both were illiterate. Fortunately, Zhu Yang had an attribute panel and a transmigrator's base of information. He could make educated guesses as he decoded the text, eventually mastering the skill of reading and developing the special traits of night reading, decoding, and never forget after reading. He could easily understand even the most challenging texts and hidden meanings. Thus, Zhu Yang visited the Lu family's study more than a dozen times, stealing the books in batches to read, absorbing the knowledge and information within like a sponge. Although the Lu family was merely rural gentry, their ancestors had passed the imperial examinations and had produced a scholar, so their collection of books was passably extensive. Apart from the 4 books and the 5 classics, which were basic texts, there were also various miscellaneous and strange tales, and even martial arts manuals that Zhu Yang so eagerly sought. With these, Zhu Yang finally had a rough understanding of this world. First and foremost, it could be confirmed that this was a normal world. Why normal? Because the world in which Zhu Yang's original self resided was a bit abnormal. Let's just speak of governance. Under normal circumstances, in ancient feudal rule, a dynasty would last at most 200 or 300 years before it would succumb to historical cycles of events such as land annexation and corruption in governance, leading to its downfall and destruction. Thus, a dynasty rises and falls, and upon creating a new Qian-kun, there would be a brief period of clarity. However, after 200 or 300 years, it would fall into such a cycle again. This was the normal historical cycle that had been unwavering from ancient times until the present. However, the reality in which Zhu Yang's original self resided was the exception. The dynasty known as Great Liang had sustained its rule for over 1,000 years, withstanding all adversities and yet to fall. This was not normal, absolutely not normal. Historical cycles are an inevitability of human nature. A dynasty ruling for 200 to 300 years would inevitably succumb as various interest groups become too bloated, acting as parasites for their own benefit and eating away at the nation until it crumbles an almost unalterable course of development. There were only 2 possibilities for a dynasty to endure 1,000 years of tribulations and still maintain its governing framework. The first was the advancement of the era and technological progression that could, while maintaining the interests of the upper class, ensure the livelihood of the lower class. Perhaps such a dynasty could last for a millennium without external enemies, wars, or natural disasters. The second was simple, pure suppression by absolute power. Possessing absolute power, Regardless of the instability of the lower class or the sly intentions of various parties, no force could oppose such might. Only then could a dynasty be sustained for 1,000 years without falling. Which one is the Great Liang dynasty, 1 or 2? Naturally, it is the second. Zhu Ying had been fishing at Dongding Lake for decades and did not believe that the technological level under Great Liang had improved at all. On the contrary, symptoms of land annexation and regional strongholds that typically marked the end of a dynasty had already been present for many years. If Great Liang could still maintain its rule in such a situation, no one would believe there were no issues. Therefore, Zhu Ying always kept a low profile in the real world, preferring to be a fisherman on Dongding Lake who could be bullied by anyone, rather than using his attribute panel, skill traits, and the transmigrator's advantages to struggle and strive to dominate a territory. He had a premonition, an intuition that there was more than meets the eye behind Great Liang, and if he revealed his peculiar abilities, it would inevitably attract endless troubles. It was best to remain hidden, accumulate power, and bide his time until he could reverse the situation. This was the reality Zhu Ying found himself in, a world where extraordinary powers existed, and one could not act rashly. By contrast, this world of Zhu and Zhu Mengbi's dream was much more normal, with a historical process that followed a cyclical pattern. Since ancient times, the lifespan of each dynasty did not exceed 200 or 300 years. There was no trans-era technological development, nor were there any powers beyond the ordinary. This is a normal world, or, in other words, a world with lower levels of power. There was also martial arts in this world, but according to the secret martial arts manuscripts in the Lu family's collection, and from what Zhu Ying had seen and heard in recent years, the level of martial arts was quite low in this world. The practice of martial arts was basically about conditioning the body and cultivating one's chi blood. Although there were concepts of inner strength and even true chi, their effects were ordinary at best. It was impossible for one person to be an army, charge through enemy lines 7 times, and come back unscathed. Even for grandmasters who had refined true chi, they wouldn't be able to withstand strong bows and crossbows. A battalion of soldiers could easily surround and kill them. And such grandmasters who had refined true chi were rare in the world, usually the towering figures or venerable heads of major sects in the martial world. The top-notch experts in the martial world could only cultivate inner strength, and even that had very limited effects, mainly fortifying the body. The notion of internal force emission or plucking leaves and flying flowers was nothing but a fool's dream. This was also the reason why Zhu Ying had become increasingly bold in his actions in recent years. With his exceptional archery skills, capable of hitting a willow branch at 100 yards and the 3 stars connected beads technique, his martial prowess was already not low in this world. With a bow in hand, the house guards and protectors of the Li and Lu families were nothing but live targets to him, 1 shot, 1 kill. The only threats were a few martial instructors, but even these threats were not significant, as they only knew some boxing and kicking techniques and hadn't even cultivated any inner strength. They were all easy targets for his arrows. With such archery skills, not to mention Zhu Ying simply taking a few more bones while slaughtering pigs, even if he openly took some of the meat to sell for money, the Lu family would not say a thing. They wouldn't just keep silent, but they'd also offer him benefits to win him over. Recently, Zhang Fu, the chief steward of the Lu family, had intentionally mentioned a marriage proposal to him, offering a female member of the Lu clan to marry him, aiming to tie him firmly to the Lu family's battleship. However, Zhu Ying had declined. If things kept progressing this way, becoming more prominent, or even ruling like a king, would not be a problem in the future. But that was not Zhu Ying's pursuit. Zhu and Zhu Mengbi was still Zhu and Zhu Mengbi after all, where his main body resided was his true base. He had to use the resources of this world to enhance the strength of his main body and resolve his increasingly dire predicament. How to use it, though? Zhu Ying set aside the volumes of strange tales and turned his attention to the few martial arts manuals he had pilfered this time. Although these were referred to as secret martial arts texts, they were actually just a few superficial skills in boxing, kicking, and weaponry techniques such as Black Tiger Fist, Ground Knife, and 8 trigram stick, none of which were anything to show off. There was not a single internal cultivation technique that could lead to the cultivation of inner strength or true chi. Understandable, as after all, the Lu family was just a rural wealthy clan, not a major sect of the martial world that would possess such profound martial arts secrets. Of course, a low level was not a problem for Zhu Ying, who had an attribute panel and the ability to develop skills. Even shooting, a basic skill, could produce powerful skill traits like hit a willow branch at 100 yards and 3 stars connected beads, so these crude martial arts could naturally be transformed from decayed to magical. In fact, Zhu Ying had already started practicing, but since the time was short and the skill was not yet fully refined, no skill traits had been formed. Once the skill was perfected and the traits emerged, his strength would grow once more. At that time, he could plan to pursue more profound martial arts. Even though the profound martial arts of this world might only be commonplace in his extraordinary reality, having them was better than not. Zhu Yang, who severely lacked a sense of security, did not reject any means to enhance his strength. Of course, that was a plan for the future. His main task at the moment was to first cultivate martial arts skills and the corresponding skill traits to further strengthen his abilities. Chapter 11, Sudden Turn 1. The next morning, Zhu Yang, carrying a bamboo basket, arrived once more at the Lu family's grand mansion. By then, the slaughterhouse in the backyard was already a hubbub of noise. Kenshan. Brother Kenshan. You're here? So early today? The butchers greeted him one after another, and Zhu Yang nodded in response to each, then turned his attention to the pigs and dogs in the pen. Why did we collect so many this time? Is there an order from the city, or is a family hosting an event? Don't you know, Kenshan? Not long ago, the second miss sent a message. She's returning from the 100 Sword sect today. Heard she's bringing back a new brother-in-law too, a talented young man, truly exceptional. The master is so pleased that he wants to throw a big banquet, specially ordered these animals to be gathered. I heard they even brought back a big yellow ox. Look, here comes the ox. Wow, that's a huge ox, must have cost a lot of silver. Didn't the authorities prohibit the slaughtering of oxen? Isn't the master going to get in trouble with the law this time? Stop spouting nonsense. What slaughtering? This ox died from a fall, and it's already been reported and recorded. The crowd was abuzz with their conversations and arguments. Zhu Yang frowned, looking at the yellow ox, but remained silent. An older butcher approached. Such a big ox, it's still best if you handle the knife, Kenshan. Zhu Yang nodded, turned to get his knife, and began sharpening it. The butchers took out ropes, tied up the yellow ox's hooves, and pulled together, directly toppling it to the ground. Moo. Perhaps sensing its predicament, the fallen ox bellowed out loud, but to no avail. With its hooves tied and its body on the ground, it couldn't struggle. It could only provoke a desolate scene. Compared to pigs and sheep, oxen and dogs have more spirit. Although the butchers rely on them for food, there's still a bit of taboo in their hearts. They now turned their gaze to Zhu Yang. Kenshan, make it quick for this one. Zhu Yang said little, carrying his bright, sharp knife to the side of the yellow ox and pressing down on its head. Moo. Confronted by Zhu Yang, the yellow ox, which had been crying pitifully, suddenly twitched, its eyes widened in terror, and it became rigid on the spot. At that moment, Zhu Yang plunged the sharp knife into the yellow ox's neck, causing its body to shudder and then become motionless on the ground. 3 years as a butcher had allowed Zhu Yang to master the butchering skill, and he developed 3 distinct traits: evil chi, unsheathing the knife, and freshness preservation. The days of the yellow ox just now was the result of evil chi. Each time he slaughtered, more evil chi accumulated. Evil chi, the essence of malevolence, brings ill fortune, having a certain intimidating effect on the minds and spirits of living beings, and it can even harm the soul. The yellow ox had been stunned by the evil chi emanating from Zhu Yang, which caused it to lose its senses temporarily, allowing the sharp knife to pierce its vital parts and end its life. It was a painless death. After all, Zhu Yang's butchering skill not only included evil chi but also the traits unsheathing the knife and freshness preservation. The latter, obviously, extends the shelf life and freshness of meat. As for unsheathing the knife, it enhances the skills of slaughter and dissection, allowing Zhu Yang to discern the animal's bodily structure and vital points, then precisely handle the blade to slaughter and carve the meat. Thus, the death of the yellow ox was relatively swift. Withdrawing the sharp knife, blood gushed forth like a spring. Zhu Yang turned and left, waiting for the blood to drain completely before returning to begin skinning and butchering. Skinning an ox is different from skinning a pig. One can't simply start cutting and separating the bones and meat. One must first skin the ox, and it must be done completely because in ancient times, ox hides were very useful and valuable, for making bows, armor, and other fine materials. The more intact the ox hide, the higher the butcher's skill, and the greater the value of the hide. Zhu Yang started the cut from the base, the bright blade slicing beneath the hide, separating skin from flesh without a drop of blood, with nothing but the smooth separation of white fat and red muscle visible in a blink. A complete ox hide was peeled off by him. Brother Kenshan, what skill! That knife work is incredible. The butchers around him couldn't help but voice their admiration. Zhu Yang remained silent, putting down the hide and starting to dismantle the flesh and bones. He crouched and leaned over, the sharp knife in his hand moving rhythmically through the meat, swiftly removing the internal organs, then the tendons and bones, all with grace. The slender blade of the sharp knife effortlessly parted sinew and bone, without the rough, forceful hacking and hewing of ordinary butchers. It flowed like water through the crevices of limbs and the connections of muscles, to finally, with a clatter, separate the flesh and bones. The other butchers were spellbound, staring in silence, forgetting the wailing pigs and dogs around them, with eyes fixed only on Zhu Ying and the swiftly dismantled yellow ox. In such a manner, after a short while, the yellow ox was completely disassembled. Zhu Ying stood up, sharp knife in hand, and surveyed his surroundings. The butcher's eyes met his, goosebumps rose, and they were all struck with horror, involuntarily stepping back several paces, fearfully watching Zhu Ying. Zhu Ying, with a sharp knife in hand, scanned over the crowd before finally shifting his gaze to a black pig waiting to be slaughtered. Next. Oh, right. The crowd seemed to snap out of a trance, their faces turning pale as they hastily pulled the black pig forward for Zhu Ying to slaughter. Zhu Ying paid no mind to their expressions, immersed in the second round of butchering. The other butchers continued to watch from a distance, but now they kept much further away, struggling to hide their lingering fear. Brother Qinshan's gaze just now. It was terrifying, wasn't it? He's not addicted to slaughtering, thinking of killing people now, is he? When he looked at us, it was like he wasn't seeing people but rather pigs, dogs, cattle, and sheep waiting to be butchered, pondering how to cut, how to skin, how to dissect. Chapter 11, Sudden Turn to Damn. This guy really is a madman, better to stay away from him in the future. A whole cow, butchered in the time it takes to drink a cup of tea? If butchering a cow is this easy, wouldn't killing a person be a breeze? The crowd was shocked, murmuring quietly among themselves. But Zhu Ying was indifferent, focused on the dissection, and in a short while had neatly butchered an entire pig. Another. Oh. Another. 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 This. Brother, there's none left. Seeing Zhu Ying immersed, resembling a mad demon as he slaughtered the livestock one by one, the crowd was even more terrified, yet they had to steel themselves and speak up as a reminder. Hearing this, Zhu Ying came back to his senses, standing amid the bloodbath holding a sharp knife, looking bewildered yet thrilled. In the attribute panel, under the skills column, the butchery skill was glowing red, and the words unsheathing the knife gradually blurred and transformed into 4 characters that emerged. Butcher's technique. To meet the divine not with sight but with spirit, to stop at what is known and let the spirit move. In that moment, an epiphany dawned on him, allowing Zhu Ying to instantly comprehend the function of the butcher's technique. Butcher's technique, a 4-character trait, red symbolizing bloodshed. Following Zhu and Zumengdi, another skill with its own special effects. The core of it lies in the words dissection, an upgraded version of unsheathing the knife. Unsheathing the knife hinged on the word unsheath, accumulating experience to become familiar with the target's body structure and mechanical properties, thus locking on to vital points during dissection for a precise and quick butchery. As an upgrade of unsheathing the knife, Butcher's technique was much more powerful. It didn't even require accumulated experience. Simply by observing the target, one could penetrate its essence, automatically visualizing its anatomical structure and mechanical traits in the mind, even predicting its movement in advance. The enemy won't move before I already know. Just as the butcher's technique states, to meet the divine not with sight but with spirit, to stop at what is known and let the spirit move. Now, whether it was a cow, a pig, or a human, as long as they stood before Zhu Ying, he could discern their body structure, predict their movement, and lock onto their direction and vital points. As long as the opponent's physical speed didn't surpass the limits of his Mendel reaction, then all their moves and actions couldn't escape his perception, his prediction. This means he could see through all moves, regardless of swordsmanship or fist skills. As long as it was a move, he could perceive it. While seeing through doesn't equate to cracking, if there was too great a disparity in physical prowess, seeing through moves wouldn't help to avoid them. But if the strengths were comparable, this skill virtually guaranteed an unbeatable position from the start. That is the power of Butcher's technique, knowing before the enemy moves, seizing the advantage and predicting the enemy's vulnerabilities and moves flaws for a preemptive strike, a fatal blow. Indeed, a 4-character trait with its own special effects, just one word to describe it: strong. With this ability, even without a bow and arrow, Zhu Ying was confident he could kill the martial instructors from the Li and Lu families. In other words, he now possessed the strongest martial force in Little Yellow Village. Having snapped out of his trance, Zhu Ying looked at the bloody scene and the astonished crowd around him. His mood lifted. Clean up here, send the meat to the kitchen, and the heads of these animals need to go to the ancestral hall for offerings. The rest, you can divide among yourselves. With that, he threw a large chunk of beef tenderloin and a well-partitioned rib bone with meat into his bamboo basket. The crowd was silent. Because pork was fishy, and dog meat was looked down upon, beef and mutton had become the main meat source for the rich and powerful. Moreover, with the government's strict ban on private slaughtering of cattle, the price of beef was much higher. Thus, on the days when the Lu family slaughtered cattle, these butchers didn't dare to take any for themselves, not even at an employee discount. All the meat was supplied to the meat shops or restaurants. But now, Zhu Ying had nonchalantly taken a large chunk of beef tenderloin and a meaty rib bone, the combined weight of the beef amounting to no less than 10 pounds. Such audacity was breathtaking. The crowd was filled with envy, but recalling the way Zhu Ying had looked at them as if they were no better than pigs or dogs, and the smooth and decisive butchery, they dared not express any objections, remaining silent. Zhu Ying didn't care about their reactions, picked up his basket, and prepared to leave. But unexpectedly. "What are you doing, standing around like that? Don't you have work to do?" A party walked into the courtyard and began to scold the crowd as soon as they arrived. Zhu Ying looked up to see a richly dressed young man and a sharp-faced manservant, followed by 2 burly guards. Third young master. Steward Zhang. Seeing this, everyone quickly bowed their heads, and an old butcher even stepped forward with a flattering smile. "What brings you here? What does the third young master need to report to you before he comes over?" The sharp-faced steward Zhang was not swayed by this and berated them. "What are you standing around dumbfounded for? Don't you know that the Lord is hosting a banquet today? If you mess up his big event, who can afford it? You. Dare not, dare not." The old butcher didn't dare argue and could only say with agreement, "Steward Zhang, we've already slaughtered and divided the meat, and we're just about to send it to the kitchen." "So soon?" Hearing this, Steward Zhang was also somewhat surprised. With a fawning laugh, the old butcher said, "Yes, all thanks to Kinshan. His skills have significantly improved." It was then that Steward Zhang turned his head and focused his attention on Zhu Ying standing to the side, smiling. "It's Kinshan, eh? No wonder he has such skills. Steward Zhang, I have things to take care of at home. I'll be leaving now." Zhu Ying nodded, then, carrying his bamboo basket, prepared to leave. This man was the son of the chief steward, Zhang Fu, and the second steward of the Lu family, Zhang Wang. Zhu Ying had encountered him a few times, their relationship neither good nor bad. The young man in the brocade clothes was the third young master of the Lu family, Lu Ming. Why had these two suddenly come to the stinking bloody butchery? Zhu Ying didn't know, nor was he interested in finding out. All he wanted now was to go home and thoroughly experience the effects of the butcher's technique. However, "Stop right there." A cold voice blocked his way. Zhu Ying halted in his steps, turned around, and looked at the brocade-clad young man who had called out to him, "Third young master, is there something else?" That teenager, Lu Ming, was in his adolescence, with a face full of freckles and pimple marks, making him look somewhat embarrassing, yet his demeanor remained exceptionally haughty, as he coldly stared at Zhu Ying. "What's in that basket of yours?" The butchers, upon hearing this, all felt a jolt of surprise and suspicion in their hearts. Zhu Ying's eyes were a bit vague, and without saying anything, he looked at Lu Ming and Zhang Wang for a while before finally speaking. "Some pieces of meat and bones." "Some pieces of meat?" Upon hearing this, Lu Ming scoffed. "Who allowed you to take them? Who allowed you to divide them? You, a mere servant, dare to take from the master's share. Where do you get the gall?" This. Upon hearing this, everyone was shocked, their faces a picture of bewilderment. Zhu Ying's brow also furrowed, but he showed no fear as he spoke calmly. "These are the rules of the butchery." "Rules? Whose rules?" Lu Ming persisted, unyielding. "Are they your rules, or the Lu family's rules? You dog of a servant, you dare to take the master's property and talk to the master about rules? Do you even know your place? Come on, empty that basket. I want to see how much this dog of a servant has taken." As he spoke, he motioned for 2 guards to step forward, each trying to flank Zhu Ying. In response to this, Zhu Ying made no move but gave the 2 guards a glance, his eyes cold and full of menace, enough to make them freeze in place. "What are you standing around for?" Seeing the 2 guards motionless, Lu Ming became furiously impatient and shouted, "Take action, now! There's no need for the trouble." Before the words finished, Zhu Ying threw down his basket, scattering a heap of cow bones and meat, his eyes fixed coldly on Lu Ming. "I, a lowly person, do not understand the rules. I ask for the third young master's forgiveness and hope you will not take offense." "You." This demeanor was anything but a submissive acknowledgement of a mistake. Lu Ming was about to scold him, but as he met Zhu Ying's gaze, he felt a sudden leap in his heart and a nameless terror, standing frozen, unable to utter half a word. Seeing this, Zhu Ying did not press further and bowed before turning to leave. It was only after he had left that everyone seemed to awaken from a trance, and Lu Ming regained his senses as well, his face alternating between white and green with rage. He bellowed, "Insolent dog of a servant, the world is turned upside down. And you 2 worthless fools, what were you doing just standing there, letting him walk away? What do I keep you for, you useless things?" Watching a furious Lu Ming vent his anger, all the butchers in the courtyard looked at each other, somewhat puzzled by the situation. Chapter 12, Origin 1. On the other side, Zhu Ying, having left the Lu family, didn't pause for a moment and rushed back home at full speed. "Open the door. Brother." Li Hongyu opened the door and, seeing Zhu Ying returning with both hands empty and in a hurry, was somewhat puzzled. What's wrong? No pigs to slaughter today? Close the door. Without offering an explanation, Zhu Ying dropped this single line and headed straight for the inner room. Seeing this, Li Hongyu also realized something and quickly shut the door, following him into the house. Inside the house, Zhu Ying took off his bloody and dirty clothes and threw them aside, then took out new clothes from the wardrobe to change into, after which he put on a shoulder-protected leather armor vest. Noticing Zhu Ying donning armor, Li Hongyu grew even more anxious. Brother, what's going on? Where is King? Zhu Ying did not explain. Instead, he took down a bow and arrows from the wall and slung 2 quivers around his waist. Brother. Li King ran into the room and, witnessing Zhu Ying with bow and arrows in hand, changed his expression. What happened? Zhu Ying, still without elaboration, pulled a long case from under the bed and opened it. Inside was a 9-ring broad blade, thick-backed and heavy. Put on the armor, take the bow and arrows, and bring everything we've practiced with. After saying this, he inserted the broad blade into its back scabbard and, with bow in hand, walked outside. Go where? To the Lu family? Just because of the recent conflict? Of course not. Although Zhu Ying was decisive and ruthlessly efficient against his enemies, he was not the kind of person consumed by madness. He would never seek to annihilate a whole family over a minor verbal spat, and besides, regarding the earlier incident, he wasn't in the right. A servant hiding profits warrants punishment from their master. It's only fair and square. If it were merely this trivial issue, Zhu Ying would bow his head and tolerate it. But the present situation was no small matter, or rather to say, behind this minor conflict lurked a greater cause. Dividing up the meat among butchers was an unspoken rule tacitly permitted. No one would expose it without cause, as that would only embarrass everyone, and the master's family wouldn't be able to save face. Zhu Ying was no exception. Did the old master of the Lu family truly not know about his doings? He did, but he merely turned a blind eye, silently consenting after all. With Zhu Ying's current proficiency, taking a little advantage of his position was justified. He would be worried if Zhu Ying didn't take it. So why did Lu Ming find fault with Zhu Ying now, making things difficult for him? Could it be that the third young master of the Lu family had nothing better to do? Certainly not, at least Zhu Ying didn't think so. There must be a reason for this occurrence. Given Zhu Ying's current capabilities, the Lu family would never unreasonably cause him trouble or create rifts. The fact that Lu Ming came to find fault with him definitely had a reason behind it. What reason? Zhu Ying didn't know, but he was aware that the Lu family's attitude towards him had changed. And this reason for the Lu family's shift in attitude and difficulty had to be out of the ordinary, otherwise, they wouldn't so abruptly turn against him. Seeing the bigger picture from a small clue, Zhu Ying didn't think the Lu family would continue to get along with him amicably. So, to strike first is stronger, to strike later is to suffer. Zhu Ying was not the kind of person who, knowing fully well the enemy's intent, would wait for them to strike first. Brother. Are you all ready? Ready. Soon enough, Li King and Li Hongyu, also dressed in leather armor for protection and each carrying a large bamboo basket, appeared in front of Zhu Ying. It was clear that they had practiced before. Let's go. Without any hesitation, Zhu Ying pushed open the door, leading the two of them towards Little Yellow Mountain. Even though he was taking preemptive action, he wasn't foolhardy enough to drag Li King and Li Hongyu into a death match with the Lu family. His plan was to lead the two of them into the mountains first, to hide in a covert base they had previously established, then he would return to resolve the issue. But unexpectedly. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Not long after the three had left, they saw a group of people approaching them head-on, with the limping Li Jiu at the forefront. Li Qinshan. Zhu Ying saw Li Jiu, and Li Jiu also spotted the three of them. He excitedly shouted, "You also have today, attack, grab these ingrates." Swoosh. Before the words were finished, a sharp arrow pierced the air, flying towards them. Thud. Li Jiu didn't know what happened when suddenly a warm splash hit his face. He turned in shock to see a person next to him stumbling back, an arrow piercing through their right eye and into the brain, then collapsing to the ground. Murder? Someone's been killed? Murder. Murder. The others finally came to, and the scene instantly descended into chaos. Meanwhile, 100 steps away, Zhu Ying, regardless of the commotion, drew his bow and let loose another arrow, downing another of the Li family house guards near Li Jiu. Craftsman, bow crafting, leatherwork, durability, endurance, bamboo craftsmanship, archery, hit a willow branch at 100 yards, 3 stars connected beads, rapid shooting, the sturdy and finely crafted bamboo bow, coupled with the archery skill to hit a willow branch at 100 yards, meant that not just any ordinary servant, but even ferocious beasts in the mountains or a martial artist with some level of cultivation, would not dare to face Zhu Ying's arrowhead directly. Ah! Quick, Run. That's when Li Leijiu and the others finally came to their senses in horror, screamed, and turned to flee. However, Zhu Ying pursued them with long strides, drawing his bow and shooting vigorously, and in the blink of an eye, he had shot several men to the ground. Thud. Li Leijiu fled with his back turned, but his speed was severely slowed down by his limp leg, which had not yet healed. He had not gone far before he was knocked to the ground by a surge of intense pain. An arrow had pierced his uninjured right leg, the iron-tipped bamboo shaft had gone through flesh and bone, and blood was oozing out gruesomely. Ah! Li Leijiu let out a mournful howl, clutching his right leg in spasms. Before he had a chance to call for help, he saw a terrifying shadow looming over him. Qinshan, it's not my fault. Spare me, spare me. Looking at the tall and mighty Zhu Yang, with a physique as strong as a tiger's, Li Leijiu finally realized the truth and began to plead incoherently for mercy. But Zhu Yang didn't care at all, and grabbed his shoulder in one go, lifting him up as easily as one would pick up a chick. And so, Zhu Yang carried the wailing Li Leijiu, along with the panicked Li King and Li Hongyu, toward Little Yellow Mountain outside the village. There were no further obstructions along the way, and the villagers nearby all hid in terror at this sight. There was no sign of the large contingent of men from the Li family and the Lu family, as if they had not yet realized what was happening, allowing Zhu Yang and the others to leave the village smoothly. After leaving the village and entering the wilderness, Zhu Yang finally stopped and threw the hoarse-voiced Li Leijiu to the ground, then pulled out the 9-ring broad blade strapped to his back with a reverse grip. No, don't kill me. Li Leijiu's face had already turned pale, his consciousness stemming from the shouting and loss of blood from his wound, but faced with a terrifyingly sharp broad blade in Zhu Ying's hand, he immediately woke up. It's not my fault, it's the Li family, Li Qinyan, he came back, he wants you dead, it's not my fault. Li Leijiu frantically tried to defend himself, but Zhu Ying did not care for such talk, and placed the 9-ring broad blade, purchased at a high price from the Mansion City's blacksmith, directly on his neck. Speak, what's going on? The cold blade edge and the sharp pain shocked Li Leijiu, making him tremble like chaff, as he quickly said, it's Li Qinyan, the second young master of the Li family. He came back from the 100-sword sect, and he's gotten together with the second daughter of the Lu family. The Li and Lu families want to unite through marriage. Li Qinyan? 100-sword sect? Zhu Ying frowned and continued to press for answers. How did the Li and Lu families suddenly decide to unite through marriage? Li Leijiu swallowed with difficulty. I don't know, I really don't know, it's not my fault. Huh? Zhu Ying's eyes sharpened, and he pressed the blade even harder. A sharp pain shot through the neck, causing Li Leijiu to shudder and cry out, I heard. The eldest young master of the Li family made connections with some influential person in Mansion City, and the Lu family got wind of it. Knowing that the Li family was going to prosper, they sent a message to the second daughter at the 100-sword sect, urging her to seduce Li Qinyan, who was also studying there. Before long, they got involved, and the Lu family proposed a marriage. An influential person? Zhu Ying's brow furrowed. What influential person? I don't know, I really don't know. Li Leijiu cried profusely. Qinshan, I was wrong, it's my fault, I deserve to die, let me go, for the sake of our shared clan and bloodline. Thud. His words were cut off by a thud, followed by a horrifying splash of crimson blood mixed with the glint of the blade, and a head rolled to the ground. This scene turned Li Hongyu's face deathly pale, her hands covering her mouth tightly. On the other side, Li King wasn't doing much better, clenching his teeth in an effort to stop himself from vomiting. Let's go. Zhu Ying didn't care for any of that, sheathed his blade, and led the two of them deeper into the mountains. Things were clear now. The Lu family had sold him out. Over the years, in order to gain more resources and ensure their own development, he had been taking the lead in the Lu family's battles, serving as a pawn against the Li family, and with his growing strength, he had made the Li family suffer a great deal. Originally, this mutual development had been beneficial for both sides. The Lu family was very happy to use him, a traitor of the Li clan, to strike a blow against the Li family, and therefore their relationship with him had always been good. Old Master Lu had become increasingly appreciative of him, repeatedly showing goodwill and wanting to thoroughly win him over, to bring him under his control. However, luck and misfortune come unexpectedly. The Li family, somehow, had managed to curry favor with someone influential in Mansion City, and it seemed they were on the verge of rapidly rising in status and fortune. Seeing the situation turn unfavorable, the Lu family quickly sought to ease their relations with the Li family, not only arranging a marriage between their children but also casting him away like a sacrificial pawn. What happened earlier at the Lu family mansion, with Lu Ming's actions, were spurred by these developments, seeking to publicly sever ties with him, pin the blame of betrayal on him, and thus kick him out. In doing so, they not only showed goodwill to the Li family but also maintained their own dignity, A clever move indeed. The key to it all was the influential person that the Li family had attached themselves to in Mansion City. Who was that influential person? Zhu Ying didn't know, nor did he have any interest in knowing. He only needed to know one thing, that the Li and Lu families had made their break with him official. So, wait here for my return. If after 3 days I still haven't come back, do as I previously instructed. Zhu Ying, having led the two through twists and turns in the mountain forest, quickly arrived at a secluded bamboo house. This was his secret stronghold in the mountains, built for exactly this day. Brother. Seeing Zhu Ying about to leave on his own, Li King grew anxious. Must you really go? Li Hongyu was even more worried. Right, we can't confront them, but can't we just hide? Let's just stay hidden in these mountains, they can't possibly catch us, right? A man of honor in this world can tolerate certain matters, but some things must be fought for. Zhu Ying shook his head, leaving 2 people behind who couldn't understand his words. Wait for my return. With that, he ignored their reactions and turned to leave the bamboo house. Chapter 13, Archery won that night, the Lu family mansion. Despite an unexpected turn of events, the welcoming banquet still commenced, only now the courtyards were filled with many tense-faced guards, armed and vigilant. As such, after the banquet concluded and guests dispersed with satisfaction, the Lu family patriarch, Lu Guan, went to his study with his 3rd son, Lu Ming. Father. Upon entering the study, Lu Ming hurriedly closed the door and asked his father, Lu Guan, with a tense expression, "Is that Li Qingshan really going to come back? What do you think?" Lu Guan glared fiercely at his son, speaking with frustration. "I have long told you, to beat a snake and not kill it is to invite disaster. Today, since we have revealed our enmity, we should not have let him leave alive. Now that the tiger has returned to the mountain, there will be endless troubles. How can we sleep peacefully after this?" Hearing this, Lu Ming also felt aggrieved. "I was just thinking about giving the Li family some face, letting them take action to vent their anger, and ease the relations between our 2 families. How could I have known that man would act so ruthlessly, committing murder over a disagreement?" Li Qingshan. Sigh. Lu Guan also let out a sigh. "I recognized long ago that he was not an ordinary person. He knows how to be patient, when to advance or retreat, and he has his methods. If it weren't for the Li family gaining the support of an influential person in Mansion City and the deep-seated grudge between our families, I would have never crossed him. Alas, alas. Enough regrets, father." Lu Ming interrupted. "I heard that the Li family has found that Li Leijiu's corpse, decapitated, eyes wide open in death. Also, several of the Li family's guards were all killed with his arrows. If such a person were to come back for revenge, what are we going to do? We surely can't keep guarding like this forever, can we?" "Don't worry." Lu Guan waved his hand, reassuringly saying, "Your father already has a plan. In a moment, go to the storeroom and prepare some gold and silver with Zhang Fu. Tomorrow, send someone to King Feng's stronghold to enlist their help in searching for those 3 people. We will then join forces with the Li family, and search the mountains together. With our combined forces inside and out, we will definitely PFFT." Before he could finish his sentence, a blunt sound was heard. Lu Guan's body trembled, and as he looked down, he saw a bloody blade piercing through his chest. Realizing what was happening, he struggled to turn his head. "You PFFT." Again, before he could finish his words or turn his head, the blade in his chest was forcefully twisted, tearing through his torso and parting flesh from bone, splattering blood everywhere. "Father." Lu Ming stood frozen in place, his face smeared with blood, still unaware of what had happened, when he saw his father's body collapse to the floor, revealing the person behind him, who looked like an Azura or an evil ghost. "You." Meeting the cold gaze of the other person, and seeing the bloodied blade, Lu Ming finally came to his senses, his pupil shrinking, as he was about to scream. However, PFFT. Before he could let out a shriek, a flash of steel cut through the air, knocking him heavily to the ground. After a few spasms, the study returned to silence. Zhu Ying sheathed his blade in his back scabbard, seemingly unconcerned with the 2 corpses on the floor. He started searching the bookshelves. Although he had been sneaking into the Lu family's study to read their books for years, stealing was still stealing. Certain valuable books and regularly read texts could not be casually disturbed. Now that all pretense had been shed, there was no need for concern. He directly packed up all the useful books to take with him. Thus, moments later, Zhu Ying left the study carrying a bundle, and soon after, flames began to spread. On a night dark as ink, perfect for murder, and a wind ripe for spreading fire. Elsewhere, the Lu family's west compound. "There's a leak, there's a leak. Someone, quick, put out the fire." "What's going on?" Shrill cries resonated as lights were ignited in every house. In a western chamber, 2 figures dashed out, one male and one female, both youths. What's all the fuss about? What happened? The two of them, each wielding a long sword, furrowed their brows and stopped a maid to inquire about the situation. Miss, young master. The maid appeared panicked. I don't know, it seems like there's a leak somewhere. A leak? The pair exchanged a look, then let go of the maid. Let's go see what's happened. Yes. The maid hurried off, leaving the two of them uncertain and anxious. How could there be a leak all of a sudden? Could it be the carelessness of a servant? This. Shall we dress and go have a look? Yes. After a brief conversation, they were about to return to their room to dress. But unexpectedly. Whoosh! A sound broke the silence, and an arrow split the air. The male abruptly paused, swiftly drawing his sword to deflect the incoming arrow with a flick of his blade. Who goes there? After parrying the arrow, the man shouted loudly, searching for the direction of the attacker. Whoosh! 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 In response, the sound of piercing arrows filled the air. 3 death-dealing arrows, hidden in the darkness of the night, roared toward them. The male concentrated his gaze and swept his sword, cleaving one of the arrows, but as the attacker fired 3 consecutive shots, he could only just keep up by deflecting the second arrow. Then, PFFT. The third arrow followed immediately. With no time to parry or dodge, he twisted his body desperately, but was still struck by the arrow in his left shoulder, which went through his collarbone. King Yun. Seeing her lover hit, the female rushed to his aid, hurrying to his side. On the roof. Be careful. The man noticed where the archer was and screamed a warning to the female. Her eyes narrowed as she looked up, only to see a figure standing atop the roof to the left. The person was dressed in black, donning armor, and was robust with a build suggesting the ferocity and agility of a tiger or panther. He held a tightly strung large bow, already nocked with another arrow, ready to release a full draw. Chapter 13, Archery to Li Qingshan. Though they did not know each other and had never met, a name still leaped out from both of their mouths. But this did not hinder Zhu Ying's actions. The bowstring was fully drawn, the arrows shot out with great force, and 3 arrows pierced the air, directly heading towards the two of them. The two of them also snapped back to their senses in shock and hurriedly swung their swords to defend, joining forces to deflect the 3 arrows. Seeing this, Zhu Ying did not mind, and he drew 3 bamboo arrows from his quiver, knocking them to the bowstring once more. These 2 were none other than the second young master of the Li family, Li Qinyun, and the second young miss of the Lu family, Lu Ying. They were not yet married but had already hooked up together, cohabiting in the western courtyard of the Lu family estate, which allowed him to catch them in the act. Both were born into powerful and influential families and had trained in the 100-sword sect for many years. Although they had not mastered true chi, they also had some foundation in inner strength, ranking as second-tier experts in the martial world. Otherwise, they would not have been able to withstand his strong bow and powerful arrows. Now that the two of them were joining forces, even from his higher vantage point, with his ability to hit a willow branch at 100 yards, sending out 3 consecutive arrows, it was still very difficult to shoot them dead. But his skills were not limited to archery. Run quickly. Seeing Zhu Ying knock another arrow, Li Qinyun and Lu Ying did not dare to meet the attack head-on, let alone charge forward against the sharp arrows, and could only retreat towards the outside of the courtyard. Whoosh! But just as they moved, they saw the powerful arrows piercing through the air, flying towards them. Luckily, the two of them had already regained their composure, both acting in unison, weaving their swords like a net, and once again managed to block the arrows. But as 3 arrows were deflected, another arrow broke through, following them at the moment when their strength was exhausted, and there was no evading, no blocking. Butcher's technique. Though it was just the technique of butchering, with the Great Way being vast, where different paths lead to the same destination, the philosophy behind it was interconnected, not confined to form, applicable to butchering as well as to handling humans. Whether wielded with a knife or an arrow, as long as the essence was grasped, it was applicable. What essence? Discerning the target, breaking it down piece by piece. Anticipating movements, striking straight at the vital points. Therefore, this 4th arrow was unblockable by the two of them, because their movements, techniques, bodily reactions, all fell within Zhu Ying's anticipations. This arrow struck at the juncture they were unable to dodge, unable to block, even unable to react to. Thud. Lu Ying didn't have time to react when an arrow struck her shoulder, her body staggered, and her beautiful face turned pale in an instant. Run quickly. With his beloved injured by an arrow, Li Qinyun did not dare to tend to her, already chilled with fear, and now only wanted to escape the range of the opposing arrows, shouting as he fled outwards. At that moment. Pa! Under the cold moon and atop the roof eaves, the demonic archer, like a ghost reaping lives, took a deep breath and then slowly closed his eyes. His eyes were closed, but his hands kept moving, drawing arrows like lightning, shooting them like a downpour, pushing his body and the bow to their limits, unleashing a storm of arrows with the power of a single man. Encountering spirit without sight, the official knows to stop and the spirit wants to go. The arrows poured down like rain, the flying arrows swarmed like locusts, enveloping the two in the courtyard. Attacking where they were bound to move and defending where they were bound to salvage, blocking all paths of escape, forbidding any glimpse of life, and ultimately. Thud. The final muffled sound ended the violent tempest, the thorough outpour. Zhu Ying opened his eyes, ignored the pain and numbness in his shoulder and arm, and looked towards the two people in the courtyard. In the courtyard, arrows littered the ground, blood flowed freely, and the two lay in a pool of blood. Their shoulders, arms, waists, knees, as well as vital areas like their hearts, throats, eye sockets, mouths, and noses were all pierced by sharp arrows. From the shock and despair frozen on their faces, one could imagine the hopelessness they faced moments before. This was the power of the butcher's technique. Discerning the target, unraveling everything, by taking the initiative, certainly unbeatable in battle. To counter this, no other way existed but to overpower with brute force. With Zhu Ying's current physique and archery skills, this brute strength threshold was at least that of a true chi master, who could use their superior reaction and speed to dodge or counter his butcher's technique with arrows. But clearly, Li Kenyan and Lu Ying lacked this brute strength. Having not yet converted their inner strength into true chi, they could not withstand Zhu Ying's sudden assault and ambush. Their fate had been sealed from the start. Twisting his sore, numb, and now swollen arm, and glancing at the finely made bamboo bow in his hand, which showed obvious cracks, Zhu Ying shook his head, then leaped forward, jumping into the courtyard and walking towards the bodies of the two. Although his physique was robust and his archery powerful, he had after all not trained in martial arts, so such a burst of activity was a significant strain and damage to both his body and his weapon, and he would be unable to use it again for a while. Luckily, the only people from the Li and Lu families who posed a direct threat to him were Li Kenyan and Lu Ying, the two skilled practitioners who had returned from the 100-sword sect. The various other martial instructors, household guards, and protectors were not his match at all. Therefore, a few moments later, at the Lu family mansion, flames reached for the sky amidst utter chaos. Some were fighting the fire, some were fleeing in all directions, some were taking advantage of the confusion to make off with valuables. Amidst the turmoil, Zhu Ying, carrying a large bundle, advanced toward the Li family residence under the cover of darkness. There are some things that you either never start, or you must follow through to the end, or else a wounded snake will bring endless trouble. Late at night, in the mountains, the continuous howling of wolves and screeches of monkeys could be heard. Within a hidden bamboo house, Li Hongya clutched a dagger and crouched in a corner, her eyes filled with anxiety. Li King held a knife in one hand and a bow in the other, sitting beside the bed and staring fixedly at the closed bamboo door, his lips unconsciously bitten until they bled, betraying his inner tension. Just then. Knock, knock, knock. The sound of knocking startled them both before they could react. They heard a voice from outside. "It's me, I'm back, open the door." "Brother." Recognizing the familiar voice, they finally relaxed and hurried forward to open the door. Phew. As the door opened, a strong stench of blood rushed in with the night wind, causing them to stand still involuntarily. They saw Zhu Ying with a knife on his back and a bow in hand, holding two large bundles, emanating a strong scent of blood, his armor bearing several fresh red marks. "Brother. What happened to you?" This sight alarmingly startled the siblings, prompting them to ask anxiously. "I'm fine." "Close the door." Without further explanation, Zhu Ying, carrying the two bundles, came to the table and removed his armor and clothing, revealing his muscular torso and swollen shoulders. He then opened the bundles and applied several bottles of medicinal powder to his wounds. Li King and Li Hongya stood by, yearning to ask questions but too afraid to speak. Zhu Ying didn't explain much to them either. After applying the medicine that promoted blood circulation and reduced bruising, the matter is settled, but we'll need to live here for a while. We have to manage these provisions well, otherwise, we'll need to go down the mountain to resupply. With that, he opened the two bundles, revealing some gold and silver amidst the jars of salt and bottles of oil, along with a stack of books. "Get some food." "Oh, okay." Li Hongya complied and handed Zhu Ying a jar of pickled pork hock. Zhu Ying took the pork hock, bit into it, and then picked up a book. "You both have kept watch all night and must be tired. Go to sleep, I'll keep watch." Although they had many questions, since Zhu Ying said so, they did not insist and quietly lay on the bed, still staring at him. But they couldn't stay awake for long. Soon, the pull of sleep was too strong, and they quickly fell asleep on their pallets. At this time, Zhu Ying had already devoured the pork hock and was now intently reading the martial arts manual he had scavenged from the Li family's house 3 Ying steaks. It was a manual of inner strength, a technique common and widespread, even considered pedestrian within the martial world. But what was commonplace to the sex of the martial world was precious knowledge and power beyond reach for commoners like him in the countryside. Beyond the 3 Ying stakes, Zhu Ying had packed an assortment of unread books, many of which were martial arts manuals, but mostly common techniques like the Mandarin duck blades, subduing tiger fist, R-hit stick, and grass flight, all widely known and practiced martial arts. However, he didn't mind. He read through each one thoroughly, like a parched sponge soaking up every bit of moisture, striving to fill his mind to the brim. Lack of depth in a wide array of skills? Greed for more knowledge without mastering it? To him, these were not problems at all. With the ability to traverse between worlds, as Yuan Zimengdi, and the vast differences in the flow of time coupled with the special effects of the attribute panel, he could master a plethora of skills, fill in all gaps, and even delve into numerous fields to blossom in all of them. Knowledge is power. Information is wealth. With ample time and a long life ahead, as long as he made good use of everything, he was sure to live a resplendent life. Chapter 14, 5 years 5 years later, Little Yellow Mountain. In the cold winter, a group of people hurried through the freezing forest. There were 3 people in the group, led by a tall and thin man with a sallow complexion. He carried a woodcutter's hatchet and walked in the front, followed by a frail woman and a stout-hearted young boy. "Dear, can this really work?" The woman, holding the young boy's hand, followed closely behind the man, her coarse face full of worry. "Yes, it definitely can. As long as we find King Feng's stronghold, there will surely be a way." The man also looked a bit flustered but managed to keep a strong front in front of his wife and child, stubbornly moving forward. However, the woman was still not at ease. "I've heard that King Feng's stronghold is filled with bandits. If we're caught by the officials." "So what if they're bandits?" Before he could finish, the man was interrupted, his teeth clenched. "The Zhang family has clearly driven you toward a dead end. Instead of being pushed to death by them, it's better to join King Feng's stronghold, at least. There's a chance to live." "That's right, Dad is right." Upon hearing this, the stout-hearted young boy next to the woman raised his head, speaking excitedly. "If that Li Qingshan could do it back then, I, Zhu Xiaoshan, can do it too. Once we arrive at King Feng's stronghold, we will surely live a good life." After speaking, the boy then looked up at the man in front, his eyes filled with curiosity. "Dad, do you really know that Li Qingshan?" "Of course." The man smiled, standing up straight. "Your dad and your uncle Qingshan grew up together as close as brothers, naked as the day we were born. If it hadn't been for... In any case, as long as we get to King Feng's stronghold, there will be good times for our family." "Stop right there." No sooner had he finished speaking than a stern shout came from the woods, startling the 3 people into halting their steps. Immediately, 2 men dressed as hunters emerged from the woods, their bows and arrows aimed at the trio. "Who are you?" The man hastily shielded his wife and child behind him. "Big brothers, we're from Little Yellow Village. We came into the mountains to chop firewood. We're not bad folks." Chopping firewood. Looking at the 3 people laden with large and small bundles, the 2 hunters clearly didn't believe them. "You're carrying so much stuff just to chop firewood? You're trying to fool a ghost. Spit it out, what are you really up to?" "This." The man's face reddened, too anxious to speak, while the woman and boy behind him became even more panicked. Just then. "Hold it." A severe shout rang out, and a man looked toward the sound to see a line of people stepping out from the woods, led by a tall young man. "Deputy leader." The 2 hunters turned around and revealed the identity of the young man. However, the young man did not dwell on that, and quickly approached the man's family. "Are you from Little Yellow Village?" "Yes, yes, yes." The man came to his senses and, looking at the young man in casual clothes, replied in rapid succession. "Yes, we're all from Little Yellow Village. Oh, brave hero." As he spoke, he instinctively sized up the young man, and then, in a flash of realization, "You are King, you're Li King? You know me?" Li King looked at the man in astonishment. "Which family are you from?" "I'm Da Naiu." The man also became excited, repeatedly saying, "I'm Zhu Da Naiu who lives at the entrance of the village. Don't you recognize me? Back then, I and King Shan." "Zhu Da Naiu? Brother Da Naiu?" With that, Li King also began to remember, his eyes wide with astonishment looking at the man who'd grown old and sallow. "Your brother Da Naiu? What brought you to this state?" Seeing that the other party recognized him, Zhu Da Naiu was mixed with joy and sorrow, choking up. "It was all because of the Zhang family pushing us. Ah yes, this is my wife, and this, my son. Quickly, quickly, say hello, this is your Uncle King. Brother King. Uncle King." The woman, hugging the young boy, began to greet him deferentially. "Sister-in-law." Li King nodded, then turned back to Zhu Da Naiu and asked, "Brother Da Naiu, what's We have nowhere else to turn. Zhu Dianyu's expression was bitter as he explained the situation. At the beginning of the year, my wife fell ill. Not having money for medicine, we could only borrow silver from the Zhang family. With interest compounding, even offering our land wasn't enough. We were pushed with no choice but to flee into the mountains. So that's how it is. Having grown up in a family from the hills, Li King understood Zhu Dianyu's plight and immediately began to reassure him, "Don't worry. King Feng's stronghold is now under my big brother's control. I can't promise anything else, but there will definitely be food for you. Come with me." "That's wonderful, thank you so much. Come on, Xiao-shan, kowtow to your Uncle King." Finding relief in a desperate situation, Zhu Dianyu didn't know how to respond and could only pull his wife and child along, thanking Li King incoherently. Looking at the confused and relieved Zhu Dianyu, Li King felt a complex emotion in his heart. If his big brother hadn't led them to find a way out back then, would he have ended up as desolate as the man before him? Meanwhile, in King Feng's stronghold, at the training ground. 1. Ha. 2. Ha. 3. Upon the training ground, shouts continued without pause as nearly 100 bare-chested, well-built men were practicing martial arts. A tall youth with a powerful build like that of a tiger or leopard stood among them, eyeing the ranks detachment, correcting the practitioner's movements with a short stick. Just then, brother, wearing red, with a neat and efficient outfit, Li Hongyu approached the ground, addressing Zhu Ying who was directing the training of the group. "Someone from 100 Broken Mountains has come." Zhu Ying responded without looking back, "Take them to the hall. I'll be there shortly." "Understood." Li Hongyu nodded and turned to leave. "What are you looking at? Keep training." Zhu Ying also turned back around, as if nothing had happened, and continued to chide the others. 5 years, neither long nor short. In these 5 years, Zhu Ying primarily did 2 things. First, practice martial arts, and second, teach others to practice martial arts. 5 years ago, he had started practicing martial arts with the secret manuals plundered from the Li and the Zhang families, ranging from internal strength mantras to external strength training, fist and foot techniques, and light body skills. He embarked on all the martial arts he could practice. Thus, 2 years later, he had developed inner strength, and his archery skills had greatly improved. He decided to leave his inconvenient bamboo hut, shouldering his blade and bow, and, just as he had wiped out the Li and Zhang families, he annihilated the bandits of King Feng's stronghold, which loomed within the mountains, and claimed it as his base. Over the next 3 years, using King Feng's stronghold as a foundation, he constantly recruited refugees from the mountains, taught them martial arts and archery, expanded the stronghold, and strengthened himself. Now, he could be considered dominant in his realm. Why expand the stronghold when he could devote that time and energy to diligently cultivating in peace? Not good enough. After many years of exploration and investigation, Zhu Ying was quite certain that this was a low martial world, devoid of excessively high-level forces. There were no invincible warriors who could become an army unto themselves, and no immortals with eternal life and everlasting youth. The path of the martial arts here ends with the cultivation of true qi. In such a world, the power of an individual pales in comparison to that of a group, and Zhu Ying had to build a powerful group to serve him. Only then could some of his ideas and plans become reality. So, he began to manage the stronghold and develop his power. And the achievements of these years of management. Zhu Ying, Li Qingshan, Cultivation, Inner Strength Realm Lifespan, 26 out of 159 skills, Eating, Daily Devour 1 ox, Strengthen Body and Health, Gluttonous Recovery, Absorb Qi to Fast, Extend Life, Sleeping, Soothe Spirit and Nourish Soul, Stabilize Foundation and Cultivate Essence, Heal Blood and Rejuvenate, Vigorous as Dragons and Tigers, Extend Life, Breathing, Strengthen Body and Health, Stabilize Foundation and Cultivate Essence, Qi Blood like Tides, Fierce as Thunder and Fire, Circulation of Breath like an Infant, Butchering, Butcher's Technique, Evil Qi like a Tiger, Fresh Tastes Delicious, Hunting, Alone in the Forest, Discern by Sound, Pursue for Thousands of Miles, Craftsmanship, Powerful Bow, Strong Arrows, Durable Hide Armor, Bamboo Craftsmanship, Archery, Hit a Willow Branch at 100 yards, 4 stars in a row, Shooting Rush like a Tiger, Arrow Flies like Lightning, Walking, Swift as Flying, Over Mountains and Across Ridges, Strengthen Body and Health, Hiding, Silence and Invisibility, Leave No Trace, Theft, Shadowy Night Movement, Silent, Lock Picking, Reading, Never Forget After Reading, Think from one to the next, Innovate from the Old, Knife Sharpening, Unimaginably Sharp, Cut through Iron like Mud, Martial Practice, Crazy with Blade, Obsessed with Archery, Rise with Roosters Grow, Diligence Makes Up for Dullness, Strengthen Body and Health, Extend Life, Integrate and Master Skills, Teaching, Instruct with Patience, Teach and Learn Together, Lead by Example, Martial Arts, 3 Ying Stakes, Mandarin Duck Blades, Bagua Bomb, Zinni Fist, 5 Animal Play, Grass Flight, Iron Shirt, Golden Bell Shield, Divine Arm Skill, Dragon Claw Hand, Pursue Twin Swordsmanship, Sun Piercing Fist Technique, Iron Staff Spear Technique. After 5 years of arduous training, Zhu Ying reconfirmed one thing, that is, the difficulty of training skills and earning traits in this world is really much lower than in the real world. In these 5 years, he primarily did 2 things, that is, practicing martial arts and teaching disciples, hence he developed skills in martial arts and teaching. Among these, his progress in martial arts was the most noticeable. Out of the 7 traits, 5 were 4 character traits. The teaching was slightly inferior, but it also had 3 4-character traits that could assist in development and complement each other: earnest instruction, mutual learning, and leading by example. The efficiency of skill training far exceeded that of the real world. Beyond the 2 main skills of martial arts practice and teaching, his other skills also improved significantly, having all advanced to the 4-character trait level, with various effects greatly enhanced. The original independent skill of chopping had even integrated into martial arts practice, evolving into the more powerful trait Sword Mania. Furthermore, the management and development of the stronghold. Greetings to Chief Li. In the Hall of Righteous Gathering, Zhu Ying sat high on the main seat, looking down at a middle-aged man dressed as a scholar. Facing his substantive gaze, filled with hidden evil chi, the middle-aged scholar felt some pressure, but still managed to say, Chief Li is known to adore martial arts and has long been eagerly collecting profound martial art manuals from all over the world. These 3 secret tomes are superior martial arts from famous sects. They are a special gift from Heavenly King Liang to Chief Li. Having said that, he commanded his subordinates to present a wooden box. 6 Ying Skill? Heart-Crushing Bomb? Song Mountain Sword Skill? That's thoughtful. Looking at the 3 secret tomes in the box, Zhu Ying smiled and looked at the visitor. Heavenly King Liang sends such a generous gift. What does he want in return, eh? The question came off as rather impolite. The middle-aged scholar's eyebrows furrowed, then relaxed as he said, Chief Li is a young hero. Our Heavenly King wishes to form an alliance between our 2 households, hence these secret tomes as a gift. Moreover, we've heard that Chief Li has a young unmarried sister, while our Heavenly King's 3rd son is also a bachelor. If our 2 families enter into a marriage alliance? Impossible. Before he could finish, he was interrupted, with Li Hongyu beside Zhu Ying glaring with round almond eyes, angrily saying, I will not marry. Facing the angry Li Hongyu, the middle-aged scholar had no words, only turning his gaze to Zhu Yang. I wonder what Chief Li's thoughts are? Zhu Ying smiled, non-committal, is that all? This. Sensing some unease in the middle-aged scholar, but unable to do anything about it, he could only continue firmly, Chief Li, our Heavenly King is one of the leaders of 70 provinces, spanning north and south, seated upon 100 broken mountains Heavenly King Peak. Heroes and brave men from all the greenwoods obey his commands. Zhu Ying remained composed, cutting in to ask, so what? After a moment of silence, the middle-aged scholar continued, if our 2 families enter into a marriage alliance, in the future, King Feng Stronghold and Heavenly King Peak would be one family. The salt, soap, and glass trades of Chief Li could then flow unimpeded through the 13 northern and southern provinces, and surely lead to vast wealth. Our 2 households. I understand. Before he could finish, he was again interrupted. Zhu Ying, seated high on the main seat, spoke indifferently, go back and tell Liang Sanjian to prepare his coffin. In 3 days, I will go to Heavenly King Peak to claim his head. This. The middle-aged scholar looked utterly astonished, not expecting Zhu Ying to be so direct. As he opened his mouth to speak again, he was interrupted by Zhu Ying's dismissive gesture. Be gone. Chapter 15, The Foundation One. What? Damn it. Who gave him the courage of a bear and a leopard? In the 100 broken mountains, atop Heavenly King Peak, inside the Hall of Righteous Gathering, a series of table-slapping sounds erupted as leaders sitting to the left and right stared angrily, eyes wide and round. Only the middle-aged man in the central seat, the master of the main seat, remained composed, his cold eyes fixed on the middle-aged scholar reporting below. Did he really say that? Indeed. The middle-aged scholar nodded and said, Heavenly King, this Li King Shan is truly unbridled and audacious to the extreme. Humphrey. From the main seat, one of the 5 chief leaders of the 63 provinces north of the 7 south, Heavenly King Liang Sanjian of the 100 broken mountains, let out a cold snort. This man indeed has some skills, but to provoke my 100 broken mountains is far too audacious. Big brother is right. This kid doesn't know how high the sky is or how deep the earth is. If he doesn't drink a toast, then let him drink a penalty wine. Tomorrow, we'll obliterate his King Feng stronghold. Big brother, give me 200 brothers, and I will pluck his head for you right away. There's no need to trouble third brother with such a trifle. The two of us are enough to handle a small Qingfeng stronghold. Seeing Liang Sanjiang's stance, the leaders on either side were even more eager to fight. No rush. Seeing his subordinates vying to fight, Liang Sanjiang was very satisfied internally, but shook his head on the surface. Although this man is arrogant, he has some skills, and is not to be underestimated. He must be approached with caution. Strategist, what do you think? Heavenly King's words are very true. Realizing Liang Sanjiang was asking for his input, the middle-aged scholar didn't dare to delay and quickly responded. Although Li Qingshan is arrogant, he's not one to shoot without aim. I heard that he was once just a small mountain resident of Little Yellow Village, orphaned early and often bullied, almost driven to extinction by his clan members. Yet, with great daring, he sold himself to the Lu family to confront the Li family, driving away wolves and devouring tigers, and took advantage of the situation to rise in power within the Lu family in just a few years, becoming very influential. He also mastered archery well enough to hit a willow branch at 100 yards. Later, when the Li family encountered a patron, and the Lu family wanted to make peace, intending to sacrifice him, he struck first and eradicated both Li and Lu families overnight. He then fled into the forest with his siblings, where his prowess grew uncontrollably, like a dragon entering the sea. In just 5 years, he destroyed Qingfeng's stronghold, took over Little Yellow Mountain, recruited refugees from the mountains, expanded the stronghold's power, and even widely taught martial arts without reservation in food, clothing, gold, and silver. Not just the mountain refugees but also people from nearby villages and even towns and Mansion City know of his righteousness and extraordinary magnanimity. He is considered a hero by many. Moreover, he's adept in various unique techniques, not only in making refined snowflake salt but also in creating strange items like soap and colored glaze. With these, he opened up trade routes, spreading across counties and prefectures, and collaborated with wealthy families and big merchants. He could be said to make a fortune every day. Despite making a fortune daily, he is not at all stingy, offering high bounties to acquire famous martial arts from all over and purchasing iron armor, blade soldiers, provisions, and meat. Now, not only are his martial prowess and true chi profound and immeasurable, his subordinates are also fierce and fearless, competing to devote their lives. Humphrey. The speech was interrupted before it could be finished. The middle-aged scholar was startled, then quickly came to his senses and looked up to see that Liang Sanjiang's expression was icy cold, and the expressions on the other leaders' faces were none too friendly. Talking too much can backfire. The middle-aged scholar was alarmed inside and quickly lowered his head to rectify. In any case, Li Qingshan is no ordinary villain. Although our 100 broken mountains are 10 times stronger than him, and with a peerless hero like the Heavenly King and such valiant and powerful leaders, we must still not underestimate him. We should proceed cautiously and plan our moves deliberately. With such diplomatically cautious flattery, Liang Sanjiang's expression softened slightly. However, the other leaders were still displeased. Humphrey, strategist, do not empower others at the expense of our own prestige. That Li Qingshan, a mere greenhorn, dares to be so insolent? If he doesn't drink a toast, let him drink a penalty wine. Tomorrow we will obliterate his Qingfeng stronghold. His Qingfeng stronghold has only been established for a few years, and he dares to challenge my 100 broken mountains? We'll flatten the stronghold and capture him alive to give him a good beating. Then the salt business and those soaps and glazes will all belong to us. Third brother speaks well. The leaders were all volunteering to fight, and Liang Sanjiang nodded in approval, laughing out loud. No matter how crafty he is, he cannot withstand the combined strength of me and my brothers. Relay my orders, gather the troops. Tomorrow we march on Little Yellow Mountain, crush Qingfeng's stronghold, and capture him alive to raise our... Swoosh. Mid-sentence, an arrow suddenly slashed through the air, shooting straight towards them. Liang Sanjiang's pupils shrank, and he instinctively reacted, narrowly evading the deadly arrow. As one of the chief leaders of the 7 provinces in the south and 63 provinces in the north, and the reigning Heavenly King of the 100 Broken Mountains, Liang Sanjiang was obviously no slouch. More than a decade earlier, he had achieved true chi, and his ghost head gold blade was renowned in both the southern and northern 13 provinces. He was considered a Grand Master-level expert similar to the heads of various sects and renowned figures in the martial world. Even with such abilities, faced with this completely unexpected arrow, he was still shocked and appalled. His true chi instinctively surged as he instinctively moved, barely managing to dodge the frightening arrow. However, after one arrow came another, aimed in advance and calculated to lock onto the very spot where Liang Sanjiang was dodging for his life, leaving him no chance to evade or retreat, and not even enough time to react. The forceful arrow pierced through him, and with a dull thud, even though it only struck his shoulder blade and was not a fatal hit, it still forced Liang Sanjiang into painful retreat, tumbling back onto the golden chair. Chapter 15, The Foundation. At that very moment. Swoosh. 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 3 arrows like lightning, one after another, caught everyone off guard as blood spurted violently, dazzlingly bright. Immediately, a pitiful scream pierced the air, and Liang Sanjian fell back into his gilt chair, limbs skewered by powerful bolts, pinned firmly in place, the excruciating pain causing his eyes to bulge, nearly splitting at the seams, unable to hold back his cries. Big brother. This. Caught off guard by the sudden change, the thunder swift and violent, a group of leaders staring at the horrifying screams of Liang Sanjian didn't know what to do, when suddenly they saw. Swoosh. Thud. The sound of something piercing the air, then flesh, followed swiftly one after the other. Everyone's pupils shrank, terrified by the gruesome splattering of blood. Atop the gilt chair, Liang Sanjian slumped like mud, limbs penetrated by powerful bolts and yet another arrow entering his mouth, through the brain, severing the thread of life completely. Big brother. Seeing this, the crowd finally snapped to attention, their bodies instinctively jolting up as they turned to look outside. As their gazes shifted, they saw a figure stride in from the hall, majestic like a towering mountain, brimming with evil chi. You. The crowd was terrified, speech stuck in their throats. Yet the newcomer did not care, smoothly drawing the 9-ring blade from his back, the ominous blade reflecting a fierce sharpness that made everyone wince, adding to their terror. All of you, come at me together. With those words, the slaughter began anew, transforming the Hall of Ritus gathering into a storm of blades and a tempest of blood. Shortly thereafter, the clamor of fighting inside the hall subdued, while the chaos spread like wildfire outside, engulfing the entire stronghold. Thud. In the Hall of Ritus gathering, with the final blow, a cold gleam flashed, and instantly blood sprayed crimson, a body severed from its head. Zhu Ying stood alone in the hall, holding the heavy blade, his gaze sweeping around the room, now filled with lifeless bodies and severed limbs. As the only survivor in the hall, looking at Zhu Yang, whose blade was unstained by blood and whose edge was intimidating, the middle-aged scholar's legs went weak, and he fell to his knees, bowing his head, his voice trembling as he said, "My lord, I greet you, lead DA of the household. Congratulations, sir, on taking over the estate of the 100 Broken Mountains." Ha! Zhu Ying laughed, sheathing his blade, and looked at the man kneeling before him. "You do know which way the wind blows. Thank you for the praise, great leader." Feeling that there was no intent to kill from the other party, the middle-aged scholar felt slightly relieved and spoke with forced composure, that Liang Sanjian was a frog in a well, stubborn and self-righteous, actually daring to be the enemy of the household leader, truly seeking his own death. Enough with the nonsense. However, Zhu Ying had no time to listen to the other side's flattery and cut to the chase, asking, "Where is the storeroom?" Hearing this, the middle-aged scholar didn't dare to waste words any longer. Struggling to stand, he said with trepidation, "The storeroom of the stronghold mainly contains ordinary goods." Liang Sanjian, being selfish and greedy, kept all of the extraordinary treasures and valuable loot in his private stockpile, along with numerous divine weapons and martial arts manuals. "Please follow me, leader." He didn't question why Zhu Ying was so devoid of martial virtue, going against his word of moving out after 3 days and showing up today instead, shamelessly using strong bows and sharp arrows to ambush and kill the unsuspecting Liang Sanjian. Because this is how the martial world operates, where the victor is king. To say anything else would be meaningless. 100 Broken Mountains, Heavenly King Peak, henceforth had a new master. Zhu Ying's plan had taken a crucial step forward. Ever since he took over King Feng's stronghold and had established a certain level of power and a solid foundation, he began to reveal the advantages of being a transmigrator. Relying on technologies such as fine salt, soap, and colored glaze, he obtained a large amount of wealth. This wealth was not hoarded in his hands but constantly transformed into power. On one hand, he spent a fortune to obtain martial arts manuals from famous masters and various sects, enriching his own martial foundations. On the other hand, he purchased grain, meat, weapons, and armor, training his followers and strengthening the stronghold. In a world with no extraordinary powers and low martial arts, the power of money was extremely strong. Zhu Ying's no-cost spared and generous investments were naturally effective. Not only did his own martial arts improve rapidly, but the stronghold's strength also grew swiftly. Unfortunately, wealth is not omnipotent. Soon, Zhu Ying encountered a bottleneck both in his martial arts progression and the development of the stronghold. There is no need to elaborate on martial arts. With money invested and skill traits, in just a few years, Zhu Ying had cultivated inner strength and mastered many martial arts. However, the cultivation of true chi that followed inner strength was a jealously guarded secret of the major sects. Although he had an attribute panel and skill traits like a golden finger, these skill traits could only turn decay into magic, not create something out of nothing. At least for now, The skills and traits he had developed couldn't achieve that. Therefore, he could only offer a high reward for the purchase of martial arts from famous masters and true chi cultivation methods. However, while he didn't secure any mana point, trouble knocked at his door first. Liang Sanjian was one of those envious onlookers. Just as with martial arts cultivation, the development of the stronghold encountered similar issues. Little Yellow Mountain was too small, and Qingfeng Stronghold was even smaller. Even though he had taken in many fugitives from the mountains and attracted many poor people to join, he could not change the fundamental issue of size. Soon, he reached a bottleneck and became the target of contention by officials, bandits, and various other forces. To break out of this situation, he decisively took action against 100 Broken Mountains. 100 Broken Mountains, stretching from the southern dynasty to the north and located in the central plains, is one of the main thoroughfares for north-south traffic. The mountain ranges are continuous, vast and deep, rife with bandits, thus merchants passing through often suffer robbery, which led to the mountain's name, 100 Broken. Liang Sanjian, a true chi expert and a bandit leader, 30 years ago had forcefully united the bandits of 100 Broken Mountains and became one of the chieftains over 63 provinces in the south and north, known as the Heavenly King of 100 Broken Mountains. After taking the Heavenly King Peak, Liang Sanjian secured the support and loyalty of all bandits in 100 Broken Mountains. His power was extremely formidable. The imperial court sent troops to eradicate him multiple times, but they always returned without success, boosting his reputation even further, shining brightly as if he were the sun at its zenith. He had set his sights on the recently risen Qingfeng Stronghold, not realizing that Zhu Yang also had his eyes on his 100 Broken Mountains. For Zhu Yang, as long as he killed this man and seized the foundation of 100 Broken Mountains, he could then occupy a naturally defensible territory, no longer fearing any encirclement campaigns by the court or officials. Besides, controlling such a critical traffic route would enable him to collect profits from north-south trade. Coupled with commodities like fine salt, soap, and colored glaze, becoming the wealthiest in the land would be effortless. With money, one can make the gods come through. Soon, the issues with martial arts cultivation would be resolved, and his progression to a true chi grandmaster would face no more obstacles. Therefore, after Liang Sanjian sent men to his door, Zhu Yang decisively took action. First, he set a 3-day meeting to distract attention and then stealthily entered Heavenly King Peak. Outside the Hall of Righteous Gathering, he shot and killed Liang Sanjian. Over the years, he had diligently practiced martial arts, not only cultivating the basics of inner strength, but with the aid of martial arts, his archery skills had also improved significantly. Combined with the butcher's technique and the iron bamboo bow that he meticulously crafted and was difficult for others to draw, even Liang Sanjian, the true chi grandmaster, could not withstand his ambush and died on the spot. With Liang Sanjian dead, the outcome of this battle was without suspense. The remaining dozen or so stronghold leaders, the strongest only possessing inner strength, were like clay chickens and pottery dogs against him, not worth one blow. In a moment, they were all cut down by his 9-ring blade, which could easily slice through iron like mud and cleave through steel armor. 100 Broken Mountains thus changed hands. With the foundation of 100 Broken Mountains in his grasp, he was like a bird soaring into the sky or a fish leaping into the ocean. Casting his gaze upon the world, he faced no more constraints. In such a way. Chapter 16, Birthday Banquet in the Mountains. There are no years, and a cycle passes in leisure. 74 years later, on the 100 Broken Mountains, the Heavenly King Peak. From the North Province, the eastbound escort agency, Head Escort Master Miao arrives. Head Escort Master Miao presents a congratulatory gift, a portion of red blood ginseng. Disciple Miao Feng, accompanied by my son, pays respects and wishes the Grandmaster longevity like the East Sea and a life as enduring as the South Mountain. From the South Province, Zenwai Escort Agency, Head Escort Master Wang arrives. Head Escort Master Wang presents a congratulatory gift, a pair of Sky Mountain Snow Lotus. Grand Disciple Wang Tang pays respects, wishing the ancestral master brightness surpassing the sun and moon, everlasting youth through the seasons. Golden Jade Hall, Mr. Zhao arrives. Mr. Zhao presents a congratulatory gift, a millennium warm jade pillow. Student Zhao Hao pays respects, wishing my teacher everlasting celestial fortune, a life as long as the heavens. From the North Sea, the Flying Fish Gang, gang leader Meng arrives. From Sichuan Huai Mountain, Boss Zhang arrives. From the East Mountain Commerce Association, Manager Qian arrives. At 100 Broken Mountains, on Heavenly King Peak, in front of the Hall of Righteous Gathering, it was exceptionally lively. Troops and officials from all directions came, their voices of greeting unceasing, jubilation resounding. Zhu Hai, the main steward of the mountain stronghold, personally tended to the guests amidst the feast, welcoming friends from every direction. Brother Zhu, long time no see. Manager Zhu, your charm hasn't diminished since back in the day. Brother Zhu, how has the Grandmaster been faring lately? Brother Zhu. All faces greeted him with smiles, and Zhuhai met them with a smile in return. Brother Miao, it has been a long time. Oh, now I should address you as head escort master Miao, shouldn't I? Younger brother Wang, your elegance surpasses that of the past. Brother Zhao, all has been well with you, I trust? The Grandmaster has been exceedingly well. Brother Qian. Big brother Meng. Ah, we're all family here, there's no need for such formalities. The guests who had arrived on the scene were mainly from escort agencies, business associations, gangs, and the Greenwoods. The gifts they brought were valuable, but the bonds were even stronger. During the feast, as they met with Zhuhai, all faces engaged in friendly chatter, a harmonious atmosphere where both hosts and guests enjoyed themselves. At that moment, Manager. A servant approached Zhuhai, presenting a red invitation. Zhuhai looked at the invitation, then turned to the servant and said, a distinguished guest has arrived, quickly, please invite them in. A distinguished guest. Upon hearing this, everyone was taken aback, especially seeing Zhuhai standing in place, reluctant to move. His expression grew more curious. To call them a distinguished guest, yet not receive them in person. Such behavior was indeed puzzling, could it be? As speculations rose in the minds of the crowd. The leader of Kunlun, He Tan Kong, along with his disciples, conveys wishes to Heavenly King Li for a longevity like the South Mountain. With the announcement of their arrival, a group of people entered the Hall of Righteous Gathering. Only then did Manager Zhuhai step forward to welcome them, hands clasped and a smile on his face. Mr. Iron Sword graces us with his esteemed presence. We have failed to greet you from afar, please forgive us. The stance of Kunlun's leader He Tan Kong was upright and staunch, like a pine, exemplifying the aura of a grandmaster. Hearing Zhuhai's words, he too clasped his hands in return and responded with a hearty laugh. Manager Zhu exaggerates. I come uninvited, it is I who should ask for forgiveness. Ha ha. Zhuhai laughed, not minding in the least, and gestured with a sweep of his hand, please take a seat. Please. He Tan Kong, without ceremony, led his disciples to sit down a perfect number for one table. The leader of Kunlun? Mr. Iron Sword? This. The seated guests were visibly taken aback at this development. Kunlun is far away in the western regions, why come to offer congratulations without any reason? Looking at this, it seems Heavenly King didn't invite them. Perhaps it's not without reason, but rather there is a cause behind it. If they're not here for good, they're here for ill. Humphrey, they dare stir trouble here? Today is the Grandmaster's centennial birthday, they wouldn't dare such insolence. They say Golden Jade Hall's trade spreads far and wide, and in recent years they've revived trade between the Central Plains and the Western regions, causing quite a few disturbances. As Kunlun is a prominent power in the Western regions, could it be they're here for this matter? Humphrey, indeed they are not welcome guests. Everyone knows that Golden Jade Hall belongs to Heavenly King, and Kunlun's faction picked this time to visit, clearly with ill intentions, wishing to disrupt Heavenly King's centennial celebration. They truly court death. The crowd buzzed with conversation, their words quite harsh and without any attempt to disguise their thoughts. However, the Kunlun representatives remained undisturbed, sitting quietly at their table, waiting. At that moment, the leader of Kong Tong, Chen Longfei, accompanied by his junior siblings Meng Hun, Zhu Ming, Zhang Zue, Shen Kai, Song Hua, Bei Qi, and Kang Zhuan, along with numerous disciples, present their respects to Heavenly King Li for prosperity like the East Sea. Another group stepped into the Hall of Righteous Gathering. Zhuhai's demeanor unchanged, advanced to meet them. The arrival of the Kongtong 8 heroes is an honor. We failed to greet you from afar, our apologies. Manager Zhu is too courteous. Please, have a seat. The number of people from Kongtong exceeded that of Kunlun, filling up 2 tables. The Kongtong 8 heroes? They've come as well? What's this about? Kongtong is in the northwest, in a land of remote and bitter cold. Why came to join the festivity? I've heard they're allied with Kunlun, also involved in the escort business, and had conflicts with Brother Miao's eastbound escort agency some years ago. The commentary continued. The tone was still derisive, but just like the Kunlun members, the Kongtong party also ignored the remarks and quietly took their seats, waiting. At that moment, the disciple of Mi, Jinian, accompanied by fellow junior siblings, come to wish Heavenly King Li peace and health. The abbot of Shelin, Kongjian, along with his junior brothers Kongxing, Kongzi, Kongxian, and other disciples, come to wish Heavenly King Li 1,000 autumns of happiness. The representatives of Wudang, Lingzhu and Lingchong, leading their disciples, come to wish Heavenly King Li everlasting vitality like the evergreens. Yi Feng from Divine Sword Manor wishes Heavenly King Li boundless longevity and fortune. Yuan L from White Camel Mountain wishes Heavenly King Li prosperity as vast as the East Sea. Chen Jixuan from the Beggars Guild wishes Heavenly King Li. Giant Whale Gang. Chapter 16, Birthday Banquet Peace Gang. Iron Palm Gang. Green City Sect. Guests from all corners arrived in an endless stream, and Shuhai, who refused no one, soon saw the expanded Hall of Righteous gathering filled to capacity. The 5 great sects. The 7 great gangs. The 2 elders of Wudang, the 4 monks of Shelin. The prestigious clans, the might of the Big Dipper. All have come. It seems today's affairs will not end peacefully. The Heavenly King celebrates his 100th birthday, how dare they act like this? Such a display clearly indicates they're banding together. They pretend to come for the birthday celebration, but their true intention is to stir up trouble. Humphrey, they're certainly bold, daring to seek trouble on the 100 Broken Mountains. Haven't they learned their lesson from the past years? They think they have strength in numbers and are clearly underestimating us. We cannot let these villains ruin the founder's birthday. As disciples and family members, we must join forces and drive them out of the mountain. Hold on, since Brother Zhu invited them to sit, it means the founder must have a plan. We must not act rashly and spoil his arrangements. Inside the Hall of Righteous gathering, the murmuring was incessant, and the atmosphere even more indescribable. Seeing that the tables were full, Zhuhai also stood up on the main stage and said to everyone, "For all of you to come here to celebrate Heavenly King's birthday, 100 Broken Mountains is deeply honored. With this meager wine, we express our humble gratitude. Please, everyone, drink freely, and not return sober today. Servants, serve the wine, commence the feast." Hold on. His words were not yet finished when someone interrupted him. Zhuhai looked down, gazing at the one who spoke up. It was Kunlun sect leader Hitan Kong, but he did not care and still replied with a faint smile, "What advice does Mr. Ironsword have?" Hitan Kong stood up, drawing the eyes of everyone, and spoke out clearly, "Let's not beat around the bush. Today, we are here not only to celebrate Heavenly King Li's 100th birthday, but there's another matter for which we ask the Heavenly King to explain to the world. So I dare to ask, where is Heavenly King Li?" Zhuhai smiled, still unconcerned. "Heavenly King Li has some pressing matters and cannot spare the time now. Mr. Ironsword, all sect leaders, and esteemed figures of the martial world, if there are matters you wish to discuss, you may speak of them now. Although I am not talented, I am still capable of speaking on behalf of Heavenly King Li. I'm afraid you are not the right person to handle this, Manager Zhu." Zhuhai had hardly finished speaking when another man stood up. It was Kong Tong sect leader Chen Longfei. "It is better to invite Heavenly King Li to come out and confront the heroes himself." Sect leader Chen. Zhuhai lowered his gaze, looking at him coldly. "How Heavenly King Li conducts his affairs is not for the likes of you to determine. I advise sect leader Chen and the rest of you not to bring disgrace upon yourselves." "You?" "Exactly." Chen Longfei's expression stiffened, but before he could speak, someone slammed the table and stood up. It was the head escort master of the Eastbound Escort Agency, Miao Feng. Miao Feng stood up, his tiger eyes glaring coldly at Chen Longfei and the others from Kong Tong. "How the founder acts is none of your business. If you have something to say, then say it. If you want to fight, then follow me outside the mountain and settle it. Do not disturb the founder's birthday celebration." "You." "Brother Miao speaks the truth." Chen Longfei was left speechless by Miao Feng's words, a mix of shock and anger on his face, when yet another man stood up. It was none other than the head escort master of Zhenwei Escort Agency, Wang Tang. Wang Tang rose to his feet, his hand pressing down on the table, his cold eyes sweeping over the sect leaders. "Today is the 100th birthday of our founder. If any of you have grievances with us, settle them outside the mountains. But if you act wildly and disrupt our founder's birthday celebration, don't blame us for being ruthless." Amitabha Buddha. No sooner had the threatening words fallen than they were suppressed by a clear and sonorous Buddhist chant. This chant was so clear and resounding that it drummed in everyone's eardrums like a great bell, fully displaying the profound cultivation of true qi. Everyone turned their heads, following the sound, and saw an old monk with white eyebrows, dressed in a kasaya, rise from his seat and say while leaning on a Vajra scepter, "Head escort Master Wang, you are still so overbearing. With a single disagreement, you resort to threats of violence. No wonder, 7 years ago, you annihilated our Shelline lay disciples and all 78 people from the Dragong 8 Escort Agency." "Huh?" At those words, everyone's gaze suddenly sharpened. Only Wang Tang remained composed, his cold eyes turning to the white-browed old monk. "I wondered who it was, and it turns out to be Master Kongjian from Shelin. True, my Zhenwei Escort Agency has competed with your Dragong 8 Escort Agency, even fought several battles, but the massacre that wiped out Dragong 8 Escort Agency was not our doing. Master, You should first investigate the facts of the case before you make baseless accusations. Humphrey. Kongjian tapped his scepter and said coldly, both physical evidence and witnesses point to you. You say it's not you, is that so? Physical evidence can be manipulated, and witnesses can lie. The truth is in the heart of hearts. Wang Tang flung his sleeves, raising his hands to the sky. We, the disciples of 100 Broken Mountains, have been taught by our founder's verbal instruction and personal example, his earnest teachings. We always act openly and uprightly, with a clear conscience. If it were the doing of my ZNY's court agency, I, Wang Tang, would readily admit it. If there is half a falsehood, I should suffer from the 5 thunder boom, with both body and spirit destroyed. 100 Broken Mountains? Hey! Upon hearing this, Kongjian let out a cold laugh. Who in the martial world doesn't know that Heavenly King Li of the 100 Broken Mountains is the leader of the bandits in the Green Forest, a peerless great bandit who roams the mountains and forests. The merchants and even ordinary travelers all suffer extortion. Even before Heavenly King Li joined the martial world, he ruthlessly exterminated both his family and the Li and Lu families. Such a sect tradition, and he dares to claim being open and upright, with a clear conscience. It is truly laughable. You bald donkey. The moment he said this, an uproar ensued. Wang Tang's eyes bulged with fury, pointing at Kongjian. You dare to insult my ancestors' reputation. The truth is simply stated. What Master Kongjian said is true. What heroes of the Green Forest? Aren't they just a bunch of bandits? You thief monk, you're inverting right and wrong, spouting slander. My 100 Broken Mountains paves the way for commerce, strategizing across the martial world, westward to the deserts, eastward to the vast seas, south across the mountain ridges, north to the snowy lands. Look at the martial world, there is nowhere without the stations, horse gangs, merchant associations, and fleets of the 100 Broken Mountains, truly rich in the 4 seas and prosperous in all directions. Would we need to extort the common people? Ridiculous. Bald donkey, when it comes to extortion, who in the martial world can compete with you? Everyone knows that Shelon, having been established for hundreds of years, is known as a temple but is actually a landlord tyrant. Inside and outside the temple, the good fields it holds are not just 10,000 acres, plus the temple Buddha statues. How much of the common people's offerings have you swallowed? How much blood and flesh of the civilians have you consumed? And those from Dragong 8's court agency, what lay disciples? They are clearly just your looting methods. Dragong 8's court agency, relying on the status of the largest sect in the martial world, purported to be an escort agency, but is actually no different from bandits. The acts of cunning and thievery are countless. It's only fitting that their destruction is heavenly retribution. Everyone knows that though my founder came from humble origins, he has always acted with fairness and justice, never harming the innocent. Back then, the Li and Lu families were wealthy but unkind, overbearing and tyrannical, seeking to take my founder's life. The founder only executed the ringleaders and cut off their followers, without harming anyone else. Where is this talk of exterminating entire families coming from? Besides these malicious villains, all of you seated here are heroes of the martial world. Ask yourselves, has my ancestor ever done anything unjust? Look across the martial world, be it the women and men of the martial world or the common people, who doesn't praise the name of Heavenly King Li as a righteous and benevolent ruler? Humphrey, what a righteous and benevolent ruler, it's just to win over people's hearts and grow your own power. True, you of the 100 Broken Mountains widely shelter fleeing commoners, not knowing how many criminals and bandits have joined your camp, becoming a den of filth, too foul to speak of. It's exactly because you bandits and villains back them up, that many ignorant commoners grow bold, committing murder and robbery. Then, following your founder's example, the righteous and benevolent Heavenly King Li, they flee into the mountains, joining the bandits, thus becoming the scourge of the common people, a malignant tumor of society. You old ghost, you're framing others with lies. Clearly it's you, the so-called prestigious clans in cahoots with the government and powerful families, who oppress and extort layer by layer, driving people to such despair they must flee to the mountains to become escapees. You shameless old thief, turning black into white like this, do you really think no one can cut off your dog head? You youngsters, what right do you have to discuss such matters with us? Where is Li Qingshan? Let him come out. What does he dare to do but not to acknowledge? Hee, at tonight's banquet, why is there not one from the Li family to be seen? Could it be that the old ghost knows his misdeeds have been exposed and he will be attacked by the heroes of the martial world? Hence he ran off early, leaving you outsiders to be the scapegoats. Inside the Hall of Righteous Gathering, both sides insisted on their own arguments, their faces flushed with anger, and the atmosphere grew increasingly tense, on the verge of losing control. Just then. What a lively scene. A light chuckle came from outside. Chapter 17, Powder. Voices came from outside, and the hall suddenly fell silent. Everyone frowned and turned to look, only to see a line of people calmly walking into the hall. The one at the forefront was a fair-skinned, handsome young master. This person, with a folding fan lightly flicking, walked ahead, followed by a group of oddly shaped attendants that included monks, Taoists, literati, and warriors, yet seemed to be none of these, even including a pair of enigmatic children of indeterminate gender. Who was he? A Shelline renegade, the poison monk Yuan Xing. And the ghost-headed monk Zhang Tao. Aren't those two the yin and yang children? That old fellow is the emaciated Taoist Wang Yuan spirit. Where did this band of demons and monsters come from? Boy, who are you? No, this is a Western goods seller. What's the background of this sissy, to have so many evil path experts following him? Seeing the motley crew of followers behind the young master, everyone in the hall, especially the leaders of the various sects, were taken aback and did not dare to act rashly. Those from the 100 Broken Mountains faction were also frowning, looking at the uninvited young master. Who might you be, and what brings you here? Nicely put, nicely put. The young master smiled and revealed his background. I am Li Shabai of the Sacred Fire Sect. Today, I lead the left and right envoys of the Sacred Sect, the 4 Spell Kings, and the 8 Altar Masters to personally ascend the 100 Broken Mountains, to congratulate Heavenly King Li on his long life of 100 years. You! Audacious! As soon as these words were spoken, the disciples of the 100 Broken Mountains immediately boiled with rage, and Miao Feng, the chief escort of the eastbound escort agency, was even more furious, kicking a wine jar toward the other party. Audacious! Unexpectedly, someone behind the intruder also shouted angrily, and with a palm strike from a distance, shattered the flying wine jar with a thunderous crash, not harming the young master in the slightest. Seeing this, the young master cared even less, shaking his fan and laughing. We come to present our congratulations, yet this is how the 100 Broken Mountains treats its guests. Heavenly King Li's name resounds around the world, yet he doesn't know how to teach his people some manners. You're seeking death. This remark enraged the people of the 100 Broken Mountains even more, and they were about to attack him, but they were stopped by the head steward, Zhu Hai, with a wave of his hand. Zhu Hai stepped forward with a light laugh still on his lips. So it's the young leader of the Sacred Fire Sect in person. With such an entourage ascending the 100 Broken Mountains, may I inquire as to your purpose? Ha ha ha, it's said that Zhu Hai of the 100 Broken Mountains is astute and resourceful, the capable right hand of Heavenly King Li. Seeing you today, your reputation is indeed well-deserved. Li Shabai gave a salute but did not continue to provoke. Instead, he turned to the people of the martial world. Everyone in the world knows that Heavenly King Li is just and benevolent, not only a hero of the ages but also a grandmaster. These so-called reputable clans dared to come here on Heavenly King Li's 100th birthday to stir up trouble, truly seeking death. Having said this, before the representatives of the various sects could recover, he changed the subject back to Zhu Hai. Steward Zhu, would you trouble yourself to report to Heavenly King Li, saying that our sacred sect intends to form an alliance with the 100 Broken Mountains, henceforth joining our two houses together in strength and loss, sharing the world equally, and governing the martial world together. Which? How dare you? Demon sect fiend, how dare you be so bold? At this point, the representatives of the various sects finally snapped back to reality and burst out in shock and anger, interrupting him. Li Shabai, undisturbed, with flirtatious eyes fixed on Zhu Hai, said, as long as the Heavenly King agrees, today our two families can join forces to kill these hypocritical reputable clans here on the spot, elevate our two families' prestige, and from then on in the martial world, only our two families will be revered. Wouldn't that be delightful? You! Demon sect fiend, delusional fool. On hearing these words, the sects were even more shocked and enraged, with some even causing an uproar. Well, I was wondering what gave the 100 Broken Mountains the confidence to challenge the martial world. Turns out you're in cahoots with the demon sect fiends. Fellow Taoists, this is a trap. Let's fight our way out together. Let's go all out against these demon sect fiends. Just as the situation was about to spiral out of control. Base figures skulking in the shadows, imposters deceiving the world, how dare you use the name of our sacred sect to trick the heroes of the world? A long, powerful shout suddenly came from outside, accompanied by a strong blast of true chi that quelled the scene. A figure somersaulted into the room. The crowd furrowed their brows and focused their eyes, only to see the newcomer was a young man of noble presence and striking elegance, exuding an authoritative aura that commanded respect. As soon as this person landed and stood firm, a crowd of people rushed in and stood behind him, supporting the scene. This. I am Li Shabai of the Sacred Fire Sect, greeting the heroes of the world. In the midst of the crowd's astonishment and uncertainty, the young man announced his name, also claiming to be Li Shabai. Li Shabai? Sacred Fire Sect? How is there another Li Shabai? The crowd was baffled by his words, with only the cross-dressing young master showing a cold expression. The youth who claimed to be Li Shabai paid no heed and, facing the crowd with a clasped fist, said, "I am the true Li Shabai. As for this person, they belong to those who deceive the world and steal names. Gentlemen, do not be fooled by her deceit." After speaking, he turned his gaze to the young master and coldly exposed their identity. "This person is not a member of our sacred sect but rather the daughter of the Imperial Yang King, Princess Kingpin, who today has impersonated the name of our sect to incite discord between 100 Broken Mountains and various major sects. This is a conspiracy by the Imperial Court, orchestrated to have us in the martial world slaughter each other. Everyone, you must not fall for their trick." "This? The Imperial Court? Yang King? Princess?" At these words, the crowd was even more astonished, looking towards both factions with uncertainty. "Indeed, I am the daughter of the Yang King, the Imperial appointee, Princess Kingpin." Seeing that her identity had been exposed, the young master no longer pretended and, immediately clasping her fist towards Shuhai, said, "But the actions I have taken today were not meant to incite discord between 100 Broken Mountains and the warrior sects. It is indeed the diabolic ambition of this sacred fire sect, which has turned to rebellion." While pointing at Li Shabai, she continued, "This demon sect has vast ambitions, desiring to rebel tonight and swallow the foundation of 100 Broken Mountains. Having learned this information, I intended to warn the Heavenly King, but feared the word without proof would not be believed, forcing me into this desperate course of action. I hope the Heavenly King will forgive me. Besides..." Princess Kingpin then shifted her gaze towards the heads of the major sects. Although everyone in the martial world claims to fight against the sacred fire sect, in truth, it is not so. Behind it stand many powerful supporters, and various major sects have backdoor dealings with them to oppose the Imperial Court for personal gain. Today's incident is the culmination of their conspiracies. You, gentlemen, do not listen to her nonsense." The crowd was startled and angered, ready to speak up, but Li Shabai stood out again. "Our sacred sect harbors no such intentions. The current Imperial Court is unjust, the foolish sovereign and treacherous officials are colluding, and the common people suffer bitterly. Our sacred sect stands as a banner for the people of the world." He then pointed at Princess Kingpin again. "What she says is all slander. She is the one with malicious intent. The Imperial troops have already been secretly mobilized and encircled below the mountain, intending to capture Heavenly King Li along with all the heroes of the world in one fell swoop. I implore everyone to discern the truth." "Nonsense." Princess Kingpin, not to be outdone, pointed directly at Li Shabai, saying to Shuhai, "Steward, do not believe his words. The Imperial Court has no intention of troubling 100 Broken Mountains and Heavenly King Li. On the contrary, it is this demon sect that has defied the authority, aspiring to snatch the foundation of 100 Broken Mountains to establish its base. Not only did it collude with various major sects, but it also mobilized a large army to besiege us. My father, upon learning of this information, dispatched troops." The two engaged in a heated verbal duel, unyielding in their debate, while the crowd from 100 Broken Mountains and the sect leaders stood by, utterly dumbfounded. "What's going on?" The Imperial Court and the demon sect have both arrived, each with an army, now surrounding 100 Broken Mountains. This was supposed to be a martial world affair. How did the Imperial Court get involved, turning the situation into such a mess? This. Where is the Grand Master? Such a situation can only be resolved by the Heavenly King. The troops are at the foot of the mountain. What should we do? The scene was one of complete chaos, with hidden agendas all around. Meanwhile, on Heavenly King Peak, in a room at the back of the mountain, the candlelight was bright but couldn't dispel the encroaching shadows of twilight. An old woman with white hair, lying weakly on the bed, looked with blurry eyes at the young man sitting beside her and said with difficulty, "Brother, it seems, I can no longer be with you." The young man, with black hair like ink and a stern face, exuded a majestic aura from inside out, sitting beside the bed gripping the old woman's hand without a word. Li Hongyu also gripped his hand tightly. "Brother, over the years, you have taken on too many burdens. I'm useless, unable to master martial arts or handle accounts, not only failing to help you but also dragging you down. I'm sorry, so sorry." Zhu Yang shook his head. "That's not true." Li Hongyu managed a difficult smile, looking relieved and relaxed at him. "I know, you are no ordinary person. That my second brother and I could follow you is the greatest fortune of our lives. Now, we have enjoyed that fortune. If there is an afterlife, I'd still wish to be your little sister, is that okay?" It took a while for Zhu Yang to respond. "Agreed. Then it's a promise, don't deceive me." Seeing Zhu Yang agree, Li Hongyu relaxed further. Her eyes, gazing upward, began to grow hazy as she murmured, "Brother, look, second brother has come to meet me, and there's Dad, Mom, even Deng." Her voice trailed off softly as her blurry eyes gradually lost their sparkle, and her tightly gripping hand slackened. Miss. Ancestor. Seeing this, the Li family members behind her immediately knelt down and cried in unison. Zhu Ying remained silent, sitting quietly beside the bed. After a long time, he reached out his hand and gently closed those lifeless eyes. He then rose and walked away without paying any heed to the openly weeping crowd, whether their grief was genuine or feigned. Time is merciless, and on the road to immortality, there are bound to be regrets. Zhu Ying did not want those regrets to last forever, nor did he want to remain powerless. Thus, he sought to become stronger, grasp power step by step, and take control of his destiny. Chapter 18, Entrance in the Hall of Righteous Gathering. The noise gradually subsided, and the pattern became clearer. Eastbound Escort Agency, Golden Jade Hall, and other escort bureau merchants stood together, siding with 100 Broken Mountains. Shelin, Niu Dang, Mi, Kunlun, as well as Kong Tong and other sects formed a group, representing the martial world faction. Then there was Princess Kingpin leading the imperial troops, and Li Shabai with his Sacred Fire sect followers, each forming their own faction. The four factions stood divided, their expressions bizarre, and the atmosphere even more subtle. After a moment of silence, someone could no longer hold back and turn their eyes to Zhuhai. To this point, if Heavenly King Li does not make an appearance, I'm afraid tonight this 100 Broken Mountains will be awash in blood. As soon as these words were uttered, all eyes gathered on Zhuhai. Indeed, as stated, such a situation could only be resolved by the appearance of a key figure who could decide the overall situation. And on 100 Broken Mountains, there had always been only one person who could decide the overall situation, and that was tap. A soft footstep, barely noticeable, but with all the present company being who they were, instantly startled and turned around, looking towards the door. Just then a person entered, striding in with ease, a tall and majestic young man with an awe-inspiring presence. This. Upon seeing this person enter the hall, everyone from all factions was stunned, their eyes filled with confusion. Who was this man? From which faction does he come? Moreover, was this porridge not chaotic enough already? The crowd furrowed their brows, filled with shock and doubt, until the newcomer crossed the center hall and descended a high tier, turning to sit down on the dragon head chair. This. The pupils of the people constricted, filled with astonishment, and the leaders of the various sects, along with many elders, were even more horrified. Even Miao Feng, Wang Tang, and other 100 Broken Mountain sect members were agape with disbelief upon this sight. Only Wang Hai, the chief steward, looked as usual, bowing to the seated youth, Heavenly King. These words caused an uproar in the entire hall. How is that possible? He is Heavenly King Li? What a joke. Could they be fooling us? Surely this is deception and bluster. Everyone was in disbelief regarding the newcomer's identity, except the leaders of the major sects and a few renowned figures of the martial world who were deeply furrowing their brows, filled with doubt. The public's reaction was no surprise, for who in the world did not know Heavenly King Li of 100 Broken Mountains? He had been renowned for over 70 years, his reputation shaking the south and the north, echoing from the east to the west, living as a martial arts legend, a peerless master. How could this legendary figure, nearly 100 years old, possibly be the young man before them? Could there really be a technique in this world for reversing age, to achieve immortality and eternal youth? Or was it just the trickster prince, a deceptive ruse? Naturally, people were more inclined to believe the latter, for if not, the matter would be far too terrifying. Yet. No, this man certainly is not Heavenly King Li. 15 years ago, when Heavenly King Li was at Shelline to challenge the three-crossing divine monk, I had the fortune to catch a glimpse of him. Then, Heavenly King Li was clearly an old man with white hair and beard, with an immortal-like demeanor. Why would this person pretend to be Heavenly King Li? What exactly is 100 Broken Mountains trying to achieve by doing so? What else could it be? At 100 years old, his vital energy depleted, how could he withstand such a force? They had to find a substitute to deceive and impress. Who would have thought, that the illustrious 100 Broken Mountains would come to such a pass? Master Kongjian, I heard that 15 years ago, Heavenly King Li went to Shelline to challenge the three-crossing divine monk, and you four were there to witness. You should know best, is this man really? Am I Debha? The voices of the crowd's astonished discussions were overwhelmed by a resounding Buddhist chant. Shelline's abbot Kongjian stepped forward with his staff and performed a Buddhist salute. Heavenly King Li has achieved a level of skill that alters creation, reversing the cycle of life and death, rejuvenating himself. He can now stand shoulder to shoulder with our Sexba Dharma. This humble monk admires, truly admires. This. As these words came out, the hall was in an uproar once again. Truly Heavenly King Li? What kind of joke is this? Reversing age, immortality, And eternal youth? Is there such martial skill in the world? Why have I never heard of it? Impossible, impossible, absolutely impossible. The crowd was in shock, unable to believe it. Only the outer disciples of 100 Broken Mountains accepted the fact and immediately prostrated themselves. Congratulations to our Grandmaster for the great achievement of his divine skill. Zhu Yang shook his head, remained silent, and merely waved his hand for them to stand aside, then turned his gaze towards the leaders of the various sects and the numerous renowned figures of the martial world, Shelin, Niu Dang, Mi, Kunlun, as well as Kong Tong, Beggar's Guild, Witch Mountain Sect, Divine Sword Manor. You have all arrived quite promptly. As soon as these words were spoken, a sense of foreboding surged in everyone's heart. Was he about to settle accounts? Of course, it was time to settle accounts. If it had been before, they would not fear being held accountable, because they had long been prepared to fall out with Heavenly King Li and even to engage in a fight. Otherwise, they would not have dared to come to 100 Broken Mountains to cause trouble during his birthday celebration. The crowd had such confidence because this martial arts legend was nearly 100 years old. Even though he had once been invincible in the martial world, no one can withstand the merciless ravages of time. At the age of 100, no matter how high his martial skills were, when faced with the major sects united and wearied by rotation in battle, they could still exhaust him to death. But now, gazing at Zhu Yang, whose hair was as black as ink and who bore a striking and majestic appearance, everyone fell into silence. Could this still end in death? Even if it did, how much would they have to pay? Damn it, why did the traitor arranged within the 100 Broken Mountains know nothing of such an important matter, leaving them completely unprepared? The crowd felt annoyed in their hearts, and the pressure on their shoulders grew heavier. But silence wouldn't solve the problem, and Kong Jian, the abbot of Shelin, could only pluck up his courage and step forward to say, Heavenly King's mastery over creation is beyond mortal, and none of us wish to disturb the Heavenly King, to again mix in these worldly matters, yet the actions of the Heavenly King's disciples are too overbearing and tyrannical, causing grievances among the various martial world sects. As soon as these words were uttered, the disciples from outside the 100 Broken Mountains turned pale and immediately cursed in anger. Bald donkey, in the presence of the Grand Master, you still dare to twist truth and spout slander. The Grand Master's earnest teachings are etched in our hearts, we have never done anything to tarnish our sect's reputation. The crowd exclaimed in shocked anger, but were silenced by a wave of Zhu Yang's hand. Zhu Yang glanced at Kong Jian and then turned his gaze to Princess Kingpin and Li Shabai. Martial world? Imperial court? Rebels? Ha! Made to laugh, Zhu Yang said in a muted tone, in truth, you are all of the same ilk, unable to tolerate my man, Li Qingshan. Once these words were said, the hall became deathly quiet. The crowd was shocked and dared not speak. In the end, it was Kong Jian who came back to his senses first. Amitabha, Heavenly King, your words are too severe, we truly have no such intentions. Both Kingping and Li Shabai were jolted awake too. Yes, 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 we absolutely have no intention to cause the Heavenly King any trouble. However, Zhu Yang paid them no mind and said with a cold glance, you can't tolerate me, yet how could I ever tolerate you? This. The crowd's pupils shrank, showing a look of shock and fright. Kong Jian furrowed his white brows, feeling greatly unsettled, but as the Shelline abbot, he still had to ask, though with difficulty, what do you mean by this, Heavenly King? Zhu Yang gave no answer, his gaze swept across the crowd, finally landing on the leader of the Kunlun sect, Mr. Iron Sword, He Tan Kong. 50 years ago, I ascended Kunlun and fought your grandfather, Mr. 3 Exceptional. In 52 moves, I was victorious. The statement caused He Tan Kong's face to twitch with fury and shock, yet he dared not speak. Zhu Yang ignored him, looking next at the leader of the Kong Tong sect, Chen Longfei. 45 years ago, I went to Kong Tong. The 5 elders of Kong Tong met me in battle. In 42 moves, they were defeated by my hand. Chen Longfei. 40 years ago, at the Beggars Guild headquarters, your former leader, along with 6 of the 9 Bag elders and 18 disciples, formed the dog-beating staff formation. In 58 moves, it was broken by me. 35 years ago, at Divine Sword Manor, your grandfather with the Yashan 8 swords combined, took 88 moves to admit defeat. 30 years ago, on the Golden Summit of Mi, the 36 Heaven Gang sword formation, 62 moves. 25 years ago, on Yudang Mountain, the True Martial 7 sections, 81 moves. 15 years ago, on Shaoxi Mountain, 108 Arhats formed the Vajra demon subduing array, 75 moves. As he recounted each incident, the sect leaders' faces twitched, and their eyes flickered uncontrollably. Over these decades, the ability of the 100 Broken Mountains to operate freely across the world, establishing escort agencies, horse gangs, merchant associations, and fleets in all directions, depended first on monopolies of several goods like salt, soap, and glaze, and second on the martial power of Heavenly King Li. 70 years ago, after the takeover of the 100 Broken Mountains, this newly ascended Heavenly King offered a hefty reward for the purchase of martial arts techniques from well-known families across the world. 20 years thereafter, having perfected his skills, he came down from the mountain to challenge the masters of the world. Mr. 3 Exceptional of Kunlun, the 5 elder gods of Kongtong, and the 7 disciples of Yudang, the 3 monks of Shelin, and even the leading figure of the contemporary martial world, the master of divine sword manner, all suffered defeats. Thus, the world came to know a figure who made history in the martial world. Heavenly King Li of the 100 Broken Mountains. Now, 70 years had passed, and he had not made a move in 15 years, causing people all over the world to forget these remarkable feats of the defense Heavenly King. Amitabha. With the chant of Buddha's name, Kongjian lowered his head. Heavenly King's divine skill is unparalleled, and we cannot match it, yet the sun and moon shine bright, justice lies within the human heart. If the Heavenly King intends to suppress the voices of the people with martial force, we will neither be convinced by speech nor heart. With these words, he tried to bolster morale, and immediately, someone responded. Indeed. Li Qingshan, with your divine skill unmatched, do you intend to shield your own disciple? Since ancient times, it is said that wealth cannot corrupt, power cannot bend. How can the people of the world be intimidated by our tyranny? Don't be afraid, everyone. However formidable he is, he's still just one person. I don't believe he can kill us all. Indeed, Heavenly King Li, even if your power is unmatched and peerless, you are still flesh and blood, not steel and iron. Jade fluid and golden core, once your true chi is exhausted, you too cannot escape your fate. The crowd shouted, forcefully stabilizing their position. Listening to this, Zhu Ying smiled and said, is that so? Then let's give it a try. After speaking, his gaze dropped coldly. He looked first at Kongjian and others, then at Princess Kingpin and the young master of the Sacred Fire sect. You, and you. Come at me together. With those words, the battle began.